you can't refer to YouTube chat as YouTube chat. Like you can't be like, "Hey, YouTube chat," and you also, I don't think you can have your YouTube chat on your stream.
I don't have it on stream.
I know, but there's some weird stuff like that. It's
you mean on the stream, like the chat?
Then why allow multi-streaming at all? Like that's so silly. It's like whatever. I don't care. I'll tell you. I'll give you the T, Avril. Don't worry.
Yeah, I haven't done a multi-stream yet.
I'd do it. I'd do it. It's fun. It's why not? Right.
We're on the mic test phase of the stream. I just went live as well. Just want to see if everybody's mic is working, and then I'll do like the intro proper.
Hello.
That's my mic for everybody, and then try to see where my chat's at in terms of that.
Is my mic working? Let's go. Yes. My mic is going now. I am talking into my mic, guys.
Everybody at 100 for now.
Incredible testing. Wow, Sam, you suck, idiot.
Fear Magneto. Is that too loud? Well, I was max game. I might end up at that point, so I'm trying to test the max game right now. You never know. Might get a little excited.
If you talk about Brig or Moira, maybe.
Bro, Sam, I'm on my road to GM, bro. I grinded for 2 days, and I'm almost Diamond 2.
What are you in
2 days? One trick Winter Soldier, baby.
Oh, you Winter Soldier. Okay.
I'm living or dying by my mechanics. I'm proving the coach mechanics people wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Again,
I mean, he's not exactly underpowered, but hey, listen. I'm at a point in time now where I'm running into like Hellas and Hawkeyes. I'm like, bro, I actually I gotta cook here because I'm not gonna win this duel. I gotta do something silly.
I dislike his gun, man. When I try Winter Soldier, it's like the kit's good, but then when you shoot, I'm like, oh my god,
it's projectile. Nah, you gotta let it cook.
That's the thing. I don't like that it's projectile. It just frustrates me.
You can collat with it too. I hit a collateral with it.
You can.
Like I killed 2 people. I killed a Mantis and Luna with 1 bullet.
I'm obsessed with Winter Soldier. Love his design.
I think the rest of his designs.
We'll talk about Winter Soldier in a minute. Everybody, this is our first ever Overwatch versus Marvel Rivals podcast. It felt like the appropriate thing to do because for many of us, we think that Marvel Rivals is the true sequel to Overwatch. It did a lot of things that Overwatch didn't do. So I assembled here together the biggest brains in the business in all of hero shooters. I searched far and wide. I have to search far, of course, but what I want to do is just give a brief introduction to each of you because keep in mind, there might be some Marvel Rivals fans. There's a lot of new fans of the hero shooter genre that don't know any of you or who you are. So I'll introduce you based on what I know about you, but be sure to like add in anything else that I forget. So starting on the top left, we've got AVRL, who is a shoutcaster extraordinaire. Big brain, also like me, likes to take contrarian points of view. And is getting back into content creation now. So say hi to the audience, AVRL, and maybe give your intro take as well on Marvel Rivals.
Hey, what's up, guys? Former Overwatch League caster, analyst, color cast, I should probably say. So taking on the analytical role. So yeah, man, hero shooters for a long time. Even before Overwatch, I mean, I'm not gonna say that Team Fortress 2 was a hero shooter, but you know, like even just that genre, the entire like history of hero shooters, team-based shooters, and MOBAs as well. So there's a lot of history there. But I don't like take a contrarian view, just to be clear. Like that's not my position at all. You got to like think both sides. You got to think like holistically is what I like to do. Just think from all directions. Have a position, obviously, but also be able to attack your own position to figure stuff out. So more of an analytical way of thinking, I suppose. So it's kind of
great at debating already. He's already getting into
He's debating himself. Guys. Take this to Spilo next. I watched these two debate each other about push when they agreed. It was hilarious. It was so funny. It was so funny. Oh my god! I just sat there and I got the popcorn. I was like, "Let him run." All right, back to Frito.
All right, next up, I'm going to introduce SPILO, who, for my money, is the best Overwatch 2 analyst that we have in content creation, and is probably one of the biggest benefactors to the entire community for the Overwatch League dying. Because prior to that, he was perhaps one of the best coaches in the Overwatch League too, and I won't allow him to deny that, because we all know in sports the easiest way to notice great coaching is when you see a team that overperforms expectations, and the work that he did with the London Spitfire was phenomenal, and even perhaps better as a content creator. So we're happy to have you in that field as well. SPILO, say hi to everybody.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, just been involved in, I guess, kind of coaching scene for, I guess, 6 or 7 years, professional coaching and one-on-one coaching and learning all the heroes. And then I guess the last couple of years, just putting a lot more time into hero design, game design, and being a professional Blizzard shill. So, you know, trying to diversify a little bit.
Great. And we're happy to have you here. So, third guest is going. I did last on purpose. My brother Samito,
nephew.
Okay, I tried to upgrade you, man. Yeah. All right. So for those of you who don't know Overwatch that well, me and Sam go way back as content creator friends. He was a former Contenders pro player turned content creator. A lot of great accomplishments in ranked, top 1 combined. But I would say defining features is that unlike many other top level players, Sam's ability to articulate the game mechanics in a complex way, like a real full understanding of these types of games, which is why he can get ranked 1 combined, play all the roles, broken heroes, good heroes, skill expressed heroes, probably one of the most insane players you'll ever see stream the game, and as well able to hang with the best of them, and which I consider myself, of course, when it comes to debating these types of things. And a quick, I don't want to talk about 6v6 today necessarily.
Yeah, me neither.
Maybe
honestly.
at some point we can.
When we talk format, maybe, but it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
But like me and Sam went at loggerheads with the whole 6v6 thing. Ultimately, we both didn't like how we showed up and things that we said, and regretted how we went about it in many ways. Which in good family situations that can happen, right?
Yeah.
And I think we learned from each other as well. Like the ideas got better over time, and just to kind of like quickly truncate it, it's like I think a lot of the points I had made, I would stand by and show evidence of, but there's a higher truth that Sam was reaching at. There's levels to this stuff, guys.
There's different lenses, I would say. Sure. I think we were looking at it from and we'll talk about this today because my mind has been so blown. But I think
it's so relevant to today.
Yeah, it's so relevant to today because it's so much like we were both right in different pieces, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day because for me it was all love, and I knew that when I talked to you that it was about the ideas. It was never personal. There's definitely some things I'd take back that I talked to SPILO about this. You can't talk with pro players about it because when you talk with pro players about it, they rub off on you. And I love my pro player friends, but I made it a point to try to isolate myself from that kind of culture when I went to content creation because, and SPILO, you and Avril both get this so much where that culture, it's so hyper competitive that it really will change you. It really will change you as a person.
It's also, I want to say, I don't want, I was actually, you said it now, but I was not going to say, but it is a bit immature as well. I just don't think because they're full of young dudes who, probably don't have a lot of experience being able to articulate their thoughts properly.
Prefrontal cortex, if that's all.
Yeah,
it is.
so and I think this is a really good moment as well because between you guys and I've been part of that 5v5 6v6 discussion, and to this day, people still regularly throw me deep into the 5v5 side when from day one, I've been pretty 50-50, honestly. I just happened to debate on the 5v5 side on the SPB group up. So, but that aside, it's really good because we have a situation where we can show that we can debate about things, and it can maybe even outwardly get a little aggressive at times, but actually we're all still friends. We all still respect each other, and we can all still, behind the scenes, everyone gets along, and it's just all just part of a healthy debate. There's no beef or anything.
And we challenge each other. People need to understand there's no beef there. That's the hardest part. It's we're mature enough to where it comes from love, and we love this genre, and man, has this genre got a new shakeup that frankly, Frida, I'll toss it back to you here. I don't think any of us I expected the game to do all right and do well. I didn't think it would be over, I would say at this point, Marvel Rivals is Overwatch 1 cultural phenomenon level.
Let me just
greater gaming space.
Let me just throw in one more point, and then I guess we should get started. And because this is us not even talking about Marvel yet, but I think what it really shows. I talked to Frito about this for hours on a new thing I'm doing, but there's we not specifically this thing, but the fact that when you're with a bit more maturity, you can have these kind of discussions, these ideally quite insightful discussions, disagree, or even potentially get things wrong at particular points in time, but then later on be introduced to new information or learn different things, and then change your mind about it. And being able to say, actually, you know what? I'm capable of changing my mind. I'm open-minded. I'm malleable enough to be open to different ideas and different things being correct or wrong, depending on whether new information is presented. I think too many people talking about things are way too eager to double down, even when they shouldn't. And it's better to not double down and be better to be open-minded about things, which I think having a mature group of people and having maturity and discussion is what it's about.
Thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. Thanks for the talk. That was a real Brady moment, wasn't it? Like the Brady Bunch family. Yes. Ultimately, my main pinnacle point against 6v6 was just because I didn't think it would do enough. And what I really wanted was hero bans, was the thing, and not just hero bans, but the balanced philosophy that goes with it in Marvel Rivals. So we kind of all got what we wanted when it comes to Marvel Rivals, so we're all chilling again, because like not only is it out, we can make content on it, we enjoy it, but it's a proof of concept of things that I really was standing for, things that I had compromised many years ago because I was told they'd be impossible to come out. And this is the major points that I made in my Overwatch is Cooked video, which is where I'm going to transition the first point of the discussion for everybody. I know Sam and I agree on this somewhat, because I've watched his content as well and his reaction to my video, but it is my standpoint that I believe Overwatch is cooked as a game. As far as the top hero shooter genre, like we used to say that the only thing that can kill Overwatch is Overwatch itself, because it's so good at everything it does. Yet to me, Marvel Rivals, while it has perhaps a bit of a weakness in terms of the engine's not as good, and then maybe some of the mechanics aren't quite there in comparison to the feel and responsiveness of Overwatch. Overall, with the depth of the hero kits, with the depth of the strategy, with the diversity of the strategy, with the fun factor for the casuals, and as well as the format for the pros, I think it's the best of all worlds. And it to me, I think it's impossible for Overwatch to catch up, just knowing the process of which that they go by to make changes. But that's just one man's opinion, and perhaps Sam's a little bit as well. So I'm going to take it over to SPILO first. Respond to this prompt. Is Overwatch cooked?
What do you mean cooked?
Like,
let's get some definitions out there.
Yeah,
you define it, bro. I don't know. Like,
so what most people are going to say is that Overwatch is not going to be it's not going to be at the top of the gaming headspace, the place that it hasn't had since 2018. And it's never going to reach the pinnacle of vision that Overwatch 2 initially launched with, in terms of like the ambition of it being like reinventing the wheel, right? Which again, we've already discussed. Overwatch 2 is not even Overwatch 2. It's just Overwatch, because the whole PvE, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to reach the same peak that it ever did. It doesn't have the novelty factor anymore. People are too burned out on the whole Overwatch 2 thing. It's never going to bring... It's just going to continue to exist in the headspace that it is right now, developing, evolving, hopefully improving its product, hopefully improving its design, and learning from the mistakes that Rivals makes and learning from the things that it does really well. But I find like I get it. Like if you're making a tweet or you're making a YouTube thumbnail or a YouTube title, like we have to kind of operate in, we don't have to, but a lot of us operate in hyperbole, and I'm guilty of that as well occasionally, where we all want to, like, it's fun and it's thought provoking and it's engaging, you know? But what does it mean? Like, does it mean that the player population of Overwatch is going to be harmed from Marvel Rivals? Well, yes, of course. It's operating next to Overwatch within that headspace. Is it going to kill Overwatch? No. Nothing's going to kill Overwatch. It's going to remain a live service, operational, financially successful game from now until Blizzard makes a lot more stupid decisions and kills it itself, right? It's adjacent, but what I'm more impressed with is how Marvel Rivals has managed to pull people that are not even within the hero shooter genre, right? That's the thing. And so for me, it's like we have to embrace the comparison. Like I was a little too starry-eyed. I was like, let's stop comparing Overwatch to Marvel Rivals. You're gonna have to. It's inevitable. But like, let's at least make the comparison productive. And the best analogy that I can have for this is saying that like, chess is going to kill, or Pokemon card TCG is going to kill chess, or Magic the Gathering is going to kill Monopoly. It's just. They're both board card game, but they're just operating different people. Like people that like Monopoly might also like Pokemon cards and might choose to play Pokemon cards over Monopoly. But it's like acting as if Monopoly is the crappiest board game ever invented isn't going to continue to exist for the next 20 or 30 years is insane. Overwatch is going to keep going. It's going to keep going. It's going to do fine. It's not going to be at the top of the hot content, hot topic list. But let's face it, that hasn't been the case for 6 years. So like it's not anything new for any Overwatch viewer or content creator out there. Everyone's like making fun of Overwatch Twitch viewers, but Overwatch Twitch viewership has been mid for 6 years. Like it hasn't been relevant. Like it's not that the comparison is fundamentally flawed necessarily, but like you're beating on a granny when it comes to like the cultural relevance. Overwatch hasn't been culturally relevant in half a decade. It's already dead, and if that's the definition, it's already cooked. It was cooked 6 years ago.
What's that Simpson meme? He's like, stop! He's already dead.
Yeah, it's been dead for 6 years, right? Like, let's be honest here, right? Like, it's not been culturally relevant. Briefly around Overwatch 2's release, and that was mostly culturally relevant because it was so incredibly bad. And that's it. It's not culturally relevant. There's the same amount of people that play it right now are going to enjoy it. Yeah, that's it.
I hear all of the very intelligent points you made, and I think the only logical response is to say shill and move on to AVRL.
Yeah.
AVRL, here go. Is Overwatch
having a balanced take makes you a shill, apparently.
Yeah.
I agree with SPILO. I think that's like that is the balanced take. I think it's also the realistic take. I'm really someone, to get into the meta discussion a little bit here, not a fan of like nothing against like content creation and wanting to sort of have the titles that will get people interested, but I think there's just a culture of gaming right now where people just want things to die, like, and not necessarily saying that anyone here is wanting that, but just generally across the board in gaming is something that Nate Shot. There was a clip from Nate Shot talking about the fact that every new game, it's like, dude, people just don't want games to succeed ever. Like, everyone just wants games to die, and this gaming tribalism that happens is like honestly extremely fucking cringe.
Can I say something really quick? Can I say something after that? I think part of the reason is people love stuff that they dislike. They like to see it fail. We see that a lot with like a lot of the crappy media, like movies and shows, right? A lot of it's like reboots or like just poorly done, lazy. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. And so people are like, dude, this is garbage. It should fail. It makes me glad that it fails. And I think another factor that Overwatch is struggling with is there's still a lot of bitter resentment about the PvE. I still see a lot of people. A lot of people are mad at Blizzard for the whole the sexual harassment allegations and all this stuff. Stuff that, again, like if you've read Play Nice, if you've done the research like I have, it doesn't have any correlation. This isn't even at all. Yeah. But it's under the umbrella of people are mad. They are angry at Overwatch. People hate Overwatch. They hate Blizzard. They hate Overwatch. So I think that you're right that people like when things fail. It is entertaining to see negative headlines. Let's just be honest here, right? But I think people especially hate Overwatch. People especially hate Blizzard. Yeah. Most of it's deserved. Not all of it's deserved, but most of it's deserved. And so people are very glad to see it fail.
It's not even specific to Overwatch. It's like, you know, I also would not like to. I also would not like to see it a year down the line if NetEase makes a few mistakes and then you start getting people like, oh man, the death of Marvel. Do you know what I mean? It's just so cringe. It's like it's to any game. It's not specific to Overwatch or anything like that. Yes, there's obviously been some bad decision making there, and even unfortunately outside of Overwatch, things that happened across the board at Blizzard and Activision and Bobby Kotick give people bad taste, and then that all gets bundled up together. And even if Overwatch had nothing to do with it, then they sort of cop the flack from that in AoE regardless. But that aside, I just think the general gaming culture around like having this Schadenfreude for things to die is kind of weird. But is Overwatch going to reach the peaks it had before? No. But I also think most games don't do that anyway. I don't think there's any game that like 8 years down the line really can, you know, sort of turn things around in a massive enough way. I don't know how we're defining cooked here, but they're certainly in hot water. They're certainly in trouble. Like, this is probably the first time in a long time where a very similar game has come out that has truly given people a strong alternative to Overwatch. We've had games in the past. I actually want to say, people say like there's never been real competition, but I think Fortnite took a bunch of Overwatch players away. I think Valorant also took a bunch of Overwatch players away. Like, every time those types of games came out, even though Fortnite's really nothing like Overwatch, Valorant slightly closer, but really still not quite enough like Overwatch. It's only like a tiny bit similar to Overwatch, but I still did see like significant amounts of people leaving for Valorant. Maybe that's more on the pro, like hyper competitive side, because we definitely lost a lot of people there. But this is the first one where like I feel like beyond just the top level players or beyond just like what I'm noticing, it's more widespread. It's more like even on the casual end, even on just like, weirdly enough, I jump into a Marvel Rivals quick play, and if people ever use voice comms, one quick play game I had, people were like shitting on Overwatch while playing Marvel. I'm like, wow, this is not something I expected. That was kind of weird. And that's in like OCE, Australian quick players, or we're in the corner of the world. So yeah, I think it's exciting because you have a game that's actually kind of surprisingly done well. I think most of us, when we first saw Marvel Rivals, I won't speak for everyone. I think Sam, you might have had this view because I remember you saying this
We talked
at some
about
point.
it.
Yeah, and like the first time you see Marvel Rivals, you're like, this is not going to go out well, though, guys. This is going to be like some like mobile
Gundam.
type game. It's just not going to be good at all. And then we both play beta. I played beta. I was like, holy shit! I'm like, kind of surprised. And then I had that surprise again going from beta to launch because even in beta, I'm like, okay, well, there's still questions about monetization, the whole meme behind like the owned, unowned checkboxes that we saw in beta. All right, let's not pretend that NetEase didn't have ideas of selling you the heroes and making you pay for it. That was certainly on the table. They didn't go for that option. But yeah, just to finish up, I think like everything NetEase has done so far has generally been pretty decent. But I think like does this stay or not is the big question moving forward, because every game they can have a good launch. Not all of them. Actually, we have a lot of games that will launch extremely poorly nowadays. But to have a really good launch is first step of a good sign. But this type of live service in a hero shooter, there's so many pitfalls. I'm sure we'll discuss a lot of this down the road. But the biggest question, and also this impacts Overwatch's health, it's like, is Overwatch going to be able to recover from where it is? In a way, it also depends on where Marvel Rivals goes and how NetEase handles the situation as well. Because if NetEase mishandles the continued live service development of this game, then things might not go well. And many people don't know this because I think people are a little starry-eyed right now. They haven't really looked into NetEase. But NetEase have already made 2 Marvel games in the past. This is their 3rd Marvel game, guys. and one of their 2 Marvel games is actually a dead game. They killed it in June last year. They shut down the servers for it. I believe
we'll get into the longevity of it. We'll get into the longevity of it in the next little bit.
Yeah, I'll just finish up now. And so, like, so the real question is Overwatch cooked and does it have a future? Well, NetEase has to handle their game properly. And right now they're doing a good job, but their track record is like a bit wishy-washy there. So I think people need to take that into consideration. But I think NetEase have launched extremely well, and now they just have to try and keep the momentum up. And the good news for Overwatch is that actually the Overwatch 2 dev team have largely been a lot more receptive. They listen a lot more to the community. They're a lot faster. They do a lot more things. They release a lot more content. And I think people are still really, in terms of their hatred for Overwatch, still really tied down to the Overwatch 1 development. And they don't realize that Overwatch 2 is being developed in a kind of different way, and I want to say mostly in a better way. And so if Overwatch 2 just keeps on going where it's going and making correct decisions, and if NetEase starts falling to pitfalls, then things get problematic for Marvel and better for Overwatch. That's the only caveat there.
We'll have you build on all those points. I'm interested to hear what you think about that. But first, we're going to pop on over to my fellow unhinged clickbaiter in crime. Samito, is Overwatch cooked?
I think let me define cooked. I think that this current iteration of Overwatch is cooked. I don't see like 5v5 role lock continuing as it is in the long term. When I've seen just how good hero bans are, it baffles me that I don't see a world where hero bans don't end up in Overwatch after seeing how well they worked in Marvel Rivals. So I think that Overwatch is, I would say, cooked in a couple ways, but like obviously, like the game is. I agree with SPILO 100% and AVRL 100%.
It's gonna lose players, right? It's gonna lose players, and it's gonna be avoidable, right?
But it'll be fun. Like the IP is gonna keep going. It's not gonna shut down. I've never said it was going to. My big thing was I don't know how much Marvel is gonna take. I didn't know if it was gonna take the throne. I think Marvel Rivals has taken the throne for the hero shooter genre. Mostly because it leans more into heroes, while Overwatch 2 lean more into FPS. So it's a little bit of a double whammy. That's not necessarily a knock on Overwatch, but like Overwatch 2 has become less of the hero shooter and more of the shooter, if that makes sense. Which could be good for its niche. Like it's going to carve out its niche more and more. A couple points I'd like to add on or address, I guess. I think there's only been a couple games that have ever surpassed their peak as life has gone on, like Fortnite, Minecraft, and like the big 3, right? Or like, you could name like a League of Legends game or something like that, where like for years later, it's still getting a lot done. And a lot of it comes from the media that it puts out there. I think Marvel's going to end up as one of those types of games. Marvel is like everything that I would have wanted to see in like the Overwatch story development, how like each season kind of has a villain, like they have their own comic verse. There's all of this media out there for all these characters that are already written. Like their degree of difficulty to execute and get the game and fill all the pieces of the puzzle to make this game a dynasty blockbuster are all already set up for them because they've made these Marvel characters well. And what's so interesting about what Rivals did and why I know it's going to do well in the long term, it's not like you could, I see so like every bit of doubt or points that I've seen people bring up about why the game won't be successful have all been proven wrong when you get into the nitty gritty. I think the biggest one I've seen that I think is hilarious is people saying, oh, well, it's only popular because it's Marvel characters. But if you look at the most viral characters in the game, they're characters that people didn't know about. Nobody knew about Jeff the Shark. Jeff the Shark was not a mainstream character. Squirrel Girl was not a mainstream character. I open up my Twitter timeline, which is just Overwatch players cooking me for saying Star-Lord was like actually so fun, saying it's a Tracer clone, which is also crazy, which we'll talk about later from a design perspective when we get into these character designs. They just like... At every point that I thought could knock this game down a peg, and AVRL, you and I were skeptical about the game at best at first. We were like, and by the way, they still could sell characters. Like, they're probably going to add a ton of characters. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I wouldn't put it past them, to be honest. It could absolutely happen.
Here's the question, super fast.
Sure.
Why does it matter that Marvel Rivals is coasting off of Marvel Rivals content? It's like, or Marvel content. Like, are the Marvel heroes going to go away? Like, no.
No. They're
not.
Like,
said they had,
it's still there.
Yeah,
right?
but
it's still there.
Yeah, and the people are kind of saying that like, oh, it's the only reason people are playing the game. I'm like, yeah, but there's
but they're gonna keep playing the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna keep going. So
it's a moot point. It's to me, it's a silly point. I think it was valid to bring it up, but when you look at the results, it's like, okay, like there's more to this than what we would see. Or like, I didn't know about Luna Snow either. So like, I was watching Marvel movies last night for the first time.
We're gonna turn the corner on the next subject. You kind of hinted at beginning it.
Sure.
I'm gonna let you launch us off into the next little category here. What does Marvel Rivals do well? So if it's not just the IP itself, like Sam, we both could go on this for like an hour. I feel. So like tee us off for this.
One closing note, real quick, for Overwatch, real quick. Every time I say this, like people think I'm trying to hate on Overwatch, but I think SPILO, it was either SPILO or AVRL who hit on it. There is a public disdain towards Overwatch. And it's not just like a typical gamer hate, which Nadeshot talked about. I saw that clip and you were right about that, AVRL. Like, unfortunately, like with what happened with Overwatch 2 and all this stuff, there is public disdain from the casual gamer. And I know it because I talked to my stepbrother about it, who like never really plays this game. I'm never fucking launching Overwatch 2. Please, this is the last comment I'm going to make about Overwatch, is honestly, I'm so all in on Marvel and I'm so happy that like I want to be happy and not be like, yo, I wish this was Overwatch. Guys, do yourself the favor and drop the Overwatch 2 branding, please. Like, this is a new dev team. That's the last note I'll make. Like, from the casual player outside of the inner circle of Overwatch, you can't redeem it. You can't. So please do yourself the favor.
We're going to do an Overwatch section later.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I was going to say.
Removing the branding. So we'll come back to that.
Sure.
Go ahead,
okay.
There will be more Overwatch talk, because if you look at the title of this video, this podcast right now.
Yeah, my fault. You're right. My bad.
Sam, buckle up.
Jesus Christ.
We need you to save the game, bro. Like, come on. Like, that's why you're here.
Okay.
Were you trying to get in something?
No, I just agree with Sam, but yeah.
Okay.
Hero designs you wanted, right, Frito? That's where you wanted to go?
Whatever's most important to you. Like so you've kind of combated the short-term criticism that it's just smoke and mirrors. It's just the Marvel IP.
It's not.
You just want to play
it has insane depth to everything.
Okay.
Like way more depth than I ever could have imagined. Like I was thinking inside the box and I didn't even realize it. Like I was like one of the NPCs in the Matrix. And Neo's out there somewhere walking around, and I don't even realize that I'm an NPC. Like, the shit that this game has made me think about has made me reevaluate, like, what this genre can be altogether. Let's start with number one, hero bans. Hero bans are a necessity in this genre.
Sam, it restricts creativity.
You would think it does. You would think it does until you play with it, and you're like, holy shit, it's a whole new game. And I realized what it is. It made me think. It was like, okay, I think that balance can be done. It's just really fucking hard. And at the end of the day, what I realized, we were so past hero bans ever happening in Overwatch that we didn't ask ourselves the most obvious question. What are players looking to get into in a game? Like, what makes it enjoyable? And what hero bans let players do is it lets them curate their own experience. Like, my Overwatch experience genuinely would probably be 5 times better like this if I could ban Widowmaker in ranked. The game would be 10 times better. immediately. Immediately. And if the devs make a mistake, like if Pay to Win Malga comes out or Widow's never getting answered or whatever is happening, it gives the actual player the ability to better curate their experience. It's like going into a restaurant, right? And in that restaurant, you don't get to pick the menu. They just serve the most popular dish to you. You don't get a choice, okay? Whatever the most popular dish is of the month, that's what you're most likely going to get. But the other restaurant would let you pick from a menu, say, I want to do this, this, or this. It adds more strategy, it adds more thought. It's just a more enjoyable experience. Like, I can tell you right now, this Marvel season would not be nearly as much fun if I had to play Hela every game.
Marvels would be dead at the competitive level.
Yes, yes, 100%,
I can guarantee you,
100%.
Doctor Strange, Magneto, Hela plus Flanker.
Yeah, it'd be over. It'd be over.
Every
it would
game.
be over
Every
immediately. Game. Like, from a design and systems perspective, like, Marvel Rivals is better designed than Overwatch has ever been. Ever. And it simply like comes down to hero bans, because that last 5 to 10% in any project is always the hardest to get right. It's so hard. Like, that's like where yeah.
Can I ask you real quick?
Sure.
Do you think hero bans should apply to all ranks? Because the only argument because if you know me, if you see my Twitter, I wrote like a massive 2,000 word thing about hero bans and how badly Overwatch needs it. So I agree. The thing is, hero bans currently in Marvel is only for Diamond Plus. That's 3% of the player base. If you're also including the fact that quick play is like massive in this game as well. So 97% of the player base don't get to play with hero bans. So what do you think about that? Like, does the rest of the game need it, or what?
I wish I had a good answer for you, but I'm still so new to it, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Like, I would say that it's good. I don't think it necessarily needs to be in quick play, because here's the problem: like the margin for error in low rank play is always so high because there's so many mistakes being made that you're not getting the true value of characters. And the hero bans really make the biggest impact, where players are at the ceiling of the game, where balance is the most important. I don't know if the word important is what I want to use. It's the most volatile. Does that make sense?
So what I'll say to that is, like, I think the player base, as they mature and age through the game, and we saw this in Overwatch, you see these other games, is they will improve and they will be more, like, the meta will refine and people will be more aware of like what the good stuff is, whether that's through people streaming the game, making content, making guides, or even watching, like, you know, if the professional play pops off and people watch more of that. The point being is, like, outside of quick play, even throughout ranked, maybe from a gold plus standpoint, people be like, man, like, I don't get to ban Hela, I don't get to ban Doctor Strange.
I think they should be able to. I'd love to see it tried.
Yeah.
So question, I guess, another question. Do you guys know of any, because the whole bans world is very new to me. What do other big titles do that have ban? I assume like Dota does. Yeah, what do they do?
Because I have a lot of experience in MOBAs, Dota and League of Legends. So they ban like 10 heroes per side, basically. But you have to remember, there's like hundreds 100 plus champions.
And this game could end up at that point too. So
it probably will, given the speed of how fast they're releasing heroes at the moment. It probably will get to 100 plus. And so that's the other question is, like, you know, how many bans are you going to end up having? Because right now you have 4 bans. Are you going to have 10 bans and then 15? Like, it's nice to have a lot of like overpowered stuff and it feeling fun, but like, oh, don't worry, we'll just ban it out. But it's like, at what point are you going to run out of bans because there's too much crazy stuff in there? But there's also phases to the bans, like more intense what we see here, because you have, you know, both pick and ban in that stage, because it's in an actual MOBA game. You pick a single hero that you play throughout the entire game and you can't swap, obviously, and this is different in these types of games. But you have different phases of like, okay, one team is going to ban, and then they might pick, and then they go back to banning, and they pick, and then they go back to banning, right? They have like way more of like an intense ban drafting phase, which I don't necessarily think these types of games need, but to just tell you how those work in MOBAs,
Age of Empires has similar, where it's like pick, ban, pick, ban, pick, ban. One of the things that Age of Empires has going for them, which Overwatch definitely has as well, but maybe not to the same extreme, is there's like a real map discrepancy, right? Like there's the very harsh, this is a water map, this is a land map, this is a hybrid map, this is a wallable map, this is an early pressure map. So it's a similar thing where like the bans add a lot of strategy, a lot of complexity, and really adds to the viewing and playing experience. But it is also a huge map variety, so that there's a lot of heroes. Like think about like a Havana Widow ban, right? Like immediately, right? Versus like a Legion Control Center or something like that. So
you're speaking of bans in the pro scene that's already been implemented, right? Because I know you made content on this.
For years. For years, it's been a part of the thing. And like that game would have been, because it doesn't have the same amount of development that a lot of these games have. Like the active balancing and patching, it's much slower. So like it relies on the bans to be relevant, because there are still very bad balance moments with that game. Yeah, I just don't. I don't know that lower ranked, mid ranked players are able to squeeze that last bit of juice out that makes certain characters super OP. That requires a ban.
So unless there becomes a character that ever gets released where like it's the value, the
skill floor
is so low that it's
like Iron Fist might get banned a lot. Like
yes,
here's what I'm thinking. Just to add on to this,
Iron Fist actually, yeah.
Like maybe we're looking at this, and this is how I've always looked at it. I've always looked at it from like science. Like it's okay, this character, they can't get value out of this character because the skill floor, blah blah blah, whatever it may be. But this is where I've been questioning myself. It's not about the science. This is art. Like, why should low-ranked players, where most of the player population is, not be able to better curate their experience to what they want? It could be placebo. It could be placebo the whole time. It could be, if say bans made it to Overwatch and these kids were just banning Moira on cooldown because he's a Genji player. That Genji player's experience would be a lot better because at the floor, Moira hard counters Genji. So the Genji player might be able to get more value. Like, I would love to see it just for the sake of like the experiment in all ranks. So like if it's me, I have no problem in competitive allowing these bans to go in every rank just for the psychological aspect of me being able to better curate my games and really alleviating so much pressure off the balance team to get it right. Because if there's no bans, your margin for error is razor thin. But if there are bans, you just have way more breathing room. And it would have solved so many. It would have heavily mitigated by like 90% all of Overwatch's biggest lifetime problems. I don't think GOATs could have existed with hero bans. I don't.
No.
Well, Brig would have been killed. That's like what I said in my tweets. Brig, we would have avoided some of the worst moments in Overwatch history, like Brig, if we just had bans.
If only someone told them to put it in at the time. If only there was a guy. If only there was autistic Batman at the time who stood up to Jeff Kaplan in a blood feud for years, putting his reputation on. If only there was anyone in the world who could have done that for us.
I'm sorry, I call this Jeff is Jesus. Jeff Kaplan is Jesus, and you can't say anything negative about him because he's the best thing that ever happened to gaming, and shame on you for trying to say anything negative. Sam, really quickly, I just remembered in League of Legends, as far as quick play goes, at the start, they didn't have bans or drafting at all in like what their version of quick play is. It was just an all blind pick. You just blind picked, and like you could have a champion that is identical to another champion of the other team blindly, and then later on they introduced bans even for their version of quick play, so the entire game had bans.
Okay, I want to sound off on bans because this is my pet subject for my entire purpose of my adult life. Okay, this is all what it's accounted to. I'm on the I Told You So grand tour right now.
Can I say something really fast?
Go.
When I met Frito, I'm like, Frito, nice to meet you. He's like, yeah, but have you heard about Jeff Kaplan and hero bans?
Yeah.
First thing we sat down and talked about, man. My guy, this has been on Frito's checklist. This must be so cathartic for you. I have no idea.
Go ahead, Frito.
I mean, like in a way, but also we just had so much wasted time, and like what I want to bring it back to is just a reminder, because a lot of people are really sore about the 6v6 debate, right? And the thing that I always came from is that I felt neither of those was transformative enough to really save Overwatch in like 10 steps down the line. Either one, I kind of don't care. I just want hero bans. And the reason is because it allows the heroes themselves to have their own unique identities. That's the point. And everything that Sam's saying, I said at the time for years, right? So it's like a joy and a breath of fresh air that like I've passed the torch. So now I have somebody else who can ramble on about the same exact points that I've been making about this for years. And I do think it should be for every rank, because it's more important to curate your own experience and pathway through the game, because everybody has heroes they prefer to play and ones that roll us based on our own interaction with it. Like, it doesn't matter what rank you're at. And I've seen Reddit threads about this already saying like, wow, like the game's horribly balanced and it sucks that I have to play against Iron Fist and Hulk and these other characters that, I mean, they get banned a bit at the higher tiers, but the skill curve of this game, and in any game really, is unbalanceable, because you'll get to tiers at the lower end of the spectrum where you're not really going to fear a Hela, and you're going to, any melee character character is just going to be running you over in comparison to these aim heroes. And what you don't want to do is be in a problematic situation that Overwatch got into, where in order to balance Sojourn, then like a plat Sojourn should just be playing Symmetra or Torb or something else that's just like more meta approved. It makes the game really watered down and unfun for the average player, because there's the ease of access of power is on the H key. So instead of expressing their own individuality, they have to, you know, play whatever is the easiest next thing up. And it just gets really cheesy and boring. And that's where you get into the counter pick situation with a balanced version of the free pick format. Overwatch 2 trying to balance based on win rates, which was a controversial. I'll let you go, Spilo, in a second. I just want to finish this little rant. Little bit. This was a very controversial take that I had for years that I just put in the back burner because everyone hated me for it, where I said, don't balance based on win rates. We want to form the game based on identity. You don't look at a chessboard and say like, well, if every piece isn't the queen, what's even the point? It's like, it's ridiculous, right? Like it's a stupid way to design the game. You want to design it based on the logic of what you should expect those heroes to do. If you put in a certain amount of skill, what should come out? You shouldn't like look at the results on a spreadsheet and be like, how do we make Symmetra or Torbjorn equal to Tracer? That's the route they went. They try to appease the one tricks for years and years, and the gameplay we got is this counter pickathon and the free pick format with no way to limit it. Spilo first, and then Sam after that.
I guess my point was just like, this is maybe a separate discussion, but I don't really know the answer to this. But like, I think it's really easy for us in the competitive headspace to go on about goats and how hero bans would have solved goats, but wasn't like role queue. I always felt like that was more about people picking triple quad DPS in every like gold rank game, you know? Nobody wanted to play tank, nobody wanted to play support. But obviously look at Marvel Rivals right now. I know that still happens, but I haven't had that to be as much of an issue. And I've played 30 hours in this game, right? So I don't know if it's just a novelty phase, so where people are just enjoying playing everything else. Maybe that's a separate discussion, but we do need to talk about like how hero bans from a competitive standpoint is definitely the solution that Overwatch needed. But from a casual standpoint, what makes Marvel Rivals different, and even is Marvel Rivals different in that aspect of people are going to are people going to eventually get tired of playing tank and support in Marvel Rivals? I guess
we'll get to role queue later. Sam, you go.
Yeah, I want to add on to this, and Frito, this is why you're so right, and this is another big thing that Marvel Rivals has shown me. It's all about hero identity. They doubled down on crazy characters, and it makes the game so much fun, even competitively, even with these crazy abilities. And because the game is third person, not first person, they're able to lean into that even more. Like with throwing Wolverine as Hulk, like that's crazy. Like just all of it, Spider-Man swinging, like all of it is just peak. It's just so outside the box. They doubled down on everything. Like, it's honestly made me rethink like some Overwatch abilities too. It's like, okay, like what if you could do something like this? Like I don't know. It's like I feel like a newborn baby. I feel like
you look like one.
Let's talk about hero identity here in a moment. Avril, do you have anything else on the?
Be careful.
On the current point on like bans and all this, like otherwise we're gonna gush about hero identity.
Yeah, I think bans are good, but I just think a lot of I think bans have done a good job in Marvel Rivals, and especially bans have shown that it can work in games like Overwatch. And like specifically when I talked about bans more in depth, I keep referring back to my tweet because that's where I'm coming from in terms of my points here on bans. But like it proved that it can work. And for the longest time, whenever I brought up bans, every time I brought bans in Overwatch, people would be like, well, I don't want this in ranked because it was more about bans in the pro play. And now I'm like, no, fuck that. Let's put it in the ranked as well. Let's put it in the game. And I had a Twitter poll, and I believe it's concluded now. And I haven't actually checked the results, and I'm pretty sure that the results wouldn't have changed from when I last saw it, which was, I think it would have likely have ended. Where is it? Here it is. It has ended at, so the four options were no bans at all in Overwatch, 14.3%. Both quick play and competitive ban, which is so quick play and ranked together, 3.4%. So not very many people wanted it in both quick play and competitive. And then the other two options were bans, but for all ranks in ranked, 38.2%, and then bans for Masters Plus only in Overwatch, 44.1%. So overwhelmingly, everyone wants bans in some way. Only 14.3% of people didn't want bans at all. Everyone else wanted bans in some capacity. And it was actually really surprising how many people said they wanted bans. in all ranks and not just Masters Plus. And this ended with 2,384 votes. So it's not like an insane. I'm not going to try and pretend that this is the entire Overwatch player base. But that is a sizable and reasonable number of votes in there. And to add more context, probably more people follow me, are more competitively angled, because that's most of the what I'm known for anyway. So I wouldn't be surprised if people are more competitive if they actually came and saw the tweet and voted. But I think it's positive because they're the ones playing ranked anyway. And it was basically 50-50 between whether people wanted it in all ranks or just Masters Plus. But what it does show is that people do actually want it in Overwatch. And I think it's time we just rip the Band-Aid off, and I hope Overwatch does do it. But the only thing I will say on the Marvel side that I think is not a criticism, but it's just hey, let's just pump the brakes a little bit in the discussion, is that we'll talk about bans. And I kind of proposed this question to you already, Sam, but not that you have to answer it again. But it's just the fact that bans are great, and we're speaking really positively about bans in Marvel, but just remember, this is only for right now in Marvel, only the top 3% of player base get to play with bans. And so for 97% of the player base, bans are still not a relevant thing. It's just it's great. If you're Diamond Plus, you get to play with this amazing, cool thing that's doing all these great things in the game. But if you're below Diamond, then just too bad, I guess.
Especially for the benefits of role queue, I think bans should go everywhere because it gives a soft role selection at the start phase. I think that's part of the genius of it, because you can indicate to your team what you're interested in playing, and so that you don't have to waste time who's going to play healer? Is anybody? Well, we don't have a healer, like that stuff. And another thing with the role queue situation, I'd say a big benefit of open queue right now with bans is there's lots of viable comps. So there's lots of ways you could play the comps, and we're still learning what those are. Multi DPS is very good. Double tank is very stable, but not all the tanks are created equal.
You want a hint? Moon Knight Groot, crazy.
Yeah, not
Say again? One more time?
Moon Knight Groot, crazy. Continue, Frito.
Yeah, and then some of the supports you probably could do some triple support things as well. I think more importantly is to look at the team ups, and this is why I don't want role queue. And we're skipping over a little bit the hero identity, but I just thought it was
we'll come back
good to mention this role queue thing, because I don't want role queue because the team ups might be cross role, and then also the thing I hate about role queue is that you're locked only in selecting heroes there, and then you lose the ability to be well, I want to play Captain America here, but he's a very situational hero. I know I can swap to a third DPS and then dominate this lobby, or cross roles, or tell the guy, hey, I know how to not die as Rocket every fight. He flies. What's wrong with you? This, I had a Rocket teammate who's oh, the Thor keeps hitting me. I'm bro, you can fly. What are you talking about? Just give me. Go ahead.
Devil's advocate really quick. How relevant? And this is more a question for Frito and Sam, because I'm just reached Diamond 2, so I'm not exactly how relevant is triple tank, triple support?
Triple support, way more relevant than triple tank. I have not seen a single triple tank comp win. Now, that might be because the tank players are all doo-doo.
So why is it so important for us to not have role queue?
So you're saying are you saying roll lock or roll queue?
Roll, whatever, any variation of more. I know, but the concept of not having what we have right now. I know, Sam, we've talked about this right now. And one of the things that gets brought up frequently is the strategic relevance and the importance of that flexibility, right? But every time I see that, and every time I go in game, nobody wants, the solo tank just doesn't work quite as well as people would like, at least in the type of maps. And triple supports doesn't seem as good, and triple tank doesn't seem as good either. So where's the strategic flexibility that we keep talking
real quick, and to that point as well, this is going to be really, really quick, I promise. The defense, the argument is oh no, but it's gonna hamper the creativity. We want the creativity. It's okay, but hero bans hampers creativity too. That gets in the way of creativity. So I just find it to be a ridiculous argument for people.
It doesn't. It's so crazy to say. I can't believe. One last note on bans from me. We talked about Marvel Rivals iterating and expanding the genre. I think hero bans should come to everybody. And one complaint that we've always had on Group Up is that these guys are elitists. They don't understand about what the casual player experience is like. Why should I get the right to better curate and develop strategy and have more options to have a game with way more depth? Why should I get more tools to do that just because I'm a better player than the average player at home? Because at the end of the day, no matter what rank you're in. And Frito, this is what you talked about. And like, I've agreed with you on this for years when you said you can't balance for all ranks at once and balance on win rates. It's impossible. And I agree with you. You can never make Widowmaker as good in silver as she is in GM. Ever.
Especially with the hero design of so many skill floor discrepancies. Like you look at characters like Moira and Torbjorn, you look at characters like Bastion. You can't balance Bastion winner in bronze versus Bastion in Grandmaster. It's just not physically possible. And so unless you literally, like, I've always been the guy, it's like, let's just not have Bastions in Overwatch, like hot take, right? But fine, okay, if that's just what we're gonna do, then like you said, you physically cannot. And I think, Sam, you brought up maybe the most important point that I've had. I had to make a note. I've got my notebook, I've been taking notes. The thing that you said of where, like, even if hero bans don't necessarily fix everything in bronze and silver, if it makes you feel like you have control over your experience,
that's why you play.
That's actually really important for player experience.
I honestly cannot believe how fucking stupid I was to like not think of it's have you guys ever played Arkham City where the Joker's talking to Batman? It's like, how do you hide a secret from the greatest detective on earth? I'm not saying I'm the greatest detective on earth, but this is what happened to us, obviously. It's like,
I thought Frito was Batman.
Yeah, Frito's Batman. Frito's the Batman who knew the whole time. But they
not the hero we need, the hero we deserve, or however it goes.
Under our nose. The whole time. And it just is sitting here. And I'm just like, I cannot believe how much better this genre is with such a simple thing like that. I can't believe it.
I think I'll put us back on the SPILO question because I jumped in there and sort of derailed us a little bit there. So to answer SPILO's question, right? Like what was it again? Like what is the
Tell me on the strategic value of open queue.
I got an answer as well, but go ahead. AVRL?
Anyway.
No, I agree with SPILO.
You were trying to turn the question. Okay, I got it.
I was trying to be respectful to SPILO because I got in the way of his question. So
No, it's fine.
I think like the player base of this game has a lot of room to grow in terms of understanding what's even going on. Okay, so the gameplay I see is really, really bad, frankly. And I know like that sounds kind of judgy, I think, but I said that in years in Overwatch 1 as well. I'm like, the average player doesn't know how to give 2 ticks to regroup in the thing. It's like very simple things. And this is where your Overwatch as a channel made a lot of our content, is like, what is a thing you must know to like elevate your game multiple tiers. It's a really basic thing, like, oh, is the fight starting to lose? Let's soft reset. Like that's so easy. Every player should know how to do that, right? Marvel Rivals, I see tons of these things all the time. So the optimization of the gameplay is going to skyrocket over the next year or so, because there's so many new players to hero shooters, just like in general. This is why like basically any Overwatch player is sleepwalking through the ranks right now, because it's like, like layering abilities, when to save your ults, there's a checkpoint, like we know all of this. This is the game we've been playing for years. But as far as the creativity of the team comps, I think what we're going to learn over time is, so as an example, if you wanted to make your 3 support comp work, I think part of the reason is that a couple of them are a little bit more offensively minded. So like Adam's damage is pretty good, or you can get a guy like Jeff, the Shark, gets a team up with Luna, who's already meta, and then he gets like an extra damage ability. So things like that, I think, is what's going to allow the creativity. You know, I was just learning Star-Lord recently because I saw him getting used in pro tournaments, and I'm like, wow, he and Mantis get the Adam Warlock Cocoon, and that's not even like among the top team ups, right? But it's just like, as soon as you start to learn that, and the reason why I want open queue is because it's more important to say, I think over time to establish a top tier team up possibly than have like the most idealistic comp. And you got other ones that are a little bit wacky and underutilized perhaps, like Magic, Psylocke, Black Panther. That's a triple DPS flanker line, so you got no poke damage, but like if everybody's popping recall, like that's a devastating team comp, and you won't see that if you get roll queue.
Didn't the devs say something about like they didn't want to restrict team ups?
Team ups are their way of trying to mitigate it. Like I think this game, I think Light had a video where he mentioned it, and I think he's so right. The best format I've ever played in this genre, easily, is open queue with bans. Easily. Okay,
so I'm gonna play devil's advocate one more time.
Sure.
Sam, how many times have you played tank and support in the last week?
I've played a lot of strategists. I play some Thor. I'm learning Magneto as well, but I flex more so to strategists than anything else.
All right, I'm curious. A challenge for you: pull up your career profile some other time and tell me the percentage of the amount of time that you play DPS versus the time you play support.
Mm-hmm. I'll look. It's probably
Because
like
I know
maybe 30% support.
because I noticed a lot of people that are like, this is a little bit of inherent bias here, where a lot of people that are more okay with open queue are the ones that don't have to swap. They just insta lock.
I've swapped quite a bit. I've had to swap quite a bit, I will say.
I think, but I think you're one of the people that is willing to flex and swap, though. I think there's a lot of people who are just not. I also want to, because I'm also a devil's advocate enjoyer on this podcast and others, but I would also say that bans restricts team ups as well. Maybe it's different because, like, in terms of designing the game, you're probably
that's
designing
why people
the
ban
game.
Hulk.
That's why Hulk's permabanned. You're right.
Yeah.
Exactly, but you could be designing a way where like, okay, if we're playing hard to do, then you have to be really careful about team ups in terms of how you're designing the game, and that I agree with. I actually don't advocate for like a hard 2-2-2 restrictive role queue. I advocate for role queue, but the type of role queue that I want is. I'd be curious if you think this is a good idea, Spilo. Is I would like to see a role queue that is max 3, minimum 1. So actually, you're not role. Sorry, that's not a role queue at all. So it's a role lock, not a role queue. So the difference between a role lock and role queue, to just be very clear, is that a role queue, you declare your role into the queue, and the matchmaker matches you based on what you've declared, and then you're locked into that role for the duration of the game based on what you declared in the queue. A role lock, you don't queue into a role. You queue as normal. You get into the game, and then a lock happens if certain like
Whose GPU is faster?
Basically, yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie. It's CPU or GPU, you load in whoever loads in fastest to choose. And here's the thing: so max 3, minimum 1 would be, to explain it properly, is basically a max of any 3 roll and a minimum of 1 roll. So you load in, you get to pick your hero. Whoever picks first gets what they want, and then once you pick, let's say, 3 DPSs, it locks out. No one else in the lobby can pick DPSs until a DPS player swaps off and goes somewhere else, and then you basically get all the way down to the last person. And let's say, for example, you have 3 DPSs now, 2 supports locked in. The last guy must choose tank because you have to have a minimum 1. So it now becomes a 3-2-1 type of situation. Max 3, minimum 1. So the pushback I've heard on that, and I've talked to Frida about this, is, oh, but then don't you get shafted if you're the last guy being forced to play a role that you might not want to? And my answer to that is, isn't that what's happening already on a social level? When you get into a lobby, there's like 4 or 5 DPSs in there. You're the last guy having to pick, and they're all pressuring you, telling you, hey, go support, go tank. You're like, I don't play those. I want to play DPS. It's like, no. You have to play this now in the lobby. And then let's say you do it and you play it. You're not having fun because you've been forced into this role. You might play poorly and you might get blamed. If you don't pick the tank or support for your 4 or 5 DPS that have locked in earlier than you, and you decide to play something else, they're now hard flaming you, champs, like, oh, we're losing because you didn't pick it, even though they all just hard lock DPS and they just have to load faster than you. So it's like, in reality, we are already seeing a situation where the last guy who picks is kind of like, this doesn't happen in all games, but if it does happen, that guy gets blamed a lot for like not flexing to do something that would benefit the team. So I'm like, I still think max 3, min 1 is like the healthiest way to do a role lock if there was to have one, and that you wouldn't necessarily be locked out of like weird. You could still have like team up design be prevalent and flexible enough on the developer side that they can still make it happen. Because obviously, if you went hard 2-2-2, they have to really reapproach the team ups in general, because that would be very restrictive for team ups. Whereas like an open queue at max 3, minimum 1 doesn't have that same problem. I think max 3 allows you to still have team composition creativity, and the minimum 1 just makes sure that you have something of all roles. I think the most important thing in terms of talking about role queue that people have to remember, it's about consistency in terms of the game experience. So you want a consistent game experience where you're going to end up in pretty much every single game, you're going to have at least 1 tank or 1 support. Otherwise, you're going to get rolled over. Like if you don't have at least 1 support in particular. I've played games with 0 support. Even if I win, it's just bullshit. I hate it. I don't like it even if I win, because I'm like, dude, I have to like do some crazy ass crap. It's not fun at all. So gameplay consistency in terms of how the lobby works, I think it's important that you have some level of consistency. And that's what role queue is supposed to do.
This is considered short straw matchmaking, basically. You just draw the short straw and then you get stuck in a role. But I think like I noticed as well, the top few ranks, there's a lot of, I hate to say it, guys. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. There's a lot of boosted support players. Because if you just select support, hide in the back,
sure.
And this is generally the case in a lot of games, let's just be fair, but like the support AoE healing is so insane. If you just select support, your chance of winning is basically because of what Avril's saying. So I don't hate that idea. And I think another benefit is his solution doesn't increase queue times necessarily at all, as far as I can tell. And then you get 1 SR. That maybe is like a criticism I have as well, because if I want to play different roles, but I think matchmaking speed is like kind of important. So Sam has been waiting to go.
Yeah, to add, I think before any of that should happen, they should try the global regen passive. I'd love to see them attempt things to mitigate these problems
Adding
before
on to that.
jumping. I would love to see that. I would love to see them attempt to mitigate it. And I think these guys, like, just I mean, from their designs, they've thought this through, man. I'll give it to Spilo because I think he wants to add
No.
on to it. But that's
Super
like
fast.
I think go.
No, I agree with you. I also think that this is something maybe we'll talk about later, but I got put under some heat for this, but I'm going to repeat it. I really think the tank and support design is like a big step behind the DPS design in terms of complexity and satisfaction of output. I will say that that's more of a subjective thing for me, but I find that I made a list on stream a few weeks ago, and it was like my top 10 favorite heroes to play, and I think there was like one support, and that was it. And then even like a character like Captain America, who I could fundamentally strategically resonate with me, like I get it, but playing it is just such a disappointing experience. And I think like that they really need to up the ante of like the way that tanks and supports feel in terms of satisfaction.
I agree with tanks. I think strategists are really fun. I love playing Loki. Who were your strategists?
So here's the strategist. Well, I've played all of them, right? I think Mantis was satisfying in her own way, but I think I found them to be basically a very similar gameplay loop of basically healing, buffing your team, and then just basically DPSing anybody that you really want to on an angle. There was some sick irony the other day of watching ML7 with support, not a healer, and he's playing Loki and he's heal botting the entire game for 25 minutes, right? It's like that's how a lot of like even high level strategists functions, right? Like there's definitely some proactivity allowed, but like there's no wonder that people latch on to Jeff's ult because it's like one of the few interesting things that the supports can really do, and I think that's a big shame. And that's definitely a very cognizant, conscious decision that Marvel Rivals developers have made with healbot healers, tanky tanks. Like they very much leaned into that. Maybe we'll talk about that later.
I like this subject. I think we exhausted roll queue probably.
One last thing on roll queue, and I think this is as close objective as possible. Ironically, is that I don't think we know what is objectively best for this game. I think it's a different game from Overwatch. That is definitely true. Roll queue, roll lock, open queue. I see a lot of people that are like open queue is objectively bad for the casual community. It is terrible for this game. I see a lot of people that are like this game should never have any form of roll queue, roll lock. And I just don't think like I understand that everyone has strong opinions, and I have strong opinions too. But the more I've heard some really intelligent people on both sides of the equations, and they both make good points. I just don't think we know what's best for this game, especially at this point in time.
And especially the general player base too, where they're way less interested in having a proper debate about it because it's either it absolutely has to be roll queue, and I won't accept any other answer. Or the opposite is like, no, we're never going to have roll queue because that's what killed Overwatch. Dumb take, by the way. That's not what. Maybe for a few people, it's just such a stupid take. But yeah, it's like the discussion is important. And even though the devs said they're not interested in roll queue right now, guess what? Overwatch devs were not interested in 6v6 coming back either, and now they're interested. So anything can happen, anything can change. Developers can change their mind all the time. Doesn't matter what game, doesn't matter what publishing development team, they can always change their mind based on what new things happen. But I will say that like the roll queue discussion is not like this is how it should be and shut the book. It's a very open discussion because clearly there's a problem. Clearly there's an issue. If you go to the Marvel Rivals subreddit, if you go onto Twitter and you look at tweets about Marvel Rivals, there's ongoing massive debate about it. I mean, a tweet I put out was like, Captain America Civil War, and it was just roll queue pros or roll queue cons going at it. Like that's the Marvel Civil War, bro. It's literally on roll queue. It is. I think it's the biggest. I think it's the biggest dividing thing potentially in the Rivals community. Top three at least. Yeah, it's a top discussion because like genuinely there are problems that people face, and there's a pain point in there that needs to be addressed somehow. Because eventually people might get frustrated enough, be like, that's it. This game's like too hard for me to queue into because like the consistency in my games is just too shit. It's a thing that needs to be looked at.
Is what Sam said. Like if we want to wait for right now, which I think is really fair, especially considering the novelty, is just like let's make some really fun tank and supports that people actually want to play. Again, maybe my bias speaking here, but like people don't always install. Let the people want to play tank and supports, more interesting tank and supports, and then the heal passive.
Yeah, I think.
And let's start with that.
Increasing some mobility and maybe reducing damage on characters like Thor. Like I will say, the more I play the tanks, the more depth they have. They're more
well, there's definitely depth.
I think Overwatch tank design was the best tank design in Overwatch 1 before Sigma, in my opinion, in like any game. Like picking up like as a DPS player and somebody who likes to play DPS a lot, like picking up Zarya was easy for me. You know what I mean? Like it was very DPS-y. I mean, now, granted, I wasn't a Reinhardt player, but like I could pick up a diva as a DPS player and like very quickly understand.
I'll tell you why. It's because, in my opinion, the DPS-based tanks are more fun because it hits the psychological dopamine hits better in terms of I'm dealing damage, I'm getting kills, I'm obviously contributing and impacting the game in a way where it's obviously I can see how I'm winning. Whereas if you're just like a bullet sponge tank, you can't like. You have to be like a true lover, a masochistic lover of tank to really feel fun doing that because you're just getting beat up all game. And here's the thing about tanking in general, and like I agree and disagree with what SPILO said. I don't think just adding more tanks or like trying to make them fun is going to solve the problem, because the problem is I just don't think tanks in this genre of game and hero shooters are ever going to be fun enough. Proven by Overwatch, but proven across gaming, where any game that has a deep, any game, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying like any game that has DPS tank support dichotomy in terms of roles, tank is always the least popular. It's the least popular role in Marvel Rivals 2. Is anyone surprised by that? I just think less people want to play. More people want to play the characters and the heroes and the roles that have easy impact and dopamine feedback. So if you're playing DPS, it's super obvious why everyone wants to play DPS. It's the most like instantaneous gratification of like, I shoot person, I deal damage, I see health bar go down, I get on the kill feed, I enjoy psychologically, I'm having fun. Support, you can have fun in the opposite way, where I see health bar in my team go up, I prevent someone on my team dying, I get dopamine hit. Tank is just harder in that degree, which is why I think the only way to make tank fun is to make them more DPS-y and make them more brawly and make them more fun as like heroes that can actually kill, which is why the tanks that I enjoy, the tanks where I can like go in and do stuff. I actually enjoy Captain America for what it's worth. Maybe it's because I play it low.
He's underrated.
I think he's an incredibly well-designed tank.
I played a low enough MMR that, because I don't have as many hours as you guys probably. I played a low enough MMR, definitely not as much as Sam because he's been hard grinding, that I can jump into a game and just dominate on Captain America super easily. Because I'm just like, I know hero shooters better than like
it's the Iron Fist of tanks.
Yeah, so like
let's just close the role queue kind of downside discussion, and then I want to change it to being critical of the designs that we have issues with and maybe see problems with. So I'll just say this, and maybe I'm also interested in a fellow like coach who looks at a lot of lower level players' opinion in SPILO. So for me, when I look through how you get through those problems that AVRL's talking about, while I'm pretty open-minded to his solution, I don't think it has too many downsides. The one downside to me is forcing that guy to draw the short straw. Are you really going to have that much better of an experience if this guy now has to have some tank time and he never had any tank time before? I'm not so sure that's the case either. I think you're going to have a horrible time in that game kind of regardless. Yes, like having a little bit of everything kind of smoothed over, but it's not going to be like leaps and bounds better of an experience in my opinion, especially when what I would say in this kind of open queue format, especially in the balance state that we have now with Marvel Rivals, I would say the highest impact for skill expression is in the DPS role, like by a long way, okay? Tanks can do a lot, Strange can do a lot, and when the game's in his hands, I feel Mag can do a lot. Like I'm decently
Hulk's crazy too. Good
Hulk has a lot of skill expression, but at the same time, like a lot of the stuff in the game can either counter tanks or ignore them. Like if I really want to carry the game, am I going to carry the game more? Or let's put it this way: you have a Black Panther feeding on cooldown on your team, okay? You're 5v6. How do you win a 5v6? Do you do it by being forced to draw the short straw and play tank? Because in my opinion, you're not going to win that game. Like, the only way I feel I can win that game is if I play Psylocke, Iron Man, or these other, like, pop-off heroes that have
Strange,
big ults things. Yeah, maybe solo tank Doctor Strange, yeah. But, like, that I would say that aspect of it, to like lose the flexibility of me to swap off my role, that's my only like, and it's not like a hard line, it's just like a soft line of me. I cringe and wince just a little bit, because whereas in some cases I feel my mechanics have to swap to support. I've mostly been playing tank, but I got a handful of damage. I like some of the supports. In general, I'm pretty critical of those. We'll get to that. But it's like, I mechanically can do a lot of support, but it's not going to carry the game. Really, there's like a few carry picks. And to be honest, this is kind of how launch Overwatch 1 launched as well. You play that 1.0 classic patch, tanks were falling over to everything. There's a handful of DPS players, characters that popped off. And that's why I'm like so excited at this state of the game at this moment. Because I'm like, oh, just don't balance it. Don't force everything to be equal. Don't force the game to be about 2 tanks, because at the moment we have these like third person melee characters that can go on these wacky flanks. We got flyers that are dominating the sky. I think that's better overall. And I just don't want to have to like rein it all in just because some of your games are absolutely unwinnable. And this is probably something I learned as well. I spent a week grinding 6v6 Overwatch after saying I don't want it. I'm just like, you guys forced me. Okay, I'll check it out. Fine, I'll play it. Like to me in Overwatch as well, it's the same thing. It's like it's got all the benefits Sam said and all the downsides that I said, but like, is it more fun? Like, is the peak top tier fun more fun? I think so. And I'm on the 6v6 train. I'm like, yeah, swap it back. Fine. It's more fun. It's also less fun. It's also that. It's both, right? Higher highs, lower lows. And to me, we don't play games to have like a stable experience from game to game. That's not what you get excited to post to your friends, post on social media. You don't get hyped over like, wow, how balanced and stable is this hero shooter game? Nobody cares.
Crazy
okay.
shit. It's the
all right. Who was trying to chime in? Was it Spilo?
Spilo, yeah.
I mean, that brings a whole. I think that if I can talk just for a few minutes here, because this is what I was cooking in the shower. All right, so there's. I had this realization playing board games. All right, I don't know how much I have a big board game guy. So there's a game called Clank. All right, and it's a really silly, stupid board game. It's like a dungeon. You go down and you grab a bunch of crap, and it's basically like a deck builder. Like you improve your deck, and it's just terribly balanced, right? But it's something that we've gotten a lot of mileage out, my wife and I, because it's just very silly. It's very exciting, and has like a constant like amount of new content, right? There's a lot of new things. There's a lot of dopamine. And then there's another game that we play called War of the Ring. And it's much slower, much more strategic, much crunchier, much harder to get into. And I had a realization where I don't want to make the analogy between Marvel Rivals and Overwatch necessarily, because I think they bleed into each other. But I call it like the snob rule, right? Rule by snob rule, where it's like people will like a game or a movie or a media for a certain specific set of reasons, and they decide that that's the only type of game that people are allowed to like, that you're not allowed to like that. That's you're brain dead if you like this, or you're brain dead if you like this movie or this TV show, or if you don't like that cartoon or that. And I think what Marvel Rivals does really well is it showcases that you can have games within this same subgenre of hero shooter, but have really quite different game philosophies. I look at the value of Marvel Rivals to be heavily in uptime compared to Overwatch. There's a lot more uptime with both the tank support and DPS. You're just doing things constantly, right? So there's a lot of dopamine, a lot of tickies. Like one of the things that's good about tank is even though you actually can't really secure kills very easily, you're pretty much constantly involved in fight. Like there's just isn't a lot of downtime like there is with Overwatch, especially in 5v5. Like you're just doing things constantly, shooting. There's very, very high highs, which Frito, you were just talking about as well, right? Like there's low lows, but there's also really high highs that sit with you, right? There's just things that happen in Marvel Rivals, Winter Soldier, ult reset, right?
Yeah.
I get more big ults with Winter Soldier in one day than I get a big ults that I got with Genji in a year. You know, that's just how it is, right? It's just way higher highs. And then this is the more of the live service thing where I think Marvel Rivals is looking to be a lot more auspicious beginning of the live service game, right? Even compared to Overwatch 2, which has done a much better job recently, there's just so much new crap to be talking about, so much new crap to be excited about. Part of that's cultural, but part of that's also the casual gaming community will constantly come back to Marvel Rivals if this is the type of content release schedule we're going to have. Overwatch. Go ahead, Avril.
No, you should finish your thought, actually.
Okay. Overwatch has something that I would say is they have, I think, you're gonna disagree with me, but let me finish. I'll explain. Overwatch more strategic depth. As someone that's coached and looked at, it's more strategic depth, at least on the surface. There's a lot more polish, whether that's a visual experience, UI, performance, engine, map design. Like everything about Overwatch is just more polished. It's unfair to compare them because it's had a lot more time to practice and develop those things, but it is just more polished. It's just a better looking and performing game. And it also has, I think, this is the really tricky one. There are hero designs in Overwatch, like the really strategically minded game that you really aren't going to get anywhere else. Now, Marvel Rivals has that too. We'll get to that in a second. So you have like strategic depth, polish, unique experiences. The crunchy, you're going to have a core audience that you're never going to lose as long as you have those three things, because it will always scratch that strategic itch. It will always feel good. And there'll always be a Genji. There'll always be a Winston. There'll always be an Ana, and so on. And then you have the more casual side of things, which is like, we love the uptime, we love the constant dopamine, we love the constant new stuff, and we love the high highs, right? What Marvel Rivals has done, though, and this is why I think it's doing so well, is it's because of hero bans, it has maybe not the same level of strategic depth as Overwatch. Looking at professional level Marvel Rivals, it's got a long way to go, right? But with hero bans, it's a whole level of strategy that Overwatch doesn't have. And I also think that the unique experiences thing, it's managed to have a lot of visceral things. Like, I really don't like about 75% of the Marvel Rivals cast in terms of playing. I find a lot of their gameplay loops a little bit boring. But I'm hooked on Winter Soldier, man. I'm hooked on Winter Soldier. And you're not going to get a Spider-Man. Like, I haven't played a lot of other Spider-Man games, to be fair, but like, oh my gosh, they cooked. It looks and acts and functions like Spider-Man, right? And I think for that, like, Overwatch really has to decide, like, what niche do we want to really scratch? Like, I don't think Overwatch will ever be Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals is much sillier, much more Gen Z, constant new updates. Not everything's going to be perfectly polished, perfectly balanced. Overwatch is run by a bunch of, like, a lot of people were criticizing Overwatch hero design release schedule, which I think is really unfair given the amount of artistic effort that goes into Overwatch, right?
It's different.
It's art. It's art. It's an art project, is what it is, right? It's just apples and oranges, right? I don't know how many of you guys played Junkenstein's Lab back when that was the Overwatch thing. You guys knew the pickable passives thing that they did? Remember the Junkenstein's Lab? That's Marvel Rivals. That's what it is. There's progression, there's dopamine, there's super high highs because you get some absurdly broken build with Reinhardt or Zenyatta, and you have 500 HP and you can literally one-shot everybody. And there was, like, every time I played the game, it was like, oh, I'm going to try this, or oh, I want to try this, or oh, I want to try this. There's literally, like, so much. It just felt like Marvel Rivals for Overwatch.
They've clearly indicated they're going that direction as well. Like, that's not just a casual thing. That's a serious attention that we know that's going to be coming in the future, right? In a bigger way. That's
where Marvel Rivals has the edge. Is that the future of the live service update, where, like, old grumpy bearded men, every game has to have sex appeal now, like new stuff and dopamine and new content. And I think there's going to be a lot of tension because that like, we could yap about, well, back in my day, we played chess. We didn't have colors in our board games, ironically talking about Overwatch in that way. But that is where a lot of these games go, and Marvel Rivals is just ahead of the curve.
Sorry, if we're on like I guess we're on like a hero design kind of hero discussion.
It's like the game.
You're talking about the macro.
It's totally different. The game philosophy is totally different. Marvel Rivals is just the Gen Z more, while still having hero bands that allow that strategic depth.
Anybody wants to chime in about the macro? Say that first, and then we'll get more in the nitty gritty of like the designs, and then go ahead, Avril.
You say like macro, you like I kind of just want to get into more specific designs.
Go ahead.
For me personally, a couple of things there I just want to point out. I do think on the ultimate side, like the ultimates in Marvel generally compared to a game like Overwatch, they're way more bombastic. Just a lot of some of it, I would say, design wise, is kind of boring in terms of just a lot of massive AOE. So it's like, yes, you are going to have a lot more big moments on Winter Soldier compared to Genji, because fundamentally, not just Winter Soldier, but most ultimates in Marvel Rivals is like you're going to get something big, typically speaking, because that's what every ult is, massively overtuned ult. That's not to say that it's not fun, though. It is plenty of fun. And to also like double up on what you mentioned about the hero release thing as well, like that is stupid as well. Not just for the reasons you listed in terms of the difference in how easy or hard it is to design Overwatch hero versus a Marvel Rivals hero, which is much easier for Marvel Rivals given the how much IP they have to work off and how much of the work is already done for them artistically. But when you actually compare it across the board to other games with heroes in them, let's just talk about MOBAs for a second, because there's not that many. I mean, there's a decent amount of MOBA hero shoes. I don't know what the Paladins release schedule is. Maybe I should look that up. But when you look at games like Dota, hardly any. Maybe 1 or 2 heroes per year maximum. Now, there's no new content for the game ever. So Dota's like not a dead game, but it's a game that's not going to receive future significant content in that kind of way. I struggle to move on. You look at League of Legends, average 4 per year, okay? And that's like a game with hundreds of champions already, and a game that like doesn't have to artistically put in as much work as Overwatch does, because you're only looking at a small character on your screen that doesn't take nearly as many pixels, that you're never truly zooming into because you're only looking at it from a top-down perspective, whereas like a full 3D model in Overwatch is relevant. And a game like Marvel Rivals, you have to look at it all the time, or you have to look at another player playing that, and you have to see them in its full fidelity, which is completely different. Even a game like League of Legends, which doesn't need as much requirement artistically to push out a champion, still only does something like 4 per year. So the fact that Overwatch does something like 3 per year is not like bad at all for a game that like has to take longer by necessity push out heroes. So like that argument is ridiculous, and I saw a massive Twitter thread about it from like some dude, which is he's just completely fucking wrong.
The reason Overwatch gets tossed under the bus is because I think the gameplay design of some of the characters is just really not good, even for the amount of development time.
Yeah,
but all the development hours is put into the artistry, the voice acting, the interactions.
That's
the
top tips, and that thing.
That's where
Overwatch does better than any game in that department.
Oh, agreed. It's not even close.
And people that's the thing where like I think we actually all unanimously agree. And people who disagree, I mean, I know art is like subjective, but if you actually like really objectively look at the quality of the art design, I think that's not subjective at all. Anyway,
also knowing their design principles too. I can get into that. Sam, you can go first.
No, we can talk about that. There was more I want to talk about. If you want to talk about the art first, we can dive into that, and then I'll maybe jump back into hero design later. Or I don't know. How
well, just to pause
on with art. Go with art. You're good.
Well, I would say like this. Like a criticism I have of Marvel Rivals is that there's a lot of rehashed design, like in ways that Overwatch just simply would never do. The reason why I think we can all agree easily, like Overwatch's art and character fundamentals are so much stronger, is because I understand the language they're making the content in. Where even if you look at a guy as old as Cassidy, right? Like even his motions feel cowboy-esque, like the way he flips his hand out and say hello. Yeah. Like they spend weeks doing just that, right? To like make sure every single expression of the hero, their animation, the way they emote, like it's all not just it's unique to the character, and every aspect of their vibe.
Edie says hello and looks down at the ground. She doesn't make eye contact when she says hello with you. Because
the tiniest details.
It's obsessive. It's insane.
Yeah, and then the Symmetra back in the day was on neurodivergent, so that gets shown in all these different little ways, and that was like the grand arcing plan, right? They wanted lore, and they wanted a story mode, and they wanted a PvE, and all of that could have happened, but mismanagement. Jeff didn't want multiple teams, and here we are today. Now, Marvel Rivals, on the other hand, it's like a thing that I look at. It's like if you take the animations, let's say, of the projectiles of half of the female characters, they all kind of just twist and flick in the same way. They're all Harry Potter, like Guardian Leviosa. It's like all the same thing, It's a little bit. I'm being a little harsh. It's I like the animations of Iron Man. They're really good with Spider-Man, but there's a lot of copy paste there, especially with the design of Ultimates. There's a few that is Storm ult super different from Psylocke ult, like in concept, in theory. No, it's like big AoE explosion there, and one cast like this and one cast like that, and that's a benefit to the design because they can like speed up the process that they make these things. So it's an advantage in a way, but then also the uniqueness of the character, and this is probably why they can release 4 at once. So I've got other design criticisms, but that's it. What I wanted to say about art. You can go, Sam.
I disagree with that because I think a lot of that, like I think Overwatch does it the best, but Marvel does it too. Like Luna Snow, when she's reloading, does a heart. I don't know if you noticed that. I didn't notice
it. That's a good one.
Yeah, Luna does a heart. Like, so I like Loki, like the way he talks and interacts, like the way that like that part of the art where the way they act in game, I think is actually on par with Overwatch. And mainly that might be third person carrying, to be honest with you. That might be third person carrying. That might be a benefit to the third person aspect. But like one of the first things I noticed when I was playing in like the first alpha, like when I was playing Panther and I was playing like Loki, like I felt like that Marvel character. Like they nailed that to me. Like to me, like that's on par with Overwatch. I think Overwatch has a level of detail and polish down to the pixel that this game doesn't have. And that's where like Overwatch will always be a fine wine in terms of like the artistic world building that it has. Like it always will be top shelf, I wouldn't say that's a knock on Marvel I'm not trying to knock on Marvel when I say I think Marvel does it well. I just don't see anybody ever doing it down to the pixel because Blizzard's game, like it's a Pixar film. It's the irony of Overwatch kind of looking like a Pixar film when we're talking about Marvel's Disney game. You know what I mean? That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I think they both do it really well. In terms of like the ults too, like I kind of disagree with that as well. Like the characters, like you would think they look samey. This is the bait of Marvel, and this is where the genius of the design comes in. It's like you look at it and you're like, this shouldn't be special. And then you play it, and it's like, listen, I'm Eternity. I was one above all on Iron Fist. I'm inting as Magic. I can't fucking figure Magic out yet, and I'm going to. I promise. That's probably gonna be like I'm gonna sit. Like, it made me mad, so I was like, all right, I'm doing this. Like, just out of the universe making me like get shit on here. Like, I'm going to grind Magic, and I'm gonna learn. So I kind of disagree with you guys on that. Like, I think that Marvel actually does, like, on the part of the strategic depth, I think it has every bit as much as Overwatch. Maybe not as much as like peak Overwatch, but like right now, like if I was to compare the games like head to head based like on what I play from like gameplay loop and a lot of this stuff, when bans come in, especially, that strategic depth is absolutely there.
It's carried by bans, frankly.
I will see. I think
it
could be. It could end up being ghosts. I think the game is like, I think bans just allow you to do so much more from a design perspective.
To be fair, it's also like we don't know. Like I think Frito talked about this earlier with the roll queue. Like, we don't know what the level of play is going to be as things develop.
True.
I think right now it loses a lot of the map control and strategic positioning that Overwatch really relies off of, just because of the power of sustain, the power of layering, and just basically it's like you just basically, there isn't as much creative. And also the map design makes repositioning and taking different angles a lot harder.
True. Destroyable though to some places, but that can who knows.
But I think a lot of it is more to do like it does. It's not that it doesn't have the potential for that strategic. I think that would be facetious and silly to say. It does. I just don't know if it has it right now.
True.
Outside of the base.
We'll see.
I'd say as a casual player, it feels like it does anyway, because like the amount of craziness you're having, like that was a major strength. Like every hero,
better at the floor, I think. Just because
I think it's just because the kit, there's more kits. I think the kits are just bigger, right? Like Overwatch, like everyone, I definitely am not a fan of. I think less is more most of the time. But for example, there's a lot of people that are like really critical of Hazard's design, right? Because like, oh, Hazard just has like a trillion buttons and it's just like typical Overwatch 2 design, and it's just a Marvel Rivals design.
It doesn't even have that many buttons.
It doesn't even have that many buttons.
Especially not compared to Marvel, actually.
My favorite tank ever as well, by the way. Maybe that shows why I like Marvel as well.
I put 25 freaking hours on Hazard. He's the best hero since Ana. Like, he's so much fun. But it just goes to show that like sometimes more buttons does increase the satisfaction, because it just feels like there's always like something different that you could do. And I think Marvel Rivals has that. You know, like I think that there are some kits that do a really good job of that. But
I want to add on to implementation as well, real quick.
Sure.
I don't know if they learned from Overwatch. And while a lot of this stuff is more OP, I think they implemented concepts. They either learned from Overwatch 1 or like Adam Warlock's mass res. You would think, like everybody sat here and said, and myself included, like, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. Mass res. We've been down this route. Overwatch tried it. It didn't work. But when you look at how they actually implemented it, I know you've hit a clip on Adam Raz's Bucky. I know you have to have just like 8-man killed somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Like the fact that Adam has to commit to the position. Like, again, he can walk around a little bit and get people in the range, sure. But everybody spawns in at low HP. There's actual real counterplay to it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a thing in Overwatch 1. So did they learn from Overwatch 1 in that? Like, maybe Overwatch 1 could have addressed Mercy better. So, like, in terms of how they've implemented some of these kits, like, the only big, like, I think the implementation for a lot of this stuff, I mean, we'll see as it goes on. It's easier when somebody else has already done it to learn, right? Yeah. And that's what's so cool about this stuff. So, like, just as Overwatch could have learned from TF2, this game very clearly learned from Overwatch. It learned from its success, as well as some of the mistakes that it made, and it iterated well on that. So I know you guys are leaning away from designs. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think because it's third person as well, the implementation of crazier designs whilst maintaining like what feels to me to be a very different gameplay loop between a lot of the different characters has been really enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I meant to echo that. Like, I think the kit design is far better. Not even close. This is kind of why I think Overwatch is cooked, because they release a hero like Hazard, who I love, and then a big percentage of the community is like, oh, he's overkitted. But he can, all of his abilities are like, you can do multi-use with them, and that's how I think a lot of the.
You know why?
Why?
You know why people say he's overkitted? People say he's overkitted because compared to the rest of the roster, he does feel overkitted. But that says more about the rest of the roster than it does about Hazard. Because in my opinion, every hero in Overwatch should be something like Hazard. Like, I think that would be a better game. I think one of Overwatch's mistakes in their hero design in terms of the mechanics of the heroes is they actually made it too easy in some cases for the skill floor. I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but I actually think Marvel Rivals has like a more difficult entry skill floor for most of the designs, and that's even including like some super easy heroes like Scarlet Witch. But like when you compare that to like, I hate to say it, maybe I don't, but the brain dead designs like Moira and Mercy, it's like, bro, shit like that should not even be in Overwatch still to this day, in my honest opinion. And it's just like, oh yeah, but you know, you want people to be able to get into your game, and no, I've been at this war with Mercy mains for a long time, so at this point it's whatever. And now we play a game like Marvel, and you don't have a Mercy in the game on. I hope they don't introduce.
Wait, AVRL, shut up! You're taking advantage of all the like. How are noob players going to enjoy the game if they don't execute the kit? Like
exactly. And
no, they have to. They need Mercy and Bastion. Marvel Rivals will not succeed because it doesn't have a Mercy or a Bastion. Shut up, AVRL. You don't know what you're talking about. Skill isn't relative. If you don't know how to use your ability, you cannot play the hero. It's not physically possible. You're wrong.
And K-pop sucks. Sorry.
Dude, I freaking
Sam, you said that in your video. I died, bro.
That was a joke. I was joking. Swear to God, I was joking.
SPILO is so good at playing Devil's Advocate. He can even act in Devil's Advocate. I'll give you the Oscar for that one. He can even do
fed up for that crap, dude.
He can do
so much.
He can do the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man acting. Actually, that's not one of his best acting roles. Anyway, my point is like Marvel Rivals once again proves with hero bans. Proves in another way that you don't need the super brain dead low tier design like Mercy to have a game that's accessible, right? I've yet to really see commentary from people. Maybe there's the odd person out there who's like, oh, Marvel Rivals is too hard for me to get into because I suck too much. It's like, I haven't really seen that. And I just think Overwatch and Blizzard in general, in most of their games, baby their player base way too much, and they cater to the one tricks way too much in that sort of regard. So
yes, it feels like the game design wants you to have to hold F1, and you better learn how to cycle your ability. That's what I love about all these characters. And I said in my video, the more I play, the more interested I get, because I realize there's more things that are like Hazard in terms of, you know, Bucky is a character that SPILO made a video about, right? Like he can use his dash to get away, he can use it to CC, he can use it to this, he can do that. And like every character feels like that, or they have some sort of like base interaction. So Captain America, a character that I love, I feel he's a little underrated because I think some people were trying to play him as a Hulk solo duelist, and Hulk's melees are very easy to hit. He has tools to like isolate a target, whereas Captain America, he hits 2 melees, then he can throw his shield 4 times. So I think he's more like Winston in terms of you want to like hold the corner and cleave. And once you like establish on a corner against certain tanks that you can brawl and sustain and like then put up your shield and move around, as long as you're like cleaving that shield for a long time, you can really start to carry the game. And like you kind of need the Thor to be in there with you, who's kind of overpowered a little bit once he gets established as well. But like the fact that I even can like explain this and say, well, when you get this perfect engagement, even this B tier hero, I feel like I'm dominating the game in my right engagement. That's not something I feel like you can say oftentimes in Overwatch. Like they really try to balance it so you can kind of do that in Overwatch 2, but like it's not as complicated, right? Like the barrier of entry of this character is a lot higher than any Overwatch design is allowed to be, because they're so worried about like, well, what if you can't just pick up and get value instantly? Like, well, what's gonna happen?
The thing is, you still can, because skill is still relative. Like half the people that play Mantis and Luna and Bronze or Silver have no idea what half the abilities do, but they still win the game because skill is relative. You just have to have a general idea, and that's it. Like, and the other thing too is like we don't need skill bloat. Like you look at something like Winston, a character like Winston would definitely is totally fine. I have no problems with Winston. He's a very simple kit. He just isn't. You pick it up and just roll the entire lobby. You might not 100% be sure how to play him, but like my whole point is like to explain my caricature is that like this whole concept that people are incapable of having any sort of fun playing a character, that they don't fully understand every detail, is complete garbage nonsense. Like people in Overwatch are way more appealed to the more complex and sexy characters like Lucio and Genji and things like that, right? They like that kind of design, and you don't have to understand all the nuances to play the character, right? You don't have to understand all the nuances of Iron Fist and go, oh, my non-empowered doesn't pursue as far. No, you just pay the character, right? Like as long as you kind of know what the abilities do. Like I'm literally was in like platinum and still learning about a Winter Soldier's kit. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to. Everything is relative. So as long as it's not too overwhelming, just play the game. Like
think about that player's long-term enjoyment over time. right? When they start to
rewards.
learn those things, like the
Exactly.
skill. So it's fun at the skill floor, even when you kind of don't know what you're doing to some degree, and then it only gets better over time. That's insane. That's why I think this game has legs, man, because they're going to keep adding heroes like that, and we're done.
But balancing, and I've talked about this with Alec Dawson like a year ago, and he was talking about this with like, I think I remember who was he talking about, but it was like not too kit loaded, but having a couple more knobs. If we're talking about balance, it's a lot easier to balance a character that has more knobs, because there's a lot of different things that you could do. Besides, how do you balance Ryan?
Yeah,
like I think Ryan is a pretty skillful character, right? But like you have to think so hard. How do you balance Mercy? Like I love those guys to death, but Mercy is unbalanceable in her current state right now. You have the most skillful aspect of the character, which is movement, which isn't even. I know we're getting into Overwatch, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like whereas Winter Soldier, there's legitimate like 50 knobs. His health, the slow, the damage on his E, the range on the E, the charge up time, the hook distance, the hook damage, the hook CC, the dash distance, the dash damage, the dash cooldowns for all of them, his weapon, his reload time, his ultimate. Like you could literally, there's anything, right? His anything that you want. And that's the same thing with the current implementation of Hazard, which anyway.
Can I add to this?
I'll jump in soon as well.
Sure, go. No, you go first, because I'm going back to Marvel Design. I want you, because I don't know much about Hazard. I want you to take it.
I'm gonna go. I was gonna go back to Marvel Design anyway, but
yeah, you go first. You go first.
I want to say like there is a surprising amount of depth in the Marvel hero design. At first, I felt like, oh, maybe because I was like super Overwatch pilled in a lot of ways. I think a lot of my, and this is the thing, like, you know, you play Marvel more, you play the game more, and you start to appreciate a lot of the depth more. And yeah, there's like a surprising amount of depth in a lot of the heroes. Like, it was like originally like maybe there's too many buttons to press, and maybe that could still happen if you just get into like the Giga team buff like kind of situation where like you get like Z, X, and C are all buttons you press now above your normal buttons. Like holy crap, what game am I playing now? This is as many buttons as like a 1 hour late game Dota 2 game.
Like MMO level.
We have like six active items you have to press. We're playing Deadlock now. We have like all these active items and bullshit. Anyway, but the degree of buttons to press in depth right now is good. I probably don't want to see it too much more than where it is, but it does give you more levers to work with. But you also have a situation where I think they've also just really nailed melee heroes, because that's something that Overwatch struggled to do, and I don't think Overwatch can do. And this is, people will say what they want about third person versus first person. I still think, generally speaking, for shooting mechanics, first person is far superior in just a raw feel. But in terms of nailing the hero design and how you're going to like play with the kits and a hero shooter, I can appreciate third person because, well, I don't think you can really do successful melee characters in first person. Every game that tries to do first person melee, it always feels clunky, it always feels crap. You can play the best melee FPS games out there, like the Mountain Blades and whatever, and the For Honors or whatever. It still never feels that good, and you're always sitting there like, man, if this was third person, the melee would feel way better, and it does in a game like Marvel. And there's too many heroes in the Marvel IP that are somewhat melee in their design, that like you can't do a first-person game for Marvel actually. So part of it is, I think obviously they want to sell more skins and third person better for that, but you can't design like how do you do it?
Panther. You couldn't.
Black Panther, Spider, but it's also like this is something I talked to Frida about. It's like, even if you think about it from a point of view where like what do you see in first person? You see your gun mostly, and you might see a hand. That looks ridiculous for a game like Marvel, where if you're playing Black Panther or Spider-Man, what do you actually see in first person? Just your claws going like that. It's like weird, right? It wouldn't even make sense. Spider-Man's just doing this with his hands the whole time. Like, that's your first person. So I think they really nailed melee, and I think that's part of Ryan's problem with Overwatch, is he's predominantly like mostly a melee character, and that's why he feels so out of place. I don't think Ryan really feels good in a game like Overwatch. Like, to me, maybe there was a time in the early novelty honeymoon phase of Overwatch where, like, you know, everyone just stands behind shield and Ryan can just do whatever. But like, I don't know, like, you look at modern designs like Hazard, you go back to Ryan, it's like, Jesus, Ryan is just so dated and shit in compared to something like Hazard, which feels way more modern, feels way more Marvel Rivals, which is what you guys already said. I also think tank design in general in Marvel actually is better than Overwatch, which is why maybe you don't have as much like disdain for playing tank in Marvel Rivals as you do for Overwatch, but I still don't think tank is the most desirable role, even with that in count. And part of the reason why tank is better in Marvel Rivals is, first of all, it's harder to get a GOATS type composition going, and not just because Wolverine exists, but because you don't have as much overlapping damage mitigation that you can use on other tanks.
Tank
so that
utility is
you can
kind
get
of
this
cheap.
insane
utility is
synergy. Because like when we had the 6v6 5v5 debate, Samito, one of my biggest points, and I still think is one of my most successful points, and still stands today, and even the Overwatch 6v6 test, is that tank to tank synergy within the inter-role is the most OP synergy. I'm not going to go into the full maths of it because it'll take me a while, but to summarize it, damage mitigation, when used for other tanks, the more tanks there are on the battlefield and the more damage mitigation you can spread between different tanks mitigating for each other, the more insane and exponential that synergy becomes, to the point where it's ridiculous. And that doesn't really exist in Marvel, because what mitigation can you put on other tanks? You're looking at, Magneto throwing a shield into somebody, but that's a huge trade-off, because then you don't get to shield yourself, right? So it's a giant trade-off. And then beyond that,
melee characters too. The melee characters can bypass it. There's more bypasses.
Yeah, and Groot can throw down a shield, like throw down a wall for somebody, and that's kind of Groot's maybe the worst defender for damage mitigation stacking, but that would be it. You would have, and I can prove this, because imagine if there was no hero limits and you had 3 Groots on the field. How ridiculous would the game be? Way too fucking crazy, and you wouldn't want that, right? So that's proof right there that like insane damage mitigation, and visually as well, that's just ridiculous. But most of the tanks, they have a lot of agency. Like Captain America is by far my favorite tank to play. And just the options that he has, the agency that he has in terms of individually what you can do and how you can carry the game is way more obvious on tanks in Marvel Rivals than it is in Overwatch. And I think individual agency and visible impact is super important, not just for a dopamine hit of like, can I see my damage coming up? Can I see my name come up with the kill feed? It's not even just that, but it's just everything in terms of how many abilities you have, any options you have, how many things that you can do where you can see your impact of the game. And I also think just having more abilities in general for tanks not only allows you to better balance different characters through the different levers you talked about, SPILO, but just the fact that you have more options of playing the game, that you're not locked into a very specific thing, rotation of abilities or anything like that you might have in Overwatch design. Like I think like Winston is fun, but primarily because I think Primal is just an insanely high skill ceiling type of ultimate and really cool in design. But beyond that, there's not that much you're doing. Like the right click, especially Overwatch 1 Winston, like the right click of Winston actually made a world of difference. And that was just one extra ability. There's a lot more downtime. Ryan is a super boring design. It's crazy when you look at Overwatch 2 tanks, how much better Queen and Hazard is in design compared to Overwatch 1 tank design. And then you look at Marvel Rivals, and every tank is like Hazard. It's like, holy shit, now we're starting to really cook. So
not even that. Go ahead, finish.
That design is why I think tanks are better in Marvel Rivals. Still not perfect. You won't solve the tank problem alone on this, but it's much better than Overwatch in that regard.
Can I go, SPILO, or do you want to add on to that?
No, go ahead. I have a cute question for you in a second, but go ahead.
So not only that, but the types of abilities and skills, like the roles are like way less boxed in Marvel Rivals. And like you have tanks that are supporty. Captain America's ult is Brig Rally. It sustains a team. So if you lose a support, you can fill that role as a tank player. Like some of the DPS, like Iron Fist can oftentimes be played a lot like an off tank in some ways. Like, and we'll see what's coming, right? There's been, I'm unsure about how much I want to talk about leaks and stuff like that right now. But, like, Ultron kind of leaked, right? Like the hypothetical Ultron leak. Let's say hypothetically, like whatever the hell they end up doing, I don't know, just to be clear with you, like they end up doing, like Ultron is like perma flying as a support allegedly. And full disclosure, I have not seen it. I don't know. I can't confirm it. I don't fucking know. But like if Ultron is a support, like having drones and stuff that can heal and damage people, that's almost like DPS-y with the mobility, like the ability to constantly fly, like, you know, like they could even psychologically bait people into being DPS players. But if the DPS it's on the label, but it functions like a tank, then you start getting into like more of the maze. Like it's more outlandish. They're not boxed in. It's so undefined. It's on the player to create it. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm trying to say, or am I crazy?
Let me add in one super fast thing before SPILO asks this question. The super fast thing I want to add is you mentioned off tanks there, and that just like reminded me of something. Is that I think off tanks are more popular to play than main tanks for a lot of the reasons I listed, because main tanks are typically the ones sitting there taking damage masochistically and just holding the point and super reliant on your team. Off tanks are the ones going around doing shit and getting things done, and that's way more fun. And I think most of the tank design plays way more into an off tank style than a main tank style. Even if I'm the solo tank, I can still play an off-tank style. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'm just at a low enough MMR where I can do whatever I want. It really doesn't matter. But you also mentioned like some of the DPS could possibly still fill a little bit of an off-tank position. Like I see, maybe I'm solo tank, but I see Wolverine on my team. Like, oh fuck it, he can sort of be a tank, and we can both kind of off-tank this and just make it work. Maybe an Iron Fist as well, stuff like that. We can just make it work. Again, maybe I'm at a low enough MMR where that can just work. But again, that would also be me proving it from the majority of the play base. I'm kind of representing the majority of the play base by not being like a Giga GM player here in a way. But yeah, I think having off-tank designs is the correct way to go, and Marvel does that, and Overwatch has got way too many main tank designs.
Every shield tank has like a low range, the problem with Sigma was that Sigma had like insane damage output on top of all that stuff to me. Like that's why I didn't like Strange. Yeah,
I'm just gonna. Yeah, no, I'm disagreeing with you. Is what I'm saying. Like I think
Strange does have damage, but it's not nearly as much as it was for Sigma, in my opinion. And the shield and the sustain isn't as good. Like, he doesn't have
a fan of the tank design, so
I think it's just as much. Like I think my problem with tanks is not that like the concept of tanks. I think that like there's like this really weird phenomena, right, where like there isn't really tank synergy in Marvel Rivals. So a lot of people that are coming from the Overwatch 6v6 bandwagon, and Marvel Rivals is going to be like the new horizon, like the sailing into the west, the Grey Havens, right? It's not at all like Overwatch 6v6, not even close. It's good enough, by the way.
Less tank synergy is good in my opinion.
Sure. But it's just different, right? But my critique with tanks has been not so much the lack of synergy, right? But it's been more the fact that I like the kits, but I just don't know that. I think I could probably pick a major nitpick with pretty much every single tank's execution, almost without exception, with the exception of, I think, Captain America. I think Captain America works out pretty well for me. And I'm just curious to see how you guys feel about this. I made a video about this. I got absolutely cooked. A lot of people agreed with me. A lot of people disagreed with me. And yet I watch a lot of high-level tank play, and I just want to gouge my eyes out sometimes. I think Thor, we'll start with Thor. Like, I just want to quickly go down the list. I think Core has so much potential, but his execution is so crap. You could reposition relatively well. His damage output is inconsistent. A lot of it is frontlining and swinging. He really struggles to sustain himself and to mitigate damage consistently. Everyone's like, oh, but no, you're wrong. I've watched the best Thor players. It's so freaking boring. His ult sucks. The global cooldown on his abilities makes no sense whatsoever. You can't layer, you can't combo. Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, Thor's the one that I agree with you on. Like,
it's just missed potential.
You can get value on Thor.
Yes.
Like Hawk said it best to me when he was talking about Hulk. I was in the betas. Let me tell you, this was so nasty. I hopped in Discord with Reiner and Hawk, and that was my tank line in the beta, playing dive. You can imagine how that went. It was like steamrolls. This dude Hawk was unreal on Hulk, and he said like the kits could be more intuitive. Like now, when you take them to the ceiling, they're crazy. But like, I wish Thor was less clunky, and I'm willing to trade off some other places. Like the base foundation is there. I'm not a big like Thor's one of the only few tanks I've been starting to play more and more. And like, granted, the more I learn, the better I'm gonna get. But I do think you're right that it could be improved. I think it could be improved a little bit. Especially
I just think it's how fun the character is. It's not even like a question of balance for me, because I think that's something that's subjective, and you just need to let Marvel Rivals do its thing right now. But like, I want the game to have more appealing tank characters, and I think for me, Thor just like, and it just doesn't. I don't see the appeal, and I've tried it so many times. It just feels like there's so many. If they just did that, it would just become immediately more appealing. I think Venom is a good example of like a Marvel Rivals character that I don't like, but I understand the appeal. He flows nicely. He's like, baby's first wrecking ball, basically. Like no skill expression, basically no skill expression at all. Let's be honest. Outside of mechanics, there's no cooldown management. There's just nothing. It's the easiest thing in the world. But sure, it's fun. It's cool. Cap has like amazing complexity, amazing strategy. You don't do a lot of damage, but I think the design is honestly fine. I think Doctor Strange is very skillful. I think he's super overtuned, but very skillful, super high damage output. Magneto, I haven't played enough to really have an opinion. I think his team up with Scarlet Witch is really fun. But then I think we get to a Groot. Another one. It's just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I've tried it. I've played versus it. It's cheeks. It's just cheeks. It's just every worst aspect of tank possible boiled into one. It's terrible. I'm going to reserve judgment on Penny. I find her boring and very defensive oriented. I know there's a lot of complexity of things that you can do, but I find her extremely limited. Who else am I forgetting, guys? I'm forgetting a big one. Who am I forgetting?
Captain America.
You get Hulk.
Well, it's
Hulk.
Hulk. Okay, yeah. We'll finish with Hulk here. Jump is just awful. It's just awful. It's a terrible implementation. It just feels like it's like I don't have a problem with the way the kits work, like the way jump.
How you use
it has
them,
a jump, it has a it's this whole charge thing and the stupid arrow. It's just like there's just aspects of each kit that it's like, whether it's the global cooldown with Thor or whether it's the jump with Hulk, that it just makes playing the character so annoying.
Would you say it's like it makes playing the characters harder for the wrong reasons? It's like, it's not that you can't get big value on these characters. It's like, hey,
it's not fun. It's clunky. It's what it is.
Okay.
It's clunky. It's clunky is the best way. And I can contrast that with the DPS execution, which, if not always the most effective, feels incredibly fluid. Even a character like Magic, which you said you've been struggling with, it flows like violin. It's beautiful.
It's
right?
It's like water. It flows like water.
Just flows like
line
water.
that Genji
Right?
says? What's the line? Go ahead, Avril.
Do we agree that DPS is probably the best design role, generally speaking?
Easily.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
I think it murders Overwatch design. I think tank, like I'm actually going to vouch for Overwatch tank, not all Overwatch tank design, but I think like there's a lot of good Overwatch tanks and a lot of good Overwatch supports. But I think like Overwatch DPS like loses hard.
Do you know? I think part of the reason why is because I think DPS in a game like this, it's also just easy to design in like a majority shooting game. DPS is the most straightforward. You can hit the dopamine triggers way easy in terms of like how you design the kit. It's just way more simple. And even the melee, like melee is the most like biggest pitfall in DPS design that you can get into. And somehow they even nailed that, which I'm super impressed by. Because Overwatch couldn't do that. And maybe it is the third person to first person, but you can still get it wrong.
I think it's third person, for sure.
But you can still get it wrong even in third person. And Marvel managed to not get it wrong in third person either. At least right now. We'll see 6 months down the line. Maybe they release a melee DPS that's just like, wow. I think the most frustrating is still probably Iron Fist, but like, well, that's a topic.
What do you mean by frustrating? Like bad? Like what? Can you elaborate?
I think it's just like in terms of the skill floor of how easily you can, because he's a noob stomping
DPS
hero.
Doom. It feels like DPS Doom in Overwatch 1.
People said the same thing about Genji. When they learn to not shoot the block, we'll see. Because it's like if shooting block is the entire point of his kit, because that's how
I think Genji's a lot harder. I think Genji's a lot harder to play.
True.
Like Genji's skill ceiling and how easy is, how punishing it is to play Genji. Anyway, I wanted to also mention like shit, lost my train of thought. We were on. I was talking about DPS.
Deep DPS design. You nailed melee DPS. Might be third person.
I think Groot as well. Like I think I agree with Spot on Groot. Like Groot just doesn't. He kind of represents everything I dislike about a lot of tank design and definitely in Overwatch as well. Spammy, like fills your screen up with crap and like just super damage mitigation based. I think tank design is good for not just the tank player, but the health of the game in general in terms of what you're up against. To play against when you spend less time shielding and protecting and like doing damage mitigation, more time being a presence, doing the damage yourself and being active in the game, and also playing against. I don't enjoy playing against Groot. Seriously, do not enjoy playing against Groot. The most spammy character, CC based as well, bro. We got to get away from CC. Like CC in these types of games is like it's just the worst. I hate that. Like
I don't mind them.
I really appreciate at least moving from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2. The reduction on CC was a godsend. Like that it's really frustrating in games like this. Especially hard CC, like the penny hard CC, not fun. At least for stuff like I don't know, Luna and Mantis, it's kind of still a skill shot, even though, Jesus, Mantis' sleep is just like giga easy sleep dart for mana, if anything. But Groot is just an example of what I don't like about tank.
Sam doesn't mind CC because his character can block it and block literally everything.
True.
Iron Fist is balanced.
True.
Sam,
finish your thought. Troll the audience right now.
Before I go on,
your thought. Finish your thought, Sam, because I'll finish when you're done.
I actually really disagree with you guys on most tanks, except for Spilo. Your point
I do as well.
But I agree with you on Thor 100%, and I agree with you on Hulk. I think I actually like the more that you play the tanks, the more I think the Overwatch tanks are more approachable at first than the Marvel tanks because they're not as like they make you feel like that. But the gameplay loop is every bit as much there. Like the more I play them, like I make big mistakes and I learn, but I wouldn't say that like I don't mind playing against Groot at all. I don't know if it's fair to say Groot's CC based either. He's like, what would you consider his walls? I guess is the question I would ask.
It depends on what you play, though.
I'm probably let me
Yeah,
explain a little.
sure,
I'm probably being a little fast and loose with the definitions here. Because like CC,
I think we all are, right?
CC is probably more better defined as like actual slow stuns, roots, and stuff like that. But I'm like, I also just think like, it's disruption in gameplay.
Sure,
and the spamming of walls,
Disruption.
spamming of walls is disruption of gameplay to me. Like it just it stops the gameplay flow, stops you from doing what you want to do in the game.
It's a mobile mechanic as well.
If I'm being a little fast and loose with terminology and definitions, I'm kind of throwing the walls in there. But like my explanation of it is just like he's a real disruptive character in the game and one of the only unique, like hardcore disruptive characters in the game compared to everything else in the roster.
All right, can I go? Because I've been waiting. I know Spilo wants to go. Okay. All right, so a lot of things were said. Third person, I think definitely is a benefit overall. Is going through everything everybody's been saying for like an hour. They actually
slandered tanks. Defend yourself. I slandered like 3 tanks specifically, mostly 3 tanks, really, for me.
In Overwatch 1, when they were designing Genji, they actually were trying to make him have the sword the entire time, and then they split the character into 2, into Hanzo and Genji. That's like the origin story of that. So for sure, the Overwatch devs even publicly said like they just really struggled with the melee characters. And while like the momentum of swings of Reinhardt kind of feels good, like a lot of the animation happens off screen, and you can't really. I don't think you get the same oomph out of it as I am when I'm like flailing around as Hulk and smashing things to pieces. Like so, I think the tank role in Overwatch, let's say the thing that everybody glorifies about 6v6, okay? I was happy to see go because so much about the strategy of 6v6 Overwatch tank is gumming up chokes with cooldown sustain that you have to mirror in order to play the game. And I'm kind of like on with AVRL about this. And I showed evidence of this in my 6v6 I love it, but all these problems still exist thing, where like I had a game where I play Winston Diva and Dorado against some poor casuals that are trying to play Hazard Queen, and they get one a limb the entire game. We hard choke them out. Like, and to me, it's like the way that tank plays and the way you're supposed to play. I'm happy to see that go. And if Overwatch fans want 6v6, and like I even might make content teaching you how to anchor the right corner of the map. To me, that's like incredibly boring and what everyone hated about Overwatch tanking. And you drew the short straw in that, especially in many iterations of the game where the vast majority of the players that actually played the game, they wanted to run in as Reinhardt, not anchor in front of your team like you're supposed to. And that's why they redesigned Overwatch 2 tank design to be somewhat more like that. And I like tank in all these games. I played in all of them. Even everything I'm just criticizing right there, I played in Overwatch 1, played in Overwatch 2, and I like it in Marvel Rivals as well. And I will say the reason why I like all the tanks I like so far. I can't really understand Penny. I just can't get the vibe of the flow of the buttons for some reason. Like I see her
the gene.
right. It's like him with magic, right? It's like I'm a dominant Magneto player. Like a lot of the times, the entire game feels in my hands. If there is a frontline fight going on and we get the certain things, even against snipers, I feel like I can interact against when those bans aren't through. But like my ultimate is able to eat a Punisher ultimate and then kill him with it. Like the intricate outplays of these kits. Like overall, the entire game is like this, right? Where Mag's got so many decisions to make. So rather than need my own tank teammate to cycle with me, I can potentially face tank in to deal damage, start to draw aggro, then use 2 tanking cooldowns on myself if I want to, or help my Black Panther who's been feeding in the backline the whole time. Like there's so much optionality and shots that I'm hitting constantly. The tanking uptime and cooldown flow is exactly what I want out of a tank experience for me. And Mag's like a B+ tier character, I think. Obviously Strange is like the S tier of this and overtuned because like the ways you counter the good thing about the tank design is like a lot of the melee characters counter them. So if Mag does not want Thor running at his face. Like that is the worst possible thing because Thor is gaining power by hitting you and deals more damage than you faster. And so that's like one of the harder counters is like, and I know this now having played so much Mag, that if I play CA or Thor, I can run it down on certain maps, stuff them up, and do a little bit of that Overwatch gameplay where I'm funneling them into chokes, but the entire tank experience isn't exactly about that. Like it sometimes looks like that in some games, and that's where I think there's a lot of overrated tanks right now that people like to pick.
Just bad map design, to be honest with you, but that's for a different topic.
I think Penny and Groot are super easy to counter in my experience. Like
Soldier.
I think like they got these huge head hit boxes, and it's just like an IQ test of do you run in with Venom or not. Like if you're diving into those two tanks, then okay. But if you play Strange into it, or if you play any competent slow style where if you know as an Overwatch player how to clear resources out, Penny and Groot are kind of jokes of characters in my opinion. Now like the design of Groot, I kind of like. I think maybe some tweaks can happen to these characters over time. I don't think that, luckily due with bans and all this, we don't have to redesign every character in totality, but Groot in theory is kind of cool because he's got one wall that he can establish that's bigger that will heal his team when awakened, and they awaken when you throw the little nade out, and then another one where you do insane damage to the thing. So it actually literally is crowd control, I would say, because like you wall something in, then you nade it, and then all the walls attack it. So that's kind of cool in a way.
It's like yes, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just the execution, right? And like that's the thing I like Magneto, but like the Groot, Hulk, to a lesser extent Penny, and then Thor thing is not the concept of what the kit does. A dash, a hammer throw, an empowered range thing, cooldown management. It is the execution that loses.
Yeah, sure. And I agree. Thor would be significantly better, like if I could use those abilities like on a cooldown. I think that it's just complicating it for the sake of complicating it. And it would be more approachable and more fun to play, and it wouldn't lose any of its skill ceiling. In fact, like you might be able to be more versatile with Thor, which might actually make him OP because like apparently his team up with his cap is pretty solid. So I don't know, but I do definitely agree.
I just want somebody to prove to me, like even with like the Hulk thing with a good jump, why does he need a jump like that? Is it like I don't play enough Hulk? I've tried it, it feels terrible, and then I didn't want to play it anymore. I played like 4 or 5 games, and that was it. So
you got to hit up Beast Halo, dude. I'm watching these guys go crazy on Hulk. It's nuts.
But like I know it's good. Is it fun? Is the bronze player gonna want to?
I think it's way more fun than Overwatch tanks. Like I can't think of another Overwatch tank that has as much skill expression as Hulk. Like I think I fundamentally agree with
that is a hot take. That is a hot take.
I like his exile is cool. The exile is really cool and hard. Like I think that's easy skill expression. I think it's more so the mobility and the intuitiveness of the jump with all that in your bubbles, right? Spilo, is that what you're referring to mostly?
Yeah, it's the intuitiveness with just the jump, really.
Okay.
I think most of the game is a bit clunky. Like I play Rocket and I realize I shoot at my feet half the time. I'm like, oh, I have to jump constantly in order. Like there's little annoyances with all of the game because it's not as polished of a game as Overwatch. Like I'll admit like DPS feels better overall, but I don't know. Iron Man feels clunky in comparison to.
I don't like putting all things in one category here.
I got used to it. That's what's so
I agree. Yeah, that's my point. So like that's why I ultimately wouldn't agree with Spilo because I just is like holding spacebar to jump as Hulk. Does it feel awkward? Is it not as fluid as Winston Leap and where you're gliding with the midair control? It's not as finely tuned of a feel experience as Overwatch, but I personally I don't care. Like the hero kits, when I jump in as Hulk, it's okay. So I got a ranged attack, I've got a stun, I've got bigger melees than Captain America. I think that's like one way they could try to buff CA is to make his hitboxes bigger. Side note, but like Hulk swinging away, and then I can push my ult again, which I'm charging based on my shields, and then I have all this outplay where if I hit my shield in time, I can counter ultimates. I can dive back to my team as they're trying to cast an ult, and then cast a shield on everybody, and then I'm getting ult, then I get an extra life. Like,
maybe the bigger kit
from the tank. The amount of outplays from the tank position is like I never get to do any. The only thing similar to that is Hazard, basically in Overwatch 2. Like Hazard has those levels of outplay. We'll have AVRL at some point. Oh my God, is it DC? But he doesn't like tanks. He disagrees. Like he's on the other end of the spectrum with this.
My camera. Hold up, sorry, something happened.
Yes, it did die.
You keep talking.
Two things for me. It's like
I'd like to take design overall. I'll let you go, and then maybe I'll go back again. Go ahead.
Sure. Maybe the more kits just means that there's more expression of being able to do different things. And I think that I'm also very suspicious that like I think one of the things that I think is highly underrated is the amount of uptime. I mentioned this earlier that Marvel Rivals has compared to Overwatch 2 and honestly 6v6 Overwatch as well, where you're just able to do stuff continually for long extended periods of time. And so even if it may not be like it might not lead to kills, right? But you're gonna get those ticks, and you're gonna get those ticks constantly. Like you play Captain America, you play Doctor Strange, you play. I haven't played enough Hulk, but you play like Venom and stuff like that. Like you play Magneto, you're doing damage and you're doing stuff constantly, like just always fighting. And that's definitely something that Overwatch does not have. It doesn't have. It's on and off its tempo.
I actually wanted to bring up as well, like. Let me just briefly touch up on DPS really quick, and then I want to talk about tank again. I actually think I said that tank design in Marvel is better than tank design in terms of a feel compared to Overwatch, and I'll stand by that. And in DPS, except for the melee is by far like super good in Marvel. But I actually think the shooting is still just way better feeling in Overwatch, and that's because primarily probably because of first person. If you're talking about like a shooting experience, you can't beat first person for a shooting experience. So I actually generally like Overwatch DPS in comparison. Like nothing, my favorite DPS in Overwatch to out myself is Sojin. I just, people might cringe at that because like she was broken for a while, but I still played her even when she wasn't good, just because I enjoyed the kit. I just enjoy the gameplay flow. And a lot of the overall design is just like, there's way higher skill ceiling, a lot of the Overwatch DPS design that just is not reflected the same. Even though there's more buttons in Marvel Rivals, the actual like raw mechanical ceiling, I think is maybe high, except for maybe like a Spider-Man, which is like so wacky and out of the box that it's just nothing I even thought could happen in the game. It's not a better shooter, but it is maybe a better hero game. I was about to say hero shooter, but the shooting aspect is actually still better than Overwatch. Let me just talk something interesting about tanks as well, because SPILO brought up a while ago, it's like tank synergy. Actually, no, maybe Frida brought this up, but the tank synergy is actually something I don't think should exist to a prevalent degree in a game like Marvel Rivals. Maybe team-ups is like, okay, that's a separate thing. But outside of team-ups, like tank synergy is one of the downsides of Overwatch as a hot take. And some people might not understand why I have that position. But the reason I put that position is that is what causes a lot of the tank design issues, in my opinion, in a game like Overwatch, where if you have, just like how damage mitigation stacking is a problem potentially, like just having a lot of tanks and that can cause balance issues. But having obvious synergy has a way higher impact on your teammates then picking correctly as well. So unless you're in like an environment where you're always duo queuing, you always have a duo with you that can partner with you to reach the tank synergy. The highs are quite high, but the lows are extremely low in the sense that you have a situation where if your team isn't picking correctly in terms of the tanks to achieve the correct tank synergy, then you're having a really bad time. It's like it puts way more reliance on your teammates to play the game correctly and do the correct thing. And I think better design is if everything is closer to an off tank and you have a lack of tank synergy, not to say there's no tank synergy, but just not as heavily and prevalent as it was in Overwatch 1, then you have a situation where you can have multiple tanks, 2, maybe 3 tanks in a game like Marvel Rivals, and you're not heavily reliant on your other tank to be in the game. You should have a game of Marvel Rivals where solo tanking is possible without like having to tweak and play heavily with HP bars and all that between Overwatch 6v6 and 5v5, right? Like the difference between 2 tanks and 1 tank is they have to do so much with that for the sake of balance. Whereas like in an ideal world, you can make 1 tank work because you have DPSs that can maybe sort of off tank there. But most importantly, you're not reliant on tank synergies, and every tank has a lot more they can do in their own kit and a lot more agency having more of an off tank style and a closer to DPS style. So I actually think like the lack of super obvious and super high level synergy in tanks is probably a good thing long term.
I'll just add on quickly before you go, Sam. I that adds on to my point, and I'll say that's while the map design is stronger in Overwatch overall, and maybe that adds to some strategy, it also means what you're saying in terms of the tank synergies being able to stifle out the enemy. Having a bad tank line is so much worse, specifically in 6v6 Overwatch, but your ability to move in 6v6 Rivals, because the maps are open, you can destroy them, and just a lot of the kits, whether it's having third person to navigate around the map, or they have a lot of wacky mobility, or one's an invisible character, one does that. Like there's so many ways to get around the map that you never really need a tank to get in. It's like competitively speaking, having a tank will help you in a lot of different ways. Obviously, like you kind of want one, but it's not like you can't see the enemy or can't get into a fight in 6v6 Marvel Rivals in the way that like a good tank synergy would dominate and suffocate the map against the bad one in 6v6 Overwatch. And that was certainly in my testing when I try to grind it out. So go ahead, Sam.
AVRL, I'm not disagreeing with your point, but I want to try to get even more specific if possible. I don't know if it's I agree with you 100% that I think it's cool and better when tanks have individual agency, 100%. I think the synergies can be on the side, but what really broke the synergies in Overwatch was when it was mitigation synergies, not aggression synergies, right? Like DM.
I agree. Actually,
I didn't mind the Zarya bubbles too much. So like, I really want to hone in that because I think you're right, but I know everybody at home is going to take that and be like, yeah, it's fucking bullshit. Tank synergies are fun.
It is mitigation. It is mitigation synergies, because when you think about the best tank duos and all the classic ones, like the Ryan Zarya or the Winston Zarya or like
play against that all
Winston
day.
Diva, what is the common factor here? It's the defense matrix and the Zarya bubble. It's the defensive synergy that is just like oppressive in those games.
That makes it a stall.
You are correct.
If you look at like Cap's abilities, for an example, like all of Cap's, like his sprint, his leap, his like shield bash forward, his only mitigation ability is like his actual shield health. And look at Hulk's. Hulk's only one is his bubble on himself. So like as a player, when you're shooting that tank, and this is a point you brought up about like getting rid of double shield and having like a single tank in 5v5, like it feels better to be shooting a player or damaging a player than a mitigation. Like, because it's SPILO's point. It's like in your face, obvious. And the only tank in Marvel that does that, aside from the shield tanks, who are allowed to be. I can't wait till season 1. By the way, we should revisit.
Good question for you in just a second, Sam.
Sure,
when you get a second.
Sure. I'll wrap this up real quick. Like,
I wish SPILO asked me questions.
Listen, we got enough of that with y'all's push debate where you agreed and debated each other. That was fucking hilarious. Like, their ability to introduce this many melee characters that can pierce the barriers of mitigation also takes away from that type of sustain mitigation stacking. So to me, like, I wanted to hone in on that because I think it's really important. It's not necessarily tank synergies. It's the Marvel tanks all have more individual agency, but it's more movement and engage tool based rather than just I'm gonna sit here and mitigate forever.
Correct,
like even like
correct.
Strange is the would you guys say Strange or Mag is the Sigma of this game?
Mag. Well, it depends.
They're
Definitely
similar.
strange.
They're
It's definitely
poke tanks with
strange,
shields,
but
right?
The
Poke
mobility
tanks with
is nice.
shields. But instead of Grasp, which mitigates all damage, Strange has a mobility ability that can be pierced, and you can still go get them as melee characters, like a lot of stuff like that. Where Overwatch like can't implement that option is like Overwatch like would struggle to do a magic. They like DPS
Everyone's
was one of the most
pilled now.
Yeah,
They called me crazy.
So it's like I just really wanted to hone in on that because I think you're right, but people are gonna misunderstand that because people are people. It's the internet, right? They'll twist your words.
They'll hear the first 5 seconds and then not like the 3 minutes later where you explain it.
Yeah,
it's the equivalent of reading the headline only and not the article.
Yeah,
anyway.
sure.
I want you to listen to this one too. This is a question for Sam. So we talked about how tank synergy is not really good, not really a thing in this game. A little bit more agency,
it is, but it's different. I think
a lot different, right? Frida, you talked about how, in theory, the map design's not great, but it still feels like there's at least enough space to avoid the tank trade as necessary. All right. Why 6v6 in Marvel Rivals?
More bigger moments.
More bodies?
More bigger moments. I mean, you talked about it yourself. The Bucky chains, like these, like the Bucky chains, it just feels, I don't know why. For me, it just feels great.
More bodies.
More bodies. Fights are more
close.
turnable. Like way deeper gameplay loop for me with options and how I have to set up.
How
like
so?
I
I'm
think,
not necessarily disagreeing.
I'm
I
think one thing for sure. If there was only one tank, it would be way harder for me to get like if it was 5v5 roll lock, for example, it would be way more. It would be way harder. Actually, it would be straight up impossible if this game was designed the way Overwatch where tanks had a little bit more sustain. Like let's benefit of the doubt, only a little bit more sustain on themselves, like HP, whatever it might be, right? Yep. If I go and isolate, this is how I hit Eternity on Iron Fist and like one above all on Iron Fist. Like the best way to get value on him is go occupy that back line, right? Yep. Force the resources onto each other and then kick back and try to kill 1 to 2 tanks. If it was just one Giga tank that could mitigate a ton of damage, his health wouldn't be to a threshold where I could create a kill and create an opening.
Right, I'll argue that point.
Sure,
I argue that Marvel Rivals tanks are infinitely more damage spongy than Overwatch 2 5v5 tanks are, as a rule.
Define damage spongy.
As in, they can tank and damage significantly better with very few exceptions.
Well, is that not also because the healing is outrageous?
The healing's also a lot better.
Overwatch?
That's true. That's true. But even like the health pools of things, Doctor Strange shield, Doctor Strange, like Venom. I mean, Venom is wrecking ball and crack in that aspect.
Sure.
I mean, I'm painting with a very broad brush here. I'm again mostly playing devil's advocate.
Depends what you're fighting him with, though. Like certain things get blown up by the tank busting.
You can still get the kills, though. That's the difference. It's like there's more ways to get the kill in this game. Like now, don't get me wrong. There are some games where you'll have an insane amount of damage.
Why?
I don't know. There's more margin for human error, I would say, to start. where
Sure.
there's two tanks. This is something Jeff Goodman talked about when they went to 5v5 is like the ability to resource dump into one target way more simple. I think the depth is there, and there's just more margin for human error. And like you've coached the highest level, you get it. Like human error is like that's the most impressive thing. Me too. I couldn't answer it to you.
They went into
66. Agree with me.
Because everyone was going into the Marvel Rivals with a set of expectations that, tank synergies are back, non-giga tanks are back, and in fact they did the exact opposite. They removed the tank synergies and they made giga tanks even stronger, right? And what they did is they I think with a couple of exceptions, I know I'm again painting with a broad brush here, but tanks are really tanky in Marvel Rivals. They have a lot of HP, they have a lot of mitigation, and they don't do a lot of damage necessarily. It depends on the tank, right? Doctor Strange and so on. Like you're at least in comparison to the other DPS cast. Like name how many tanks in Marvel Rivals that have the one-shot capability of almost every single tank in Overwatch 2.
When you say one shot, you mean like a Ryan Pin? Is it?
Yeah, Ryan Pin, Hazard combo, Diva boosters in with missiles, high charge Zarya. Like nothing does that damage, to be honest with you.
Thor's damage gets really spiky.
Thor's
like once
the
you
closest
land
one.
everything, that's the best one. And then Groot's walls are kind of insane, but they're really inconsistent.
I would
hard
argue.
to do.
I would argue post season 9, the one shot ability from tanks onto DPS is not as heavily as was either. So.
It's just interesting to me. I think there's definitely a design choice. I think almost objectively that Marvel Rivals wants tanks to be a larger slabs of HP, like certainly like a lot heavier. And I think that there's also, maybe this is a side note, that a lot of the supports are a lot more heal focused.
That I definitely agree with, but I feel like when I'm playing Hela and I headshot a Thor multiple times in a row, which I don't find difficult, I don't even really play hit scan. I just see these tanks fall over. So
they don't have the passives. That's why they don't
against Punisher as well. Armor. Like I don't know. I play a lot of Iron Man who can just beam a tank.
Sure, that's fair.
It's still going. Still got ammo. I don't know. Like the tanks are falling over in my experience, but the healing is super high.
Could somebody at a later time go run? There's no armor. There's no armor in the game. Like the shield tanks are the shields are way less oppressive in the shields in 6v6 open queue Marvel Rivals are way less oppressive to get around. Like they're strong, don't get me wrong, but there's more like one, the fact that it's open queue and you can play triple DPS. Two, the melee characters in this game being able to outright bypass the barriers. Three, the tanks that have the barriers don't have the best sustainabilities in the game on their kit. Like there is no Sigma Grasp. There is no Orisa Fortify when you're going immune. If you walk past Strange or break his shield, he can shoot you, but he doesn't have the sustain. The same Matt only has his bubble. Like so they aren't.
Or maybe it's just propped up by the sustain more so than anything else.
Yeah, maybe. I'd have to really think about it and like check the numbers with no armor as well. Like the main things that the tanks can do is like Thor can generate his shields, but there's like a big cast.
Thor's not at the top of my list for sure.
Everything they did in terms of implementation, I think, is better than Overwatch. And the reason why I say that is like it's not like I'm not trying to hard knock on Overwatch, but like when I think about what Marvel did, like if you told me they're implementing mass res, I would say fuck no. But when I play against Adam, I don't feel like, even in rank, that it's just been unbeatable or oppressive. Like, there's times where it's been strong, but like, I'm like, okay, like my Bucky can ult reset. Like, if they run Adam, they lose their defensive, which means I can force it in the mid fight. And there's an opening. Like, I wonder how. Like, I want to talk to this guy. I want to talk to this guy. I just want to pick his brain. I want to understand what he's thinking, because I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I can't.
That's fine. Have you guys ever heard of a board game called Root or Arcs or Oath? I don't know if you guys ever heard. Anyway, the designer, really, really well known within the board game community, Cole Worrell, and he has this really interesting interview that I was reading a few days ago. And I have been winners in my chat. Hello. He's got this exceptional quote from this huge interview about game theory, game design. And he goes, in fact, as I've helped more groups and helped younger designers and thought about my work in a broader context, the most common trend I see is that designers and players, I'm going to raise my hand, I'm guilty of this, always think that they understand an objective truth or reality about games. So you're talking about that with mass res, right? And it's just not the case. We just don't know what makes a game great. It's really hard. So I'm trying to dissect this, right? I'm trying to find, is it the sustain? Is the tankiness? Is the bigger kits that make you feel like there's more agency? Is there more dopamine? I don't think that we really know the answer. I have fun discussing it with you guys. The reason why It could be. The reason why I think this is a really important conversation to have is if we're talking about what Marvel Rival needs to do better, what Marvel Rival needs to learn from Overwatch, or maybe it needs to learn nothing, or vice versa, what Overwatch needs to learn from Marvel Rivals. My point being is that conversation is a lot more complicated than it looks. A lot more complicated. I think certain things like hero bans, from maybe my limited perspective, I think it's quite true. But it's really easy to go, oh yeah, Marvel Rivals just tanks better, and here's why. But I actually don't think that a lot of these things make a lot of sense. And here's another question, guys. How much of the tank experience right now is being propped up by the broken sustain? And is the broken sustain something that Marvel Rivals just continue to lean? Like, what if we nerf sustain across the board by 35%? What would happen to the game?
Yeah, if you added the DPS passive from Overwatch, what happens, right? Like, even then,
just nerf sustain. Like, what would happen? What would happen?
What do you mean nerf the best here? Because Luna's losing her team up, which gives her more healing, and like she's easily the hero that just
lower.
Right.
If you globally lower the number of healing, right? Is that what we?
I would say I would. Well, I'm assuming good intentions from the developers, so I'm with Sam. It would be like more like let's nerf Luna's ult duration. Let's make Mantis total healing output, like resource management, a little bit more important. So like on a case by case basis, the single target sustain of Marvel Rivals is a little bit weaker. 10% for that character, 30% for that character. Heck, maybe you could throw some extra utility in there. Like I think Rocket is kind of hit or miss, right? So Rocket's got a little extra utility. Let's buff Rocket a little bit, whatever. But as a whole, the healing output is generally just doing a little bit harder. Like, what happens to this game?
It would make the tank feel worse. The tank experience would probably worsen. But I don't know. Part of that, I also do think sustain is too strong in the game. So I might be for that actually. It
doesn't bother me. It is definitely too strong, but I think the benefit of it being too strong is the game is very playable.
You have tools.
Like there's healing that's getting tossed around everywhere, so everyone sort of feels like they're not super punished for a misposition here or there, and that's the benefit. Like I think like the more I've played with bans, and so if we didn't have bans, I would be riding in the streets with how annoying it is for a concert to go on before anyone gets to play the game with Luno Snow ult lasting an hour every single time. Like I do not like playing against that ult, especially since when that, so it's like different formats, right? Like let's just say we had no bans, right? The game would be super about ult economy way too much because Luna ult is so strong that if you use your Luna ult to counter one or two ults, you kind of just auto win the game because the ult advantage you're going to get is so big. And I've noticed that in when I've played with Luna unbanned, it really comes down to just that ult execution. Whereas when Luna does get banned, or let's say, definitely her. I do think Rocket's pretty good. I think Cloak and Dagger all of a sudden has been really, really good because she can heal Amp and heal Bubble. So there's certain that's where the tank sustain comes from. Yeah. And her ult's incredible as well because she can stack it on one area. By the way, if you play Cloak and Dagger, you don't know this. Like, you can go across the entire point, or it stacks on top of itself. So you could literally do it on one lane. And so I think the community's got to learn about this, about like how to read the sustain that's in front of them. I think sometimes, as we do as Overwatch players as well, we just stare at the front line, right? And like there's certain instances where the front line fight is going to indefinitely sustain, and that's how I feel playing Rocket. He's probably my favorite support, but Rocket shoots Moira orbs out of his gun. Okay, he shoots a cooldown out of his gun all game, and he's like this, do. So it's like I got a teammate over here, kind of like I shoot it over there. Forget go to pressure. The support ability is like it makes everything sort of feel playable, I think. But the downside is the sustain is insane, but then the mistakes don't feel as punished as they otherwise would be. You take the sustain away, then all of a sudden like the team fights are going to be over in the neutral super fast, and you're going to be rolling over things, and I think it sort of smooths out the experience at the moment. So I don't hate it. I hate Luna Snow ult, but just in general, I think we kind of got to get good a little bit. Like we got to learn, like you ain't beating the cloak bubble, okay? The cloak bubble goes down, run, okay? Like that's her best cooldown, or it's the same thing with the totem of Loki, right? Same thing. These support abilities are meant to carry the game. That's their impact, and then once those are down, then they're exploitable. So go ahead, Sam.
I think as well the difference too is they can do more of that because it's not supposed to be more of the FPS game that Overwatch is. It's supposed to be the heroes. So like when this is where it confuses me for Overwatch, right? Where they're doing like lamp and all this shit, where it's like it's constant. It's like shooter. Like you go to Overwatch 2, the whole point was to make it more of a shooter. It's supposed to be more deathmatchy, right? So like when I'm thinking Overwatch, I'm thinking shooter because that's what's been told to me. And this is where this game is like taken off the
limitations, perhaps
the cage in my head. It's unchained the way I think, where like I'm more okay with it in Marvel because that's what Marvel's trying to be, and a lot of the DPS heroes also have those kind of abilities. Like a lot of the DPS heroes in the game, aside from Mei, which is one of the big reasons I realized I've gravitated towards Mei in Overwatch 2, or I did rather, or Echo for that matter, is like they all had abilities that were kind of designed to like be on par with that level.
It's consistent with theme.
Yes. And so like, for example, like I force Cloak Bubble and then I can leave because guess what? My Iron Fist also has a block ability that's on par with that. I don't feel like it's unfair. Like I look at the ability and I say, my years of judgment of playing Overwatch tells me this is unfun and broken, but I have options. I can ban it, which just makes like the bans carry so hard. I know we already went on this, but the bans carry so fucking hard. It's unreal to me that how great they are in the game. I can't believe it even now. And two, it's like I have a wide range of characters like in each role that have means to deal with this or be on par with it. Like the only way Iron Fist block is okay is it doesn't get much value if you shoot it. And like Luna and these other supports have all of these abilities too. Like it feels like each role has been given that kind of care. And like Magic gets iframes. So how many DPS get iframes? Magic, iframes for people at home, and invincibility frames. Magic, Star-Lord, Iron Fist. I guess Wanda has fades, but she's donkey crap. Sorry, all the Magic or Wanda players out there. Am I missing any others?
Can't remember.
Is Hela get iframes going into her ultimate?
Yes.
And I guess she's invulnerable in the bird as well.
Psylocke can be killed too. Like, yeah, it's just, like all like
a little bit anymore,
it's every character has been brought around the same level. The more, yeah. So I don't know. It's just brilliant. They just leaned into the hero element more.
Go ahead, AVRL.
Let me jump in real quick on that one as well. I first of all, like, I'll just say this point about bans again. It's just like I think bans are good, but the problem is I don't want to use it as too heavy of a conversation point because again, like most of the player base don't get to play with bans. So
sure, we'll move past
as much as bans are good, it's just like, well, if I'm below diamond, this just doesn't apply to me at all. So I don't get to defend myself against the Lunar Stone. My problem with a lot of the supports and the way the healing output, and I guess the Lunar Stone ultimate and shit like that's insane. But like, really for me, the most fun I've had in Marvel Rivals so far is when the supports on the other team are not that good at the game, or there's enough of a lack of a skill where like things are approachable and killable, and I can walk up to somebody who's not just getting like either double pocketed, especially but even single pocketed. Yes, DPS have a lot of things. You have your Iron Fist block, you have your fades and your iframes or whatever, but that doesn't allow me to overcome the healing difference. This is something that happens in Overwatch as well. I think this is just something that happens in maybe this genre of game, but it takes, if you look at it from a 1-to-1 of dealing 1 damage versus healing 1 damage, it is much more difficult mechanically to deal that 1 damage than it is to heal that 1 damage, with maybe a couple exceptions. Like, okay, you have some lock-on heroes like Scarlet Witch, great, okay, I get that, but even then, it's pretty range limited. There's a lot of auto-locking heals. There's either easy AoE heals from Rocket, or you have like the Cloak and Dagger Manta style heals where it's literally just lock on, like you can't even miss, especially on Cloak and Dagger where like it's not even a real resource. If you could just spam that shit, like you really can't even miss. Or it's just an ability you press like Adam Warlock, but at least it's just like that's the only way. That's like that's his heal. So what I'm trying to say is from a DPS to, because DPS is my most played role as well, it's just what I have the most fun on. DPS into support or DPS into the other team where the supports are actually good, that's some of the least fun I've had in Marvels, because I'm up against somebody, and if the other team support is good and I go on a target, bro, whoever I'm on is just not dying. It could just be like, oh, get good, get better, but it's like, no, that's not the point. The point is, it is harder for me to deal the 1 damage it takes to deal a damage than it is for the same support on the other side to heal that 1 damage back. It's much harder for me to deal that 1 damage, right? So it just doesn't work out, and every time I go up against somebody that's getting Giga Pocket, I'm like, bro, this is the Overwatch experience again, where some Mercy is just pressing 1 button on a dude. I'm like, I just can't outdamage this. It's ridiculous. And it's especially brutal when you combine the tank health pool and there's a double pocket on a single tank. And maybe if your team is bad, you can't flank properly, or maybe the map design isn't good enough in some cases. But if you ever get into a front-to-back situation, front-to-back being you have to go through the front to get to the back, or that's just where you've landed because your team sucks, that you're trying to get through a double-pocketed tank, it's brutal, man. I hate that stuff so much.
Can I add a point or pose a question to you guys, a theory? So what I think the reason why SPILO, you were kind of like cracking at this, is like, why is it okay in one spot, it feels like, but not in the other? I think when you're talking about sustain, like in a shooter, like FPS mechanics, you are playing an FPS game to get rewarded for hitting your shots. It's all about aim and shooting your gun and doing your thing, right? Abilities are like almost second in Overwatch to the gun mechanic, right? In this game, I think abilities come first and gun mechanics come second. So when everybody has these kind of crazy abilities, this might be like, and you're trying to go up against that sustain, Avril, right? Where you're not killing the support. Like, I'm not nearly as mad.
Or whatever the target that's being healed.
Yeah, sure. Because like, it's more like Overwatch is more for like the person. And this is what's so cool. This is why this game has carved out its own new niche. And this is why I think it'll be successful. Like, Overwatch, you're trying to do that chip. Like, you're playing Hanzo, you hit your skill shot. When that instantly gets healed or like reward, like it feels like shit. You're angry because you did what you were supposed to do in the first-person shooter, but you got your value denied through insane sustain or like an immortality field or something like that, right? Like, you come into a first-person shooter game with more of that mentality. And like I said, that's somebody who's like to play a lot of COD growing up or something like that. That's kind of the expectation that Overwatch is also set by talking about making it more shootery. That especially in Overwatch 2, right? Where like that was the intent. But this game, that's clearly not its intent. Its intent is to make Marvel superheroes feel like superheroes in a hero shooter genre. So I think that's the big distinction. I think that's where their two niches differentiate. Where Marvel, and this is why, Frito, I agree with you. I think that Overwatch won't be the big mainstream hero shooter game again because it focuses more on the shooter in the hero shooter genre. Marvel focuses more on the hero, and they can output a lot of heroes. And I think that people play the hero shooter genre for the heroes. So, like, it's not to say that, like, it's not a knock on Overwatch at all. I think the expectation might be different. I'm trying to figure this out live.
I think you're right. No, I think that's really the question I've been posing is like, because I think there is a part of us that we don't know how much of this is objective truth for different expectations for a different game, and how much of this is just the honeymoon phase, which, let's be honest, we're in a honeymoon phase, right? How much of it is honeymoon versus good game design? I don't know. Nobody knows. You never know, right? There's a honeymoon phase for every game out there, even the best games, right? So, but I do think that you make a good point. It's like, this is where I want us to be I think just the community has to be really careful about comparing this game to Overwatch, because there are different expectations for a different game. It can break all the rules. It can have more sustain. It could have more shields, right? Even the shields I actually disagree with you. I think shields are just as bad in this game as they were in Overwatch in terms of on paper.
Barriers.
Was either, right? Okay. On paper. But the difference between this and Marvel Rivals is the number of DPS that can go around the shields is a lot higher.
The number of shields as well. There's not as many shields, not even close.
Yeah. And they don't have as much sustain behind them.
Depends. I think if you get like Groot Doctor Strange combo, like theoretically you could get something pretty nasty there. But yeah, I'm being facetious.
You know what it is, real quick, to add on to that? It's that when like the all of that sustain isn't only on one character, in that like the Strange doesn't have Sigma Grass, so it forces the support to actually heal them, and the support has a much higher margin for error, like that in that interaction. Maybe. Back to you.
I think Marvel Rivals. Go ahead.
I will also say, like, from the support angle as well, I am at least glad there's not as much AoE healing. Like, I think AoE healing...
That is very true. There's not a lot of AoE healing in this game.
And I would like to not... That is actually probably a major mistake that NetEase could make, as they start introducing a lot of AoE healing. I think, at least on the Rocket Raccoon side of things, okay, yeah, he can throw in orbs, but they're not quite as strong as Moira orbs. They're, like, a lot less hardcore. Yeah, they definitely don't heal as much, so it doesn't feel as bad. But if you can imagine he healed way more, it's like, bro, this is when we're starting to get into bad territory. So AoE healing has to be checked really hard in this game.
So this is where I think this is a little campy, but we all have a little bit of a responsibility as content creators, right? Like, do we have to be, we could share our opinions for sure, but we do have to, number one, we cannot paint everything that Marvel Rivals does as being perfect, but we also cannot hold it to a standard that like broken sustain will never work. Or even me, right? Like, you guys have made some really good points about the differences of like, for example, some of the tank designs, right? Like, this tank is actually really good. You just need to consider this. Like, it's just different, right? It's just different. It's a different game. It's a hero shooter. It's a third-person shooter. But like, it's going to do things that Overwatch could never do, and it's going to do them well, right? And so, why are we forgiving Marvel Rivals for doing a bunch of stuff that we said we'd always hate with Overwatch? Because it's not Overwatch.
Yeah.
It's not Overwatch.
Guys. I want to just check in, vibe check real quick. Do you think we can go? Does anybody have a hard out? I think the last two topics I want to do might take us about an hour. I can maybe trim it to 30 minutes if someone has a hard out, but
I'm good.
Is everybody good for that?
I'm okay for 45. 45, 50.
45. We'll make it 45 for Spilo. Okay.
46 maybe.
You good?
46.
46.
Okay.
No, I'm fairly flexible.
I
I can stay. I'm
I'm gonna go to the restroom real quick. Frito, I'll tap back in a second. I can listen. I'll catch you up. Go ahead.
Great. Okay, so the two things that I want to cover. Well, first we're just going to talk about the major pitfalls of this game long term, and then finish off talking about Overwatch. Like, what can Overwatch learn from this? That's kind of what I want to transition. We've made a lot of allusions over the podcast so far. And been a bomb show overall, guys. Like, make sure that you check out everybody's Twitter in the description of my stream on YouTube for sure, as well as like the stream while you're here. So, Marvel Rivals honeymoon phase. I personally feel it's built to last because of the complex team up mechanics. The hero identities are fun and unique, and there's just so many ways to express yourself. While I think broken things like can ruin the gameplay to some degree, I think we already have them now. That's like a major selling point to me, is that I don't have to worry about the broken designs that could change this. I feel they're already in the game now, and I still find it fun, and I think that's going to continue because more likely what's going to happen, they're going to add more heroes, perhaps more rapidly, and what they'll need to do is just add more bans, but I'm totally fine with that. That's what I wanted anyway. In fact, I hope bans go to the entire player base and get added to Overwatch. I would say a major pitfall for me, and I want you guys to think of your own as well, like where does this game lack? Where do you see the problem areas for this game the most? I think it's not with things being too good, it's by things being too bad. Like, especially when I'm playing quick play, and I try to play a character that I really like from Marvel lore, Storm. I feel Storm is like a full team hero, and that's about it. Like, you really don't want to play Storm in like a quick play environment because there's so many heroes that just run it down and get kills easily, and she's a teammate hero. So if your teammate's all flanking, your aura does less, and what the heck are you doing? Like, the skill expression I have when I swap over to Psylocke or Iron Man or something like that, I can dominate the game, whereas Storm, a hero I like, is really unwieldy in that way, and kind of boring, frankly. I think it feels like she's lacking an ability. Like, a lot of the other designs we can say has these multiple nuanced things, and I feel her power budget is just reined in so much because she has this supportive kit on a DPS. But that's just one example. I think in general, that's what I fear as the player base improves over time and they start to learn where some of the higher skill expressive heroes are, then there might be like a have and have not situation where it's gonna be more difficult for you to have fun on your hero, despite the team up mechanics and all these other good things. I mean, as much as I criticize Venom as being I didn't get a chance to do it, Spilo did it, but Venom's like the worst tank design as far as I'm concerned, with like a super truncated floor and ceiling. It's like he's just like he has a cooldown cycle he throws at you, and you either counter it or you don't. Like, it's the dumbest part about this game, frankly, as far as the tanks go. But he teams up with Spider-Man, who's this high skill expressive hero, and then Spidey all of a sudden has this extra end to his combo, which is like insane. So he could do all his Spidey things, then push another button, and he does. So that part of it excites me overall. But my issue is that too many things will be underpowered. It'll be hard for them to adjust that over time. You either can expand on what I just said or come up with your own major pitfalls to Marvel Rivals. And free for honor, you guys have done a great job moderating yourselves, to be honest. But yeah. Anybody wants to jump in on that? Like, what's a major pitfall of Marvel Rivals?
Yeah, I can start. I think like the content cycle needs to be addressed a little bit. On one hand, it's an extremely good thing that they're going to start throwing a lot of heroes at the same time. The question will be, can they keep that cycle going long term? And if they do, how many heroes are you going to start getting a year? We're going to get like 10, 12, 15 heroes a year. Like, what's the cycle starting to look like? And the reason why this could end up being a pitfall, despite potentially being a good thing for now, is that like you are climbing up numbers in the hero roster so fast that, first of all, like, the more heroes you have in the game, the harder it is for people to jump back in if they've either taken a break or they haven't played the game at all. League of Legends and Dota and MOBAs in general, this will even happen to games like Overwatch if Overwatch goes for a much longer. If Overwatch, I don't think Overwatch is going to die, but if it goes into the far future and it's still going strong, and they add if there's too many heroes, it becomes overwhelming as well. They even have a situation where their player onboarding requires you to like unlock the original roster of heroes through it doesn't take long to unlock, but like they don't want to overwhelm you too quickly. Not only just in terms of the size of the hero roster, like it's fine now, but once you get to like 100+ heroes in Marvel Rivals, and I do actually think this game could easily reach that, just like because how fast they're going in terms of the releases, but also how many characters they can pull on. The number of characters they can pull on could also be an issue where like you start getting into like the weird D, E, F, G list type of characters after you've hit all the Avengers. And yes, okay, Squirrel Girl, Jeff, they did a pretty good job with that. And they're pretty like niche characters, so maybe they can still keep hitting good designs on the niche characters, but that's gonna feel a lot less impactful and good when right now you get like a tease or announcement for Fantastic Four. It's like, oh, Pog, I know Fantastic Four. Yeah, 6 months down the line, the 4 new heroes are all heroes. If you've never even heard of these characters, like it's much more difficult it's much more difficult to get excited about these like D, E, F tier lists, like in terms of popularity from the IP, right? It's going to be way more difficult to get excited about that. But beyond that as well, I think there's a huge pitfall in terms of design where obviously the Marvel Rivals devs want to, they're keen to make these kind of like more overly kitted, more insane type of designs in the game. We're just seeing that across the board. But the higher you have a higher likelihood of kind of missing the mark and putting a stinker out there like Brig in Overwatch when your release schedule is super rapid, your turnaround time is super rapid and getting heroes out, and you're releasing a lot at the same time as well. And you just have a large roster. The larger your roster is, the higher the statistically speaking, the higher the chance that you're going to get something wrong. And guess what? No dev team, no publisher, no one's perfect. Everyone's going to get something wrong. You can take all the care in the world. You can be like the most meticulous design team like you are in Overwatch, and you'll get things wrong. They have. So I don't think there's no one out there should be using the excuse of like, well, it hasn't happened so far. Well, everything hasn't happened until it happens. So that's just a shitty like argument if anyone wants to say that. Not you guys, but just generally out there. There's a high likelihood that something goes wrong in the hero design where something does get released. That yes, hero bans can mitigate that, but also as we've said, once there's like so many heroes in the game, how many bans are you gonna have? You're gonna need to start doing like 10 bans per team. I saw this hilarious tweet where it's like, oh, I can't wait to play Marvel Rivals in 10 years when there's like 500 heroes, and I'm like, and I'm now on my 30th ban in the ban phase. You know, there's 30 fucking bans you have to do. You know what I mean? It's like, how far are we gonna take that? You can't just mask over bad shit in the game by slapping more bans on. Just keep slapping bans on. It's like that's not good either. You can't do that. So that is one pitfall I'm very cautious about. And you should, people listening, you know, I know we're in a honeymoon phase, but if you want the game to last long term and you want this to be a game that you can play for 10 years, you want Nitties to avoid pitfalls. So hear me out, hear us out.
So can I answer that actually? Because I actually asked their executive producer the same question in a creator call.
Chill.
Okay,
Leaks.
My fault. So
paid streamer, paid creator. Anyway.
So no payment, actually, believe it or not. No hashtag ad. I'd have to disclose it. Don't worry.
Just stocks. I get it.
Actually, just stocks. Just NetEase stock. It's like that in China, I guess. But so without detail, I asked him that same question. I was like, do you guys have hit the ground running? Like, do you think that you can maintain this? And his answer was like, obviously it's going to depend on manpower. I don't think that they're gonna do like fucking 4 characters a season. Like I don't think that's gonna happen. I think it might be like a couple. It'll definitely be more than Overwatch or like one of those other games, but like I don't see them doing that personally.
Did he say how many, or didn't give you a number?
I have a number. I don't know if I could say it. Just to be safe, I'm not going to.
Sure.
But it's not. But you know, it's
not 4 a season. This is just
not 4 a
Fantastic
season.
Four.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty
clear.
clear.
It's 6 or 7. You heard it here first. Total guess.
I also want to just counteract Avril's point where he says bans doesn't solve everything. I actually think it does solve everything. It can solve your diabetes. I think it can fix your marriage. I think bans can actually solve it. You guys thought it was 6 for 6 this whole time. It's actually been bans, okay? Like it really reversed my credit score. Bans has done everything for me possible. Revive my channel.
How many bans? You need 30 bans eventually? Like how many bans?
I'm facetious about this, but actually they could just move to a draft. If it starts to get to 100, it could be a draft with like you could draft out only part of the cast, and then there would be some exclusivity there.
You declare like, here are the 4 characters I'm going to switch between this game or something like that.
Yeah,
sure. What do you mean?
Why not? I don't know. The sky's the limit. I mean, you play MOBA games, you know how this works. So like, I think in a
the difference in MOBA is format, you can lock draft into one hero swaps for the entire game. You can't do that in a game with rapid swapping. You can swap every death or every time you're in spawn. This is completely different. So the MOBA drafting system.
You don't do that now. I don't think. I don't think anybody swaps every death in either.
No, but I mean, like,
or wants to. They do in Overwatch 2 and they hate it.
These games sell. These games like sell the marketing of like, oh, you know, swaps are important. You can swap and all this kind of stuff. And everyone.
Does this game do that?
Despite well, here's the thing.
Overwatch did that. Yeah, I don't know if anybody wanted that though in Overwatch 2.
The player bases always defend. I want flexibility. The people who are anti-role queue and say incorrectly that role queue killed Overwatch. Bad take. They say that because, oh, my creativity, but my creativity, by the way, my ability to flex, by the way, and yet the majority of the players in hero shooters, Overwatch and probably this game too, actually don't swap. You're right, Frida, they don't. But everyone believes that they are the one that swap. Everyone thinks swapping is important. We need to secure swaps, hide it in a vault, and protect it forever, because swapping is like, we're going to hold it we're going to put it on the pedestal of gaming Jesus. Swapping is gaming Jesus, and it cannot be touched. That's why people are like, even in Overwatch, still resist the idea of bans today, because like, I don't want my creativity stifled. I hate role queue because apparently I swap. Well, guess what? 90% of the play base doesn't, even if they think they do.
It's so funny because it's just such a like creatively vapid argument that's like been tired and argued literally for hundreds of years. Like educative restrictedness is the entire birth point of creativity. Because if you can do literally anything, then people are gonna either be like paralysis or analysis. But you're also forcing people to innovate within a different set of rules, a different set of guidelines. Like that's just how anything works. So, like, you guys ever seen like, is it Chopped, that stupid cooking show where they have to use like the same 2 or 3 ingredients or whatever? I don't remember. It's been like 15 years. But like the whole concept is that like when you have those limitations, you're forced to adapt. And I've done this. I've had this whole video about like why hero bans at the professional level works, because the psychology, everybody follows the herd. This is the easiest way out. So we're going to go with that. And I think that that's actually really true for the casual player base as well. It's like, we need a Mantis, or we need this, or we need that, or we have to play this. Like even in lower ranks, like that's actually almost as prevalent as it is in higher ranks. I don't know if people realize that, but yeah, I mean the whole stifles creativity thing is like total nonsense. Then why can't we destroy literally every environment in a Marvel Rivals then?
Yeah, why can't we have no hero limits then? If you want creativity,
no hero limits.
Hero limits will give you the most creativity. Why don't we just play 40 versus 40 no hero limits? Wouldn't that give you the most creativity? It's the most ridiculous argument that people have. It's just like it's dumb.
A slippery slope.
The cultural part that Spilo was talking about too, with just the player base learning how to play with different mechanics. Now, Overwatch does this intentionally when they overbuff and juice a character, where it's like, well, I mean, Overwatch 1, we had a Giga Hog era where it's like, well, Hog's been useless forever. What if he just had the most insane stats? Huh? Hey, can you pros play that? Huh? Yes, and Super wins the championship off this. So that's how they do it. And then Marvel has seasonal buffs, which do that. But bans do it even better, where you're forced to at least learn these things. And I feel that way because otherwise I would have been like, I want Mantis and Luna in my games, every game forever. But then now I'm like, well, actually, like Cloak's healing is OP, and I think Rocket's pretty good, actually, because he's escapable and can duel a little bit. Anyway, that's definitely a big benefit to bans. I think probably the key takeaway for me as a content creator in this entire conversation is that I need merch for Gaming Jesus, because that I've patented. I think that's like, I'm going to sell out t-shirts on that. All right. Whoever else hasn't gone with the Marvel Rivals biggest pitfalls, and then we're going to transition into Overwatch for the final segment.
Quick discussion to your initial point, Frida, which was about the balance of this game in regards to specifically Storm. I think it's a fair point. I think that like people say this game doesn't need to be balanced. And again, as always, only the Sith deal in absolutes, right? So I think this game absolutely needs balancing work, right? I think you have a character like Hela, Doctor Strange, Mantis, Luna, who legitimately are S tier characters so far away, better than any of their counterparts at the highest level. It's not even close. Better ult, better poke, better sustain, better pressure, flexibility with positioning. You got a character like Hela that can be any character in a 1v1 almost without exception at long, medium, and short range. Like you just have like those kind of extremes where like that's not healthy. And then on the opposite side of things, like you have a character like Storm who is an AoE hero with flying capability, but has like is slow.
She cleaves, so she needs to attack from the front.
And she's like a really bad duelist, so she was to like use her mobility, but it doesn't make any sense. Like it's not just like that she's trash, but the design just doesn't work, right? So you know, and there's a lot of heroes like that. I think that like you know, even from like if we ignore the sustain side power of the sustain of the supports, I really do find that the gameplay loop of the supports is really dull for me for a lot of the supports. You know, you look at like the comparison of like the complexity that Loki has on paper versus how a lot of really high level Loki mirrors look. It's pretty dull, right? You mostly use your teleport to avoid any sort of duelist pressure. You mostly use your ult just to copy the enemy Luna and just use that ultimate. and you mostly use your copies to amplify your healing, and goodness knows you almost never use your stealth or your backstab that does a whopping 45 damage or something like that, right? So there's just aspects that like the sustain for me is like, it's honestly, it's not just about the sustain in terms of like, oh, as a duelist I need to kill a support. It's also like the gameplay loop of those supports just gets really boring, right? So I think like that, whether that's a design or a balanced choice or whether they'll ever change that, I don't know. But you know, I think like as a whole, like the game, they need to look for those extreme outliers, especially when they're with characters that do take a lot of skill, like, right? Like, let's not pretend that Storm is a Bastion, right? Or a Moira, right? Like she's actually takes a little bit of skill, right? I don't think she deserves to be that bad, right? I think that's kind of like what you would need to look at. And I'm sure they have numbers on that. Sam?
Actually, according to Garchomp on Twitter, you should be banning Storm every game. Have you seen that trend? Where Garchomp will just get in the game and just be like, "Yo, they have a Storm one trick, ban Storm," and he got flats.
Oh no!
Flats like, I trust you, and like,
oh
it was really
no!
funny. So like the troll thing to do is these people are being like, "Oh, they have a Storm OTP," and they're just banning Storm for literally no reason.
That's really funny. That's really
Do
funny.
you have
Even like
do you have a pitfall stand? Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. You go, Spot.
no. Go ahead, finish Sam. Finish him. You go.
No, that was it. It was just the comment about Storm ban.
For pitfall for me, like this is going to be a super broad thing, but I think like it's not a strength of the game right now, but there's really no reason for it not to be. I think just optimization and polish. This game is just a dumpster fire of so many things. Like I'm literally going to read off the list here, you guys. Okay, what the frick are bot matches doing at Quick Play? Who decided that was like that can't be like, maybe there's some psychology behind that I'm not like, but like that seems insane to me. Buffering abilities still doesn't work. In other words, you press the ability before it comes off a cooldown. Doesn't work. You have to press it again. That really screws with muscle memory. The surrender button for lost matches I love, but if one player votes no, you could be held hostage by that one player, which I think is dumb. The cutscenes at the start, at the launch of the game, the cutscenes at the end of the game, you can't leave the lobby. You literally can't. You're stuck until it's over. The announcer voice and volume, highlights click box versus upvotes. Mouse acceleration being automatically turned on. Let's not even get into the frames per second kind of thing. That nonsense, not to mention that's tied to actual performance. Oh, it's fine. It's a bug. You know, dude, these characters are significantly worse because you're playing on less than 144 FPS. Like that's just totally inexcusable. The whole social friends list thing is clunky. Visual clarity of abilities is terrible, like really bad. I think is it Thor's E and Cloak and Dagger's bubble literally looks the exact same. They look the exact same. Sam, we were talking about this earlier. It's also really hard to know when a support sometimes is using a specific cooldown. Like you can't react to cooldowns. There's not as much visual clarity. Part of it is 66, but it's also hard to react to know when somebody's using an ability. Another one that really annoys me is I catch ledges every time I use verticality mobility. I don't know if it's third person or what, but when I'm using something that goes up, I freaking hit my head on that corner every time. Every time. I think a lot of it's third person. They have the little thing when you're looking down. Rocket Raccoon, he's freaking always shooting his feet. Always bugs out. The third person also causes issues with crosshair accuracy. I don't know if that one's even fixable. And then I'm going to be honest, like the last one, and this one, it's a really big one for me, is I don't think it ruins the game for me, but they need a lesson in map design from Ryan Smith, who's the Overwatch 2 map designer. There are so many dead ends. There are so many chokes with no other solutions. There's so much wasted verticality. This is ignoring the whole AoE map effects thing, which is definitely a choice. But like there's just so much of the map space that's either completely wasted or it feels like there should be something there. Like it's a big no-no in any game. You should almost never have a complete dead end. Like it's a noob trap. You don't do that, right? It's just not good game design. And there are a lot of those in Marvel Rivals, and it doesn't add anything to the experience at all. So it's like I don't know if that's all optimization. I don't know if it's polish. I'm not even talking about like the animation of the art style. Like it's just an artistic choice, but there's so many little things that would significantly enhance every bronze GM plat player's experience. I just find like that has to be a prioritization on that. Like I think.
Shout out
that
to
was my pass.
Ryan Smith is his name, I think, right?
Ryan Smith.
The map
He did not put in the glass in Colosseo.
I removed it. He broke it down.
He removed it. Yes.
Breaking barriers.
It might just be me, but I'm also just not a fan of like destructible environments in general. I think there are some cases where it's like, okay, it does add additional flanking routes and all that kind of stuff is fun, but at the same time, like to Spider's point, actual good map design would just have that in the map itself.
My problem, let me interrupt really fast. I'm sorry. My problem with destructible environments is I didn't like them initially either, and I'm still not a huge fan, but to me, there's at least an upside. They definitely adds flavor, which some players are going to like, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, roll with it. My problem with the destructible environment is it oftentimes feels like an excuse for bad map design.
Yeah, I would agree.
It should never. And the problem is, a lot of times it's not enough to compensate for bad map design. Like, oh, if you smash this, then you could do it. Actually, no. Sometimes you can't. What is that stupid Venom map with the goo you got to shoot? Dude, that map is.
That's the only one. That's the only one I don't like. I love the destructible environments. I liked it in the finals. I hate when it deploys. If that makes sense. Like, it's okay when you break it. But when you create it, I'm not a big fan of. I love it.
But there's also just like a lot of really awkward dead ends. It's not even like the unique aspects. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. There's just a lot of dead ends.
And we'll find out too. We'll find out soon.
I will go like Winter Soldier. Okay, they have a Hella, so I actually have to flank. Like, I can't poke up. So I take the flank, and I'm like, this is like 3 hours later, and I'm like, where am I? Like, or I'll be like, oh, I need to get on that ledge. So I use my dash and I hit the ledge, I hit the floor, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to sit here for 12 seconds or 10 seconds until I try to go for the high ground again. It just feels, it's like, it just doesn't flow. It doesn't flow at all.
It's a little silly. I've grown to like it over time, like, because there's certain heroes that I think you really have to maximize it. Like, I think Psylocke can use it really well. Viz, Iron Man, it matters a lot. Okay,
for me, it's like, okay, destructible environment, map design. Two different things for me, right? Just don't let the destructible environment be, it's fine. The map design sucks, but you could destroy it. A lot of those times it's that they don't have anything to do with it.
The map designer is bad, the map flow, but then the fact that I can, like, there's a lot of points of the map where destroying it matters a lot to me in my gameplay, and the angles I can take, and
I agree.
Like, the surprise, like, for example, like Iron Man, he's a guy who you break through, go on a mad flank, and then ult everybody. That happens frequently, right? And you can't see that coming because of the destructible environment, and that also helps the flow of the map too. Like, even if we had tanks that could gum up chokes, well, then that would help you. Like, I wish Overwatch had it, I guess. Like, you break down a wall so that you don't have to go through a choke against two tanks, but maybe I want to get to Overwatch before we're at the time limit as well. So, like, Sam's got to go with his pitfalls. Is there anything we really have to say about this point, AVRL? Are you dying? Are you dying to tell me the map design sucks?
For the sake of time, look, I'll just condense it into one sentence. Then a lot of the issue with the destructible environments is also the addition of clutter and the fact that it builds debris and it, like, adds bullshit to the map that then you have to play around. Some people might say that they think that's strategy. I just think it's crap. Like,
it's not. The game's silly. The game is clearly more silly than Overwatch, and I think you guys are more, like, in sync about this, because I think you guys are more hardcore esport. Like
that's why I'm not judging it, because I don't like it, because it's objectively very RNG with often how, especially the rebuild mechanic.
The respawning is so bullshit.
But it's Marvel Rivals. It gets a pass for that. It's fun. It's fun. It's silly. Whatever. I don't care.
All right, Sam, you can.
Yeah,
you can
go. I love the destructible environments personally, except for the ones that grow back. I think both Asgard maps are fucking sick. Null's map, though, I think could use some work. I do agree with that one. Null's super cool character as well, especially like third point. Aside from that, like, I'm okay with it because of destructibles, but I think it can get improved on, except for that one point on Asgard where it's like the big, like, destructible halo above the cap point on domination or Koth. That's annoying. Honestly, I would just say the optimization. I'm curious how much the performance drop is at 60 FPS instead of 30 from that clip, because at 30 it was about like a second or so. It needs to get fixed 100%. If you're running the game at 30 FPS, that's a machine problem. It needs to be optimized better, but if you're getting 30 frames per second, it's time to fucking upgrade. Like that's just my opinion. But if it's a big problem, I do not want to act like that's not a problem. That's a huge problem that they definitely need to fix. I'd say the optimization. And, like, I want to see more from them first before I really say it. I think the biggest pitfall is they could rush into making drastic changes when they don't need to. Aside, because you said optimization. Optimization was my numero uno. But that is a problem on paper that mitigates itself over time. On paper, you never know. You know, like, on paper, this game was supposed to be shit, and it wasn't. So I don't know. But I'd say optimization, and then I think they can also probably improve and add more maps. We'll see. Like, I'm very excited for season 1. I think that it's gonna start to paint the path for the game, and I'm excited to see what they do.
All right, as we're nearing the end of the podcast now, I want to transition into talking about Overwatch specifically. We talked about Marvel Rivals mostly. I would say like 80-20 or so, like little allusions to Overwatch here and there. But as all Overwatch fans for years and years, what can Overwatch learn from this? And how would you direct the Overwatch team? Like if you had the power to steer the ship of Overwatch to compete with this titan of a game now, based on whatever your expectations of what it should do, what it can do, like I want you to be king for a day or for the next year, let's say. And since he has a hard out, we're going to go to SPILO first.
Oh man, I had to
we
think
get rid
about
of
that
hero
one.
dance straight away. Should we just cover that and just move on?
Yeah,
from
I think hero bans is something they need to dance with for sure. But like, let's ban that topic coincidentally.
Deep in thought. Are they
Yeah.
screwed? I mean, I did say Overwatch is
No.
cooked. If you don't have got an answer, it kind of seems like
No,
I'm right. Keep going.
the thing, I just don't think Overwatch will ever be able to compete. So for me, it's more about like what Overwatch will not be able to compete with. They will not be able to compete with the content schedule. It's just a fact. I think the entire identity of Overwatch is never releasing. I mean, it's kind of Blizzard as a whole, at least it used to be, where they are very dogmatic about releasing polished products, right? Every hero feels like they really was a lot of thought and preparation put into them. They're just not going to meet Marvel Rivals with that. They're not going to be as crazy.
Is that a requirement? Because most games don't release that many heroes.
I don't think they need to. No, that's my point. I don't think they need to. I think there might be a temptation to do that, but I don't think they need to. I think it's very tempting in the live service model. No, I think that they need to keep releasing out good content, right? The 3 heroes released, new game modes, try new things. I think that there's a nuance here. So I'm not saying like just leave it as it is. Try new things, of course, but I don't think you will not keep pace with Marvel Rivals. It's a different game with a different design philosophy. It just has a lot more flexibility with what it can do.
I want to jump in, just add some context. I thought it might help the conversation. So, especially from watching your content, SPILO, I think Overwatch has had some of its biggest successes recently. So we're praising the map design. The map design is top tier all of a sudden, right? Insane map design. And their last several heroes for like a year have been killer, as in they understand how to not break the game and how to make unique hero designs that add complexity. So really,
flaws,
like,
but yes, they're great.
We should be happy with like none of them are hard meta. They're other than Juno, I guess, but like they don't damage the gameplay experience necessarily. And especially if they go the extra mile and just like, I don't know, steal entirely the ban system for Marvel Rivals, which I definitely think they should do instantly. Those are all good trajectories. And then the final thing is that we do know that they're worried about or constructing ways to add strategy decisions beyond just mere hero selection. That's a pretty much, I think, word for word quote from Aaron Keller himself. So those extra layers of complexity that we're gaining from Marvel Rivals today, Overwatch has already been cooking things up. They've already been considering 6v6. They're already trying to do this. And to me, it's like, I'm trying to think like, I don't want to play ranked in Overwatch without hero bans. I'm not going to do it. So until you add that, or you show me what your next plays are, me as a diehard fan whose channel name is Your Overwatch, I think Marvel Rivals is a better sequel than the sequel you have to the own game that you have. So that's what I'm trying to like steer this, okay? Like that's where I'm standing, and I think a lot of players feel the same, especially reading all the comments of the videos that I've been making them and doing well in Marvel. Like I feel like a lot of my old fans who have left, like I'm sitting on a channel that's been dying for literal years, okay? And a lot of these fans are coming back because of this game, right? And so that's why I'm like so optimistic towards this direction, not because I want Overwatch to fail, but like I really want to know how the heck do they get back in the ring. And well, like those are good answers, kind of the direction they're going, but I don't know. I'm worried for Overwatch. So
I
SPILO?
I mean, it really goes back to my first answer, like, is Overwatch cooked from the very start of this podcast? I just don't think that anything that Overwatch can do in its current gaming philosophy that will ever compete with what Marvel Rivals does. I just don't think there's anything that they can do. The question needs to be, what percentage of the player base did you lose to Rivals, to Fortnite, to Apex Legends, to Valorant? That was avoidable, right? Whether it was Valorant with a crappy esports scene, whether it's with Marvel Rivals with the hero bans, whether it's, whatever, fill in the blank, right? Whether it's Deadlock with the lack of strategic complexity with some of the characters, right? Like, to me, it's more about, like, you need to find what percentage do you want to hold on to, because I don't think if you you know what it is? Here's a great analogy here. Sam, Frito, AVRL, you guys all know what I'm talking about. As a content creator, how much do you want to ride the trend versus make the type of content that you're good at or that you're interested in?
I'm just kidding. Just don't mind. God damn it.
Marvel Rivals is going to win that game every time. It's always going to have more hype. It's always going to have the sex appeal that I was talking about earlier. Overwatch is just not going to compete with that, right? At least not to that level. So they need to do what they do well, and they need to do it better.
Yes.
While still being willing to branch out. I just don't think Overwatch is going to... Overwatch is like... I had this conversation... you guys know Flats, right? Super nice guy, right? He is the Overwatch content creator. He does all the casual content, the generic React content. And I talked to them about it, and I was like, Flats, I'm never going to be you. I'm never going to be as good at you doing you. So if I try to be you, I'm going to fail miserably. I'm a niche content creator, guys. It's just how it is, right? Like I do well at what I do, I'd like to think, but so I can't compete with that, right? I might have a long time ago when, remember you guys remember Jane, right? Like Jane was like, oh, Jane, right? But I'm like that time is gone, right? Like for the educational content creator. So like you have to do what you do really well. So if you're standing of like, what can Overwatch do better to compete with Marvel Rivals? There's absolutely nothing they can do. Like absolutely nothing. Zero, nil, nada. And not even like, and that's not even an insult to Overwatch. There's nothing that they could do. The question needs to be, what percentage of Marvel Rival play, percentage are we losing to Marvel Rivals that we shouldn't have lost? Right? 5%, 10%, right? Like I look at how many Lifeweaver metas, how long, like Lifeweaver as a release. That's inexcusable. Malga meta, season 8. Inexcusable. Lack of hero bans so that Samito has to freaking lose his mind again at Widowmaker on stream and then apologize for it on Twitter afterwards, right? Like that inexcusable, right? I'm with you guys on that one, right? That's what we have to focus on for me. That's what we have to focus on to me.
Great answer. It's a great answer. Can I piggyback off this for mine, or AVRL, do you want to go?
No, I kind of want to go last, actually.
Okay, SPILO, do you have to head out right now, or do you...
No, go for it. I mean, that's basically it for me.
I think, look, I mean, this is the reality, and like I said this, and a lot of people took this as like me like trying to shun Overwatch here. I'm not. Marvel Rivals is built and designed for the modern era, and it's just. It's in genre competition, but like this is the Fortnite, if we're ever gonna get one, of this genre. It just is. And from their release schedule to how they've nailed these characters, from what they've shown they've been able to do, I wasn't sure. I knew this game would be good. I didn't know how good. After playing the beta, like at first, again, like I said, AVRL and I were skeptics. Like we were like, all right. Like, how many fucking times have we seen this? Like, like AVRL, that tweet went, and honestly, maybe I should have known, because the second I made that tweet of the unowned, it immediately had like 2 million views. And maybe I should have paid attention to that. And like in hindsight, that's 2020. It's like, okay, wait, when's the last, like that would never happen with Overwatch. And it's not a knock on Overwatch, but do what you're good at. Focus on what you're good at. That's your niche. That's what you excel at. And SPILO, you couldn't have said it better. The reality is, and I think this is something that I've started to accept, like I wanted Overwatch to be a League of Legends. I wanted Overwatch to be a Fortnite. I wanted it to be a Minecraft. I wanted it to be a Roblox. But it just never will be. I think it had its chance, maybe. Yeah. Maybe at best, right? And that's not a knock at all. It's just like those games are, their audience is just so wide, and like Fortnite was in the right spot at the right time. Minecraft was just Minecraft. Roblox pioneered multiplayer game engines with infrastructure already being provided for you. Like those are the just like truly incredible pieces. And Overwatch is a piece of art, and it's good at what it does. So it should focus on what it does well. Its game engine and visuals are the best. The responsiveness is the best. So I would keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, hero bans are such an easy thing to do that would keep players like from being miserable. I hate to hammer on that. But like, don't try to compete with Marvel on their court. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And drop the Overwatch 2 branding so that your PR...
Yes. I was gonna say that's it.
Drop it. Stop.
If you want to talk about low fruit for the casual community, drop for optics. Find a segue, like a point when you're
get the fuck away from it.
Get it off. It's just.
And I said this for a while. Go ahead. Yeah.
If you drop the 2, here's a problem with dropping the 2, and I thought they never should have had the 2 in the first place. But if you drop the 2, there's enough negativity and bad optics and PR that even dropping the 2 is in some ways admitting defeat, and it's actually a pretty sizable amount of people then are not still not going to accept that. The amount of people that say drop the 2,
right.
but the amount of haters out there, they'd be like, see, they dropped the 2. That means we were right all along, and Blizzard can go fuck themselves because they were wrong. They dropped the 2. That means they scammed us. It's a scam. They dropped the 2. There's enough of that even dropping the 2 might end up biting you in the ass.
At this point, though, like you're not going to like. What's
Overwatch
your
2
goal,
was
then?
PVE. Overwatch 2 was PVE. Is I think the tricky thing, right?
Like the longer they keep on the charade, like it's just fucked. It's
I understand
like,
what you're saying.
And I'm like, Avril, you're not wrong, but like I guess my question then would be, what's your end goal? Is your end goal to stay in the niche that you can thrive in? Like you can be a long-term sustainable game in your niche, but you will never be tier 1 again.
Here's do you want to add anything else before I go? I just want to like
No, go for it. Like this is more of a
go.
question. I'm curious.
So
Before, just small interjection. A cool thing SPILO mentioned earlier that I wanted to interject into the Overwatch section is that there's a lot of new players into hero shooters in general, thanks to Marvel Rivals, that have never played Overwatch before.
Yeah,
that's like my one little glimmering hope for Overwatch is that anybody who is more maybe of Avril's and SPILO's mind when they look at to see the chaos and they're like, what if we just had a little more order in this? Maybe they might flock to Overwatch if it just does what it does well and then learns a bit from Rivals. But it's the cleaner experience, more optimized experience, more map flow. Like there's a lot of benefits that Overwatch could lean into with hopefully with this new player base that has never played this genre before. Yeah. So go ahead, Avril.
Yeah, so what they actually need is in the actual game itself. Here's the thing, to defend Overwatch a little bit here, because I might be one of the rare people out there. I think you guys are at least somewhat in there. I know Fruto definitely is. But I might be one of the only people that actually enjoys both games and can see the merits in both games, because like I don't deal in these kind of absolutes, and I just hate gaming tribalism and just tribalism in general. Where like I'm not gonna. All right,
so you're a hate tribalist guy. You're a hate tribalism guy. Well, I'm a love tribalism guy. I freaking hate you for that.
People are not going to understand your sarcasm sometimes. The non.
This guy says he's not a contrarian. I know how it is.
Anyway, the point is like you can enjoy both games. Where I'm trying to go with this is that there isn't a lot more outside of like these things like hero bans that Overwatch can do in terms of the way they make their game. I'm not expecting them, and I probably don't even want them to like massively overhaul all their hero designs. That would be so much of a job. I don't think it's possible. Like we got told, I don't know if this is like exactly a promise they made, but at least something they alluded to, that they wanted to rework all the tanks. They wanted to change all the tanks in a way that wasn't just a health bar change to make it more like a 5v5, to make it more palatable for 5v5, and that we never even got to see the end of that. So I'm not out here holding out hope that the entire hero rush is going to be changed to be more like Marvel Rivals. I wouldn't want them to do that. Overwatch would lose its identity in a little bit of a way. So they can't do stuff like that. What they can do is they can continue doing what they're already doing, but maybe that's not enough. Because actually what they're doing, the problem isn't whether they're doing it or whether they're doing it well or not. The problem is in optics position. A lot of the complaints you see, a lot of the complaints from old Overwatch players that are now Marvel Rivals players, or people that have jump shipped at some point from Overwatch, they have criticisms that are kind of outdated. Like every now and then you'll see something like
nuts. I hate this.
It actually is the worst, because it's like it's not quite lying, but it's just super uninformed, ignorant, passive lying where they don't even know they're lying. They just don't know better. It's stuff like the monetization. It's like, oh yeah, well Marvel doesn't make me pay for the heroes. Like, dude, you haven't been keeping up.
Dude, my favorite one. I saw a tweet today of heavily upvoted. Like, Overwatch is anything better. Guy hasn't played Overwatch in over a year, and he's like, "Yeah, well, it's Overwatch is just whichever Malga has a better heal pocket." I'm like, "Oh no."
And that's
so, but I.
Oh no. Go ahead.
If it's quick, you can go. But I was leading into that wasn't.
Yeah, that's why to me, like, I think a lot of that is tied to the branding of Overwatch 2. Like that's why I think you can drop.
Okay, so I can talk to that. I can.
Sure,
that actually goes. That's perfect. That actually goes into where I want to go anyway. So. What I'm saying here is most Overwatch problems are actually an optics problem. I think if people came in with good faith or a good level of objectivity, and they played Overwatch 2 as it is, completely objective, without the baggage of like, oh, the PvE and the 2 branding, all this kind of stuff. This is difficult for most people to do. I think you'll actually find a pretty damn polished game with the new heroes, the new content is overall pretty good. No, I don't like Clash, and I'm not a big fan of Push, but it is what it is. Generally speaking, they've done a lot of great events. The Junkenstein's Lab stuff, like all the events is pretty good. Like there's a lot of like poor arguments out there from the general crowd that's just like, oh man, like Overwatch's updates are so bad. They don't do anything except do balance changes. Those aren't real updates. Look at Marvel Rivals. Like, dude, you clearly haven't played Overwatch 2, because there's actually a lot. The fact that we even got 6v6 back as a test is insane for an event. Like, this is the kind of thing that we would have never have had in Overwatch 1. This is a huge level up from Overwatch 1.
Yeah.
But again, none of this is enough, and the reason why it's enough is it's an optics-based thing. So how do you fix optics? You need something to allow Overwatch to be culturally relevant again in a positive way, and to sort of fix the negative PR and fix the optics. And some of this is also a lot of this is within the hands of Overwatch. Some of this is not going to be within the hands of Overwatch. This is also going to require timing, where they need to hope that NetEase makes a mistake somewhere with Marvel Rivals. And again, we are in a honeymoon phase. People don't like to admit it. The irony is there's some Twitter heads out there like, oh, people. They keep saying honeymoon phase. That's such cope. No, the cope is saying that there isn't honeymoon phase when it's proven that every single game does have one. Like, this is proof. Yeah. Like, this is non-debatable.
Listen, I'm not subject to your psychological biases. So everybody else is, but I'm not. I'm the one exception, guys. I'm the one exception to that rule.
Yeah. So there is a honeymoon phase. Everyone, proof of the pudding. Overwatch had a honeymoon phase. No one really cared that much about balance in Overwatch until a year or two down the line, when the game was super figured out. Everyone's played the game for a couple of years now, and now people are way more interested in balance. The conversation in balance just took over Overwatch discussion everywhere. Battle.net forums, Reddit, Twitter, whatever. So right now, not a lot of people talking about balance. Maybe bans does affect things in that conversation, but again, bans is Diamond Plus. 3% of the player base, 97% of the player base don't get to experience that at all. At some point, balance might end up being a bigger discussion in Marvel Rivals. Role queue already is. My point is, at some point, NetEase might trip up a little bit, and if they don't fix things, if they continue tripping up, if they can't fix the FPS issues that are causing like actual potential pay to win, I have a better PC, I get better frames, my character's a better type of way. These are all potential pitfalls. But if NetEase slips up, makes some PR mistakes, or does something wrong, there's a whole China thing going on right now with the whole censorship on their side as well. There's actually a lot of negative Steam reviews. I'm not going to get deeply into that, but I'm just saying, like, there's a build-up of things that NetEase could slip up and do something bad, and then people suddenly, like, the optics on NetEase and Marvel Rivals doesn't look really great. Overwatch can time that. They can do something culturally relevant. This is going to sound pretty out there and wild, but I'll do it. Like, I mean, bring the anime in. They messed up the whole Netflix thing. That needs to come back. That is actually a real way that you can be culturally relevant again. Guess what? It worked for Cyberpunk. And they turned things around really quick. Cyberpunk looked like it was dead in the water. There was no way they could salvage the game. It didn't matter how many updates, how much they fixed the game. People weren't willing to give it a try again. What you actually need is to have people give it a try again, to come back and say, actually, you know what? Wow, the heroes, you don't have to pay for heroes. You don't have to... The heroes are not locked behind the battle pass. The monetization actually has improved a lot in Overwatch compared to where I last saw it. It's actually not that bad. Actually, you know what? Marvel Rivals and NetEase, they do the same monetization. This is actually pretty comparable. Oh, they do have bans in this game too. So you do all the positive things that you're supposed to do in Overwatch. You keep developing the game well, listening to the community and the good feedback, and maybe ignore some of the bad stuff out there. And then you end up in a situation where your game is like objectively pretty good if people come in without the bad faith attached, without the baggage attached to it. And then you have something culturally relevant like an anime to get you back in the conversation. People want to try Overwatch again. They try Overwatch again and realize, actually, this is not as bad as people are saying, or this is not as bad as I thought it was, or like the old baggage that I really hated is not here. The whole like the Malga bullshit that you mentioned about some guy on Twitter was like the outdated grievances that are no longer relevant. People are not going to realize it's not relevant until they try the game again. So the question is, how do you get people to try the game again? Probably a mixture of NetEase messing up some way. And
one more brief point Blizzard, at the end once game goes.
And Blizzard doing something culturally relevant to bring people back in, while also having good updates and having objectively a good game at the time. So yeah,
anime is one of the ways. I like this plan.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think Witcher did it as well, where you saw the people go back to Witcher. You could also make the battle passes accessible in the same way that Marvel does too, Helldivers too. So yeah, that's all I had to add on that. But I agree with you. That's good.
I think
it's not even like a PvE. So I'll let you go. It's not even the lack of PvE, because guess what? Marvel's Rivals doesn't have PvE. It's not the lack of a PvE. It's the broken promise. Exactly. It's the broken promise. It's not the actual. This is the thing that people can't divorce from their mind. It's not the low-hanging fruit. It's like, oh, there's no PvE and I'm unhappy. No, you don't care about the PvE, because I don't see you out there tweeting about the lack of PvE in Marvel Rivals. You don't give a fuck about PvE. So stop lying. It's not the PvE. It's the broken promise. Be honest with yourself. You don't like the broken promise. And that's a totally justifiable, acceptable, and I will ride that horse with you. I think that was a broken promise, and I don't think that was good. I totally accept that.
But let's not pretend. Maybe for some people, maybe for the 1% of people who are like so in love with PvE because they loved Retribution, Uprising, Overwatch 1, they were truly heard about it because they actually wanted PvE. But no one actually cares about PvE. Otherwise, you'd all be calling for PvE and Marvel Rivals, and that's not happening. So
it also adds to the grievances as well, because they didn't update the game properly while doing the thing that they broke the promise about. So it adds to the grievances,
and it's all part of that. But it's not the actual PvE. It's that side.
Yeah,
that
sure,
stuff, right?
sure, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's the sins of our fathers. Yeah, I think as well. Like we have to. This is. I think. I know. I'm scared to even say this because I know someone in the comments is going to say something, but I'm tired of it. Like we as creators, like I think that we're also like living in a point in time right now where, let's face it, Sam, negative content does better. No, right? It always does. It does.
I would say generally it's easier because that will get more interaction.
It is better. You reacted to some guy. He's got the black thumbnails with the text on it. Some guy who's talking about like Overwatch is cooked or Marvel Rivals destroyed Overwatch. And I looked at his channel and it's literally just him freaking out over like every other game, right? And I think Overwatch has been I'm in my little social bubble, which is obviously very niche, the most lambasted video game in like the last 5 years. Like there are billions of views. I would go.
Well, how long ago? Okay. 2025. You're right. No, you're right. You're right. It's 2025. Tens and hundreds of millions of views off of people. I mean,
there are popular to clown on it. Yeah.
Tens and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars made from people hating on Overwatch, right? Like, and it's the same with me, right? There are the patches where I like and the patches that I hate. The patches that I hate do about 80% more views. By 80% more views. So we have like this cannibalization of our game, right? Maybe not yours, maybe not mine anymore, but like the cannibalization of the game that we love and that we like. And that really does feed into the public perception. Like I'm not saying that we shouldn't criticize, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't hold developers accountable for making bad decisions. But that's why I've tried, especially recently, to be like, I'm gonna if it's poop, it's poop. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have to pretend, right? But like, I think this is where like you have to be really careful about like what is objective truth versus what is like more of an emotional response from
what
something.
What is rage baiting?
Right. What is rage baiting? What is amplifying something? And like I think as Overwatch, and honestly, like I feel like I'm not going to name names, but I'm really guilty of this sometimes. Where like it is really hard not to kind of like amplify my emotions about something that I really don't like because it's going to make me money, going to make me more money.
Defend you and add on to that, I will agree with you in the sense that, like, yes, but at the same time, I also think the audience wants it. It's not just about like,
the audience definitely wants it. Yeah,
it's not. I make this because it gets a lot of views and therefore content creators.
I'm not changing people's nature. Human nature is the same.
People want to watch it,
and you're not going to change that.
There is a negativity bias in human psychology. We talked about this at the start of the show.
It's a threat. This
is a whole Nate Shot conversation again, where it's like people want to see things fail. People want to see things die.
Yeah.
People are super tribalists. Guess what? We're not evolved at all. We're still just monkeys with internet and electricity. Now. But we all just have monkey brains, and I can prove it because we're all still hunter gatherers in tribes. How tribalistic are people in the modern era? It's like social media made people more tribalistic. We're all just monkeys. It's exactly how hunter-gatherers are. We've never evolved past hunter-gatherers. So that's how it is. And so
all the Marvel Rival videos that do well are the ones that are talking about how it's going to kill Overwatch. Those are the videos that do the best.
Well, it's the optics again. I think AVRL, honestly, I think you nailed it. Where it's like at the end of the day, in my opinion, as long as that 2 is there and we still lost like what we had, like Overwatch 1 was more polished than Overwatch. Maybe not now, but like my border, like all my stats, all of those stuff, like those were things that were taken away for absolutely no reason. I think Avril, you're right. Until they find a way to address that, like even to me, like that feeling is not gone. Like, now, granted, I also might be biased because I really was looking forward to the PvE. Like, I love PvE. I love PvE. So, like,
stuff was taken away. That's the thing. Is like, there's not even a grain of truth. It's a whole loaf. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of truth in it, right? It's like the radicalization. I mean, I was talking about this on Twitter the other day, like where I've seen more friends, like content creators on my timeline, but also I've received more death threats among other things in the last month of doing Marvel Rivals content because I'm an Overwatch content creator. People And if I say anything critical, or even just positive, like Sam, we had a discussion, right? I don't recommend you check the comment section, mate. There's some people cooking you, like in really, really nasty ways.
I don't give
Same
a
thing
shit.
with me too, right? But that's the kind of stuff. Like maybe you're more immune to it than I'm not used to like that level of hostility. Like Marvel Rivals players hate anything and everything to do with Overwatch. And it doesn't matter if you're a coach, content creator, streamer, you suck. I don't want your opinion. Your entire thing sucks. Your game sucks. You're all sexual offenders. Blizzard Classic, you guys are nutcases and you killed the game with roll queue and like you should freaking kill yourself and like among other things that I don't even want to repeat, but like and that's not like the majority of the player base, right? So that's a very small percentage. And maybe that's part of the casuals, but I think there's a lot of like trained antagonization to where it's like people are scared of Overwatch and they hate Overwatch and they hate everything to do with Overwatch. And it honestly feels like I don't know if Overwatch will ever change. Like it almost feels like we need another Conquered to fill in like a slightly bigger way so that we can beat up on somebody else. Like Overwatch needs to bully somebody else. Yeah, those Conquered guys. They suck. Look at that. Look, at least we're not Conquered, guys. Those morons. They couldn't even release the freaking game. Look at that. Those trash cans. Overwatch is so good, man. We great? It's better that we're not Conquered.
It's more that people dislike Blizzard and Activision Blizzard. A lot of the discussion, a lot of the decision making that Bobby Cody did, more than Overwatch. Like I said, if people,
I think it's both. It's both.
It can be both, but what I'm trying to get towards is if people mostly looked at it more objectively and dropped some of the baggage and some of the bad faith and just objectively looked at Overwatch, the game is fine. Like it might not be for you, but a lot of games are not for you. Guess what? Most games that are not for me. I don't really enjoy Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite, but it's whatever. It's for someone else. I'm not out here shitting on Fortnite. And so it's the thing is like the reason they're shitting on Overwatch, despite not shitting on other games, people dislike plenty of games. But the reason why they'll do it for Overwatch is because there's some sort of resentment and grievance there that's way more tied. I'm going to say like 99% tied to the Blizzard PR, to the sexual harassment lawsuit, to the Overwatch 2, broken promises of PvE, so a lot of the Bobby Kotick stuff behind the scenes, that pushing decisions and all stuff of other crap.
Paying for heroes,
all baggage, that baggage all combined is a real reason why you guys are experiencing in comments like this intense hatred for Overwatch because people feel slighted in some way. Look, I had someone make a comment where like responding to me on Twitter is something like, man, like they said, it's just a paraphrase. They said something along the lines of like, I never want to play a game where I feel like abused by the developer by Blizzard Games. Like, what do you mean abused? Like, were you touched? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean abused? Let's like, there's people are very dramatic about these kind of things.
Very emotional.
There's some sort of insane mental trauma. They literally use the word abuse. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean abused? Like, did someone punch you? Like, what happened? Like, this is crazy. So you're just a player in a video game. Like, literally, it's like that Tyler the Creator meme. Literally, like, turn off your computer and walk outside. What do you mean abused? It's ridiculous. So my point is,
I love your rant. I want to respond to it though. Keep going.
People are hating Blizzard and using Overwatch as the vehicle to hate Blizzard, and that hate is not unjustified. What I'm saying is people are not being objective about the Overwatch game because they're using Blizzard as a vehicle for it.
Yeah.
And so really quick before you jump, Frito, this is how you can drop the 2. I said earlier, dropping the 2 could actually cause you some negative PR backlash. You have a situation where you're trying to be culturally relevant again. Maybe you release an anime. Guess what? Some sort of show or anime fills the gap that PvE sort of was there to do anyway, which is the lore. What people actually want more than PvE is probably lore progression, because that's the thing that Blizzard and Overwatch do best in terms of the characters and the story. You want to see more of that. So the actual anime or whatever show would actually allow you to fulfill at least some sort of like, you know, fulfillment of the lore progression, which would be really huge. And then you have a huge thing where it's like, okay, but we're revamping Overwatch 2. This is going to be the new Overwatch. We're dropping the 2. It's just going to be Overwatch. It's going to coincide with the anime being dropped. The game is in a good state. Maybe they save a bunch of content. Maybe they do a giant content drop as well at the same time with some stuff in there, huge tie into the show, a whole bunch of stuff. And they can prove to the player base with some giant move culturally, a one last shot, because you can't do an Overwatch 3. Jokingly, I would have said, yeah, they just got to do Overwatch 3, and then there would be it. But you tie everything together into one large, culturally impactful drop, ideally at the same time, and this is if Overwatch really wants to succeed, ideally at the same time that netties are making mistakes, and boom, that's your moment to capitalize. And if people can come in with any shred of objectivity and good faith, they might, just maybe might realize, hey, this game isn't as bad as I thought. Because objectively, it's not as bad as people think.
Okay. Being abused by Blizzard. I feel like this. How many
It's
hours
different,
we got? We got another hour, right?
you've actually been in situations, but if you're just some player playing quick play and gold, I'm sorry, that's too hard.
No,
That's
let me
insane.
walk you
Like,
through this though for the fan base, because I need to speak for them, because being one of them, I have a doll that I show where Jeff touched me. So when Overwatch 1 came out, there was near universal acclaim for every word Blizzard spit. Every single game of the year, we finally been waiting for a new Blizzard IP, and every single thing that is negative now was positive then. Not only was it positive, negative content was not looked upon fondly. I know this because luckily back then I had two charming British guys to flank around my content, because all I wanted to do was criticize the game. I'm like, what? Where's the competitive integrity? Where's the competitive game mode? Where? And then eventually it's of course hero bans, power creep. A lot of the audience did not like me doing this. They actively hated it, and it sort of trained me, and it like gave me a different perspective to understand like how casual the game was, and I learned over time. But in general, like I was one of them pushing against a lot of their philosophy towards how casual and wacky Overwatch 1 was, and I wanted some sort of integrity to how they designed it. And then on top of that, of course, there's all of the very tangible broken promises and like there's a lot of grievances that are legitimate. That's kind of the problem, right? Like yes, they have fixed it now, but people's feelings of the high highs of the expectations of them saying we can do everything all the time and we're gaming Jesus, and I can use a small dev team to make 3 games at once, even though I kind of don't even know how to manage the game we have, but I think I do because I made it the first time. And how dare you criticize me, forum troll YouTuber? How dare you tell me how the game works? Or what? I mean, these are devs that like basically told the pros, learn how to counter goats, good luck. Like that was kind of their attitude. Like we don't have as much back and forth. We didn't have as much back and forth with the developers at the time, but like, I'll tell you this for free, they just thought y'all needed to get good. Like for real. Like there's, maybe we'll switch this. Why didn't you play Reaper? Reaper counter takes like that. This was literally,
dude, I remember that they really Reaper and
literally thought this. Okay?
It was mismanaged so bad. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. They thought their perfect creation, and their egos were out of control, right? So there's a lot of reasonable grievances over the time, and yes, many of these have been fixed over time. And then to like the negativity content thing, like I kind of understand where SPILO is coming from, because I mean, most of my content was in Overwatch 1. I did a AVRL's show recently when we recorded it, and he was like, you made like 1,000 videos. I'm like, oh man, it's really been that many. But I bet if I counted how many I've made in the last year, it's like a small fraction in comparison to how many we were pumping out for Overwatch 1, because frankly, like I don't do well with this negativity, man. Like as much as you think I might, being the critical guy, like I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, and like all that content got shouted down by the community. I got bullied for thinking the game was on a good trajectory, right? I got bullied out of making content, basically, because I don't want to show up every day to work to be like, let's try to like figure the format out. No, we got to change everything. It's like, fine, like so the community kind of poisoned itself, in my opinion. Like there's the survivors that stayed in this game, they poisoned the well themselves. Like you could have had a different attitude to this game and sort of saw it in the same honeymoon phase that you saw with Marvel Rivals, but the community did this to itself, as far as I'm concerned. And this sort of happens over time. I don't get a chance to say it that often on this channel, but I've been doing YouTube a long time, guys. Long time. I saw like COD being the #1 game on YouTube originally go from being like everyone loved making content, it was a bunch of diversity and like the culture was all one way, to then eventually over time the only content you can make about COD was hating COD. And that is what happened to Overwatch 2. And I checked out of COD at the similar time where it happened the same way. So I don't know, like
which game, out of curiosity, which COD game did it shift? Like Black Ops 3 or like Infinity War?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to like
detect
the stock market of rage and negativity. Like it goes up and down, you know. But
I actually like Infinity War. That's the crazy part.
But
anyway.
Certainly there was like a peak point where I mean, you go watch some of these COD commentators that were around back at the start. They're still complaining about the same. Oh, Last Stand. I bet it's like they still have the same complaints as they did, 10 years ago. So anyway, I just wanted to like give a response to all the things people said. I really hope Overwatch can turn it around. Like I think you guys give a lot of positive momentum in the right direction. It sucks. It sucks to see it in this state, because I do think they're doing so many of the right things, but it doesn't get acknowledged. And everything is always too little, too late. Unfortunately, so
it's definitely personally driven as well because it is a little bit of bitterness for somebody like me. I have a clear bias towards like I like Overwatch. I like the game a lot, you know, and I put a lot of work and a lot of effort into it, and I enjoy the game. And you know, basically, I'm forced to make patch reacts that are hopefully going to be negative to, you know, and so I think that there's definitely some frustration there, and I think that's just the whole arc. It really feels like a bitter X arc, like where you had somebody or a game that you really liked that had a lot of novelty and was really good at what it was, and was just like we've never seen anything quite like that before, you know, TF2, you know, and then you know it botched this, botched that, fumbled this, fumbled that, and then now they're like, you know, it's too late. Like, you know, the ship has sailed, right? And that's where I really go back to like AVRL's point about like they need some big, like the bitter ex-girlfriend that wants to get back together with me, and I hate and I don't want to get together again. She needs to like go on like America's Got Talent, and you know, and needs to be up there. And I'm like, whoa, maybe I was wrong all along.
She needs to win the lottery. She needs to win the lottery. You're like, oh shit, maybe I got to get her back. I need to.
Yeah, seriously, there needs to be like some sort of optics, you know, because it's like you're right. They're like the problem is, like I said, it's there really is
it's a purely optic problem. It's like a 90% optic problem at least.
Yeah.
Sam, you had a point. I wanted to add something on as well, but Sam,
I wonder if, you know, on the contrary, it just needs some time. I wonder if Marvel Rivals can be that detox that Frida's talking about.
Could be.
Where again, like I think, like if I'm making a prediction, I could be wrong. I'm one guy. What the hell do I know? Like I genuinely don't think that Overwatch can beat Marvel in terms of volume. I think Marvel will become the biggest shooter in the genre because it's Marvel. Like they're gonna be like from what I mean
volume,
like amount of people playing the game, the amount of people talking about the game. Because like I think Overwatch's engine is just higher quality in general. Like I don't think that Marvel will beat Blizzard from an artistic standpoint in terms of like like Blizzard's game is like a nice, well-aged fine wine. Like you're not going to be able to get those grapes again. Like they've already been dug out and they come out with super high quality, right? But Marvel's more of like a brewery. I don't know. I'm not sure what it's
a different game. It's a different game.
Yeah.
You get a different taste. And you're right, Samito. I just looked up Steam. You know what the reviews for Steam are? Mostly negative now. Not overwhelmingly negative anymore.
Yeah, give it time.
I feel like the devs have been
more negative reviews actually popping up for Marvel Rivals from the censorship discussion.
We're so bad, guys.
Which one?
Here's the thing.
Which one? There's like 4. There was remember the creator thing where they couldn't talk, and then that kind of got brushed under. Like, there's definitely some business practices that I think.
Oh no, the current thing where like you can't type in. I don't know if I should even I don't know. I don't want to drag the words of the show.
It's just like talking about Taiwan and shit.
Taiwan,
Hong Kong, China. It's all that, and so there. But what I'm saying is like, here's the thing about Marvel Rivals. Well, I like both games. I think Marvel Rivals does a lot of stuff. It does a lot of stuff that I like more than Overwatch, actually. There's stuff I like in Overwatch too. The point being here is that when you are riding a high and when you are riding momentum, the higher you go, it is more and more difficult to keep that train going in terms of momentum, but also the easier it becomes to take a fall somewhere because you are now setting standards super high for yourself. And like I said, especially with an aggressive content release schedule, there's a high likelihood that something goes wrong there. It might not even be intentionally. Obviously, it's not going to be intentional from NetEase, but it'll just accidentally happen where maybe they take too long to fix FPS issues. Because guess what? I saw the response. I saw some of the reasoning why that exists in the game for Marvel Rivals, and it is not easy to fix. The FPS problem with like how some characters like get more attacks and dash longer, all that kind. That is not
Marvel Rivals will save Overwatch.
It could.
Unironically could though. Like
I know it could. It could. It
brings more eyes in the genre. Yeah. I like it.
It could
the
be
devs right now feel like a lot of the Overwatch devs strategy right now seems to be like a lot of communication within the community, but like a lot of it seems like keep your head down and just do your job. That seems to be kind of like do your job, learn, do better. It doesn't
wait
like
for your chance.
Communicate.
You need to do that. You need to do that and then have a culturally relevant event at the same time. My position will always be if Cyberpunk can do it, and what's another game? There's No Man's Sky, but they didn't have an anime. Do you know what I mean? Like games like that have made comebacks from really shit positions. And if you guys saw the conversation around Cyberpunk at the time on release, bro, that was the most
ruthless one ever. That was
you
the most
rarely see something that hardcore ruthless. I agree. It's insane. So if Cyberpunk can
got
make
hacked.
from that,
their company got hacked and somebody
didn't they lose their entire source code?
Yeah, and it got sold. I think in ironic China
extreme.
apparently. Yeah, like that's crazy.
No Man's Sky is a good
Also-
comparison as well, but I like Cyberpunk even better because it was like Blizzard in terms of how high the expectations were, right, and how low they were when they performed at the end.
Yeah, but you can't be like, but you can't be
Go
like Arcane, where you play Arcane, or you watch Arcane, and you want to play League of Legends, but the game is just too hard to get into because it's got 1 million characters and the game's like 20 years old or some crap, and it's just too hard. The skill curve is too high. So you need the game to be like in a good place so that when the cultural relevant event happens, people want to come back and try the game, and then they realize the game is actually fine. Beyond that as well, like TF2 is still alive. If TF2 is still alive, Overwatch is not going to die anytime soon.
Yeah,
The only way it dies is if Blizzard literally stop developing it and stop, they stop updating it at all. Just as a reminder, I brought this up at the start, and I'll bring it up again right now as just a cherry on top. Just remember, NetEase is not perfect. This is their third Marvel game, not their first one. Their third Marvel game. This is not to shit on NetEase. It's just I like what they've done with this game. I think they made good choices. I think they could have had worse monetization. They surprised me by having pretty reasonable monetization. So I'll defend it. And it could change. But my point here being is they've already killed an actual game before. Marvel Super Fight. You can look this up. That game died June 2024. They literally ended the servers and ended that game. So you want to talk about people keep dead game. No, that's an actual dead game. A game that is like literally dead. As in, you cannot go and download this game. The servers are off. It's literally dead. People who paid money for skins and whatever else in this game, that money's gone. Your money that you spent is literally gone because the game literally is dead because you cannot even download it. That's a real, literal dead game. And NetEase has that on their portfolio. People don't know about this. Again, not to shit on NetEase, just to put perspective out there for people who don't realize these things. NetEase also co-developed Diablo Immortal. I'm sure everyone who really dislikes Blizzard
did they
for these
really?
things. Yes, NetEase is a co-developer of Diablo Immortal. You didn't even know that. That's the thing. People don't know these things. But everyone's shat on Diablo Immortal, probably for good reasoning. But you can't, but they don't even know NetEase played a part in that. Come on. Like, again, that's not to shit on NetEase. It's just I'm just saying objectively, because don't hate me, NetEase. I'm just explaining objectively because I'm trying to be a balanced, objective guy. I still think
nobody's perfect.
Exactly.
Nobody's perfect.
So because they're flawed, an update could come through. Things can go wrong. NetEase could make a mistake. That's all it takes.
And this
Overwatch has staying power, right? Like that's one thing that Overwatch is good. Overwatch is going to remain relevant, relevant to the people playing it and profitable enough to keep going out for a long time. Like that's the quality of that's the good upside of at least releasing a quality product that maybe is not for everybody nowadays, to the casual audience, but it's gonna have a good healthy player population for some time.
It'll be fine. It will last for years.
So it's gonna be able to buy enough time if Marvel Rivals for optics. It's gonna buy enough time for optics in theory to improve if it ever does improve. But it's gonna be around for a while.
Final closing statements on this. Mine, I'll say it like this: 2 things. 1, I want the Overwatch community to try to learn joy. Okay, try to have fun with your game. I feel like you helped the Overwatch decline by not actually enjoying the game and enjoying the good development you were getting. And then I hope that when people realize how wacky Marvel Rivals is and they go and try Overwatch and wow, these developers are super responsive and they're super on top of it and they balance things really quick and blah, blah, blah. So that's a big benefit that Overwatch has because they've been really working in the salt mines with unreasonable expectations for years now in terms of their actual efforts compared to where the reception is. And then my other thing is I hope that what the devs learn from Marvel Rivals is to drop this whole seasonal buff concept that they actually have. Marvel Rivals has casual seasonal buffs, but the developers for a long time have been doing this Fortnite-esque model where they change the range of Cassidy 5 meters back and forth, and then soldiers' damage goes up to 20 and down from 19. I hate this chasing parked car balance philosophy, and I much prefer the Marvel Rivals one. I think there's probably somewhere to go in between there where I feel like when they're going to add bans, they have to. They've already been thinking about it. They're we'll do it in a year from now, and then Marvel Rivals popping off. Everyone loves bans. Overwatch obviously has to add bans. So what you get to do with that then is allow your heroes to be more fun and expressive in the plays they get to make, because whether it's 5v5, 6v6, or whatever, people don't like the formulaic nature of the game and how simple things seem, and you gotta somehow split the difference between that. You can still have the more polished product overall, I suppose, but it's just not fun enough to enough people because you've I feel they've bent over backwards to listen to feedback that degrades the fun factor more and more each time. And they succeed in listening to the feedback and executing it, but turns out those people didn't necessarily have the best interest of the higher truth, let's say. The higher truth is always the fun factor of the game. And they got to get back to that. And I hope that the new things they have cooking works. And in general, I hope, it survives as a game. It's close to my heart. Big part of my life, covering it since release, and life-changing opportunity for me, of course. So I by no means want it to die. I hope they turn things around and at least sustain and even grow from this point at some point. There's a moment when Apex came out where Overwatch took a hit, but I'm a little more concerned because Marvel Rivals is obviously a hero shooter game, but it might grow the pie overall, which might be a overall optimistic thing. Okay, final statements from anybody else.
SPILO, you got to go, right? So you go first.
Yeah, I mean, Marvel Rivals just needs to keep doing what makes it Marvel Rivals, and there's things low-hanging fruit, like we talked about optimization, maybe a couple of balance things, maybe a couple of hero design things that don't seem super intuitive, but just keep leaning into the craziness, keep leaning into the silliness. I concerned, as Sam said, about the sustainability of the content thing. So as long as it's consistent but not over the top, and then from the Overwatch side of things, do what you do best. Take lessons with things that are applicable, but they devs know this. I'm more expressing what the Overwatch developers and the Marvel Rivals developers already know to the greater community, that those games are just different in so many aspects. And so setting the same expectations for both games is just going to lead yourself to disappointment. That's about all I have.
I'll say one really quickly, and this Sam can probably take us home here, is that it is possible to enjoy more than one game. I'm sure actually people play more than one game. So yeah, maybe I'm a rare example in this community, but I actually genuinely like both games. I'm playing more Marvel Rivals now because it's new. It's a fresh experience, and I want to be part of that fresh experience. And it's super fun because it's new as well, because you get to learn a whole bunch of new things, and you also get to dominate lobbies if you've played Overwatch before and you're going up against people that haven't. So that's lots of fun. So I'm having a lot of fun with Marvel Rivals right now. I would like, this is not going to happen, sadly, but I would like it if people were able to sort of just calm the temperature down a little bit and enjoy the game that you enjoy. If you like both games, you like both games. If you like one game, that's great. You like one game, and it's not necessary to have to shit on the other game. And worse is shitting on the people that play the game or create content around the game, because the comments that you guys are getting, it's unreasonable. People should not be doing that at all. One of the most cringe things to do is to be some guy out there who thinks they can police what other people can and can't enjoy. If someone's out there playing Overwatch or making content of Overwatch, you're like, why are you doing that? Why are you playing Overwatch? This is a dead game. You're so bad. You're dumb, and you're a Blizzard, whatever. It's dude, it's absolutely the most unbelievably cringe, basement dwelling behavior to start policing other people's time that they spent for their own leisure. What people find fun is how are you out there telling other people what they can and can't find fun? It's the most unbelievable behavior in the world. So people need to calm down on that a little bit and just enjoy what you want to enjoy. I think Marvel Rivals is great. I'm playing a lot of it, and I'll continue playing a lot of it.
I think the good news there is that I think that's an effect that Marvel Rivals is going to have. I think that a detox will do everybody good, and I think an actual competitor in the genre that's fun is going to do that. For closing thoughts from me, I guess taking it back to Marvel Rivals and away from Overwatch, I'm honestly I'm super positive on this game. I love that they're doing everything that I ever wanted Overwatch to do in their game, and it might not be as artsy and polished, I guess you could say, but they're just doing it. They're telling stories. I think the lore is going to be tied into the actual seasons of the game, so it's almost like a built-in show, because you had the Jeff comic or whatever it was in season 0 that you could unlock and play and see the story, and all the lore is already out there. I think I'm just so excited to see that. I'm loving this game was, I think, made for someone like me who is I love the brain aspects of things. Sure, FPS mechanics are fun, but playing a character like Iron Fist and figuring out how to big brain all this stuff that was this is kind of made for players like me, and I'm grateful. I can't tell you guys the last time I really enjoyed making content on a game. It's probably since Overwatch 2's release that I really, actually love this. I love having new ideas introduced to me. I love seeing figuring out hero bands. Holy shit, this is so much better. This would have solved so many problems. And I think it's going to be good for Overwatch, because the people that are going to move on are the people that have those negative feelings, right?
Yes.
So I think in order for those people to even come back, and like to be honest with me, like that bridge is burned. Like just to tell you how I feel, like that bridge has just been burned for me, and that could change at some point. Like, you know, at this point, especially with something else that's out, like I can look at this and be like, okay, I wish you the best. I do. Like to be honest, like I'm probably done talking about it for a long time because like I want to just detox and enjoy. Like I love playing this game. Everybody keeps coming back to my channel, be like, "Yo, talk about Overwatch. Go play 6v6." And I'm like, I don't want to. Like I'm playing this now, and I'm happy. You know, like I can say that before. I hope Overwatch like leans into its niche. I don't think it's going to be able to compete like with the household brand with what Marvel is about to do for a while. But it doesn't need to. It doesn't have to. It can be itself and do what it does well and thrive. And I hope it does that. It was a big part of my life. I'm grateful for it. I hope it succeeds. I think giving it some time and like that anime show, I still think they should get rid of it too, AVRL. I still think they should get rid of it. I think that's essential.
I think they should, but
in the right way
is very important.
Yes,
yeah.
agreed.
Yes.
I can agree with that 100%. Maybe Overwatch and then like whatever anime, if they end up doing something like, you know, that could be the theme or like how Fortnite has Fortnite Chapter 2 and like Overwatch 2 could have just been a chapter. Like, I don't know. Whatever. I wish them the best for it. But man, Marvel's knocked my socks off. This game has some freaking staying power. It has one of the most impressive charts I've ever seen for a new game release. And I don't think it's going to slow down. They've shown the ability to make new characters popular. They've shown the ability to implement popular characters. They've shown the ability to tell a story. It's everything that I ever could have wanted from Overwatch 1 or Overwatch as a franchise. And I'm just glad there's real competition. And there's not just new BRs coming out every month. It's now finally, hopefully, the era of this type of game. And I hope Marvel Rivals goes on. It's the best genre in gaming.
I tried to get Valorant, nope. Apex, nope.
Couldn't do it. Doesn't scratch the same.
It's
not
the
as
same.
much, you know. So I appreciate that. And, you know, I hope Marvel Rivals becomes the next Fortnite. I do. I hope it becomes that caliber of game. Maybe not to the degree because, you know, Fortnite's using UE5 and, you know, to really become a platform like Roblox, which is brilliant on their part. But I think this game could easily, if they tell a good story, like I think they're going to, and they, you know, do this stuff, this will be a top tier. Maybe a League of Legends is a better example. I'm not sure how big League is now. I know it has a shitload of players, but yeah,
it's mostly carried by Asia, but I think it's kept a lot in North America and Europe, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Overwatch fans should want this game to succeed as
well. They should.
I think there's
that's
so
how you
many
get
cool
resources from
lessons to learn.
Microsoft too. Like,
yeah, cool lessons to learn, new innovations and things that we never would have thought to try. Like, especially because they're not in the same, they're like adjacent.
Yeah.
So there's like, they're able to do weird things that Overwatch would never think of in a million years, you know? So like, you know, some of it's appropriate, some of it's not, but I think it's in everyone's best interest for a game within this subgenre to succeed.
And by the way, Marvel Rivals fans out there and Overwatch like haters, I guess, if Overwatch does end up dying, which I don't think it will, like that's bad for Marvel Rivals. So you think that we like the reason why like a lot of the monetization stuff has had to be as competitive as it is because Overwatch exists.
Yeah. Yes, you would have. I guarantee you would have been
paid
made
heroes.
to pay for heroes. There's a reason why
it was there. It was there.
There's proof. You can't. No one can even cope or lie about this. The literal proof was in the beta. Owned, unowned in the hero gallery. NetEase was planning on selling you heroes, and they decided not to. They decided not. They decided not to because they saw the backlash and what happened in Overwatch. So you should be glad that Overwatch existed to allow NetEase to do these things. People keep like, guys, seriously, just look at the history of the games. NetEase is typically a mobile developer. Okay. Oh, are we comparing a PC game to a mobile game? Doesn't matter. It's just, are you pretending it's not the same developer? What are we talking about here? Yeah. So again, I'm not even shitting on NetEase. I'm just saying like they're making good decisions. They're making better decisions because Overwatch exists. And you don't. If Overwatch dies, that's like bad for the genre. It's like, dude, you want the hero shooter genre to have like be less popular? Like, what are you talking about? We should want more. We should want the hero shooter genre to be like a bigger genre and a more popular genre in general. I don't know why. The dumbest thing is having this like internal civil war between your own genres. Like, dude, you should be wanting to compete with BRs like Fortnite and the MOBAs and the other big games out there. As a genre,
more
together,
resources come in here because of that.
You're trying to get a bigger slice of the pie within the existing pie instead of looking at the other genre and be like, hang on a minute, like we should be competing against them. You want to kill other games within your own genre, so what? You can be the biggest fish in the small pond? That's such a stupid position to have.
Yeah.
I have a bigger pond by competing with the other genres. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
I want AVRL to be my life coach. This is great stuff. I need this energy in my life. Get up and go to the gym. Come on, you missed yesterday.
Actually,
you
what I'm
never
doing
skipped
well,
a
I
leg
like
day. All right, Spilo, what you got?
No, I was just going to say Bobby Kotick walked away with $350 million so that Marvel Rivals could run.
Yeah, he did.
Check out everybody's links in the description. AVRL, Samito, FPS, and Spilo. Thanks everybody for coming on this very long but epic show. And maybe if this gets enough traction, we'll do another one at some point to check in and diagnose where we're at on this whole discussion.